half a dozen. It's a phrase you use about eggs, things you might pick up from the supermarket, not Tour de France victories. But coming into the 2004 race, Lance Armstrong was just one win away from being the first man in Tour history who'd be able to count his wins on the fingers of more than one hand. He was already in pretty exalted company, of course. Only 4 other men had ever won 5 Tours, but although they'd all ridden again after their 5th win, none of them, not even the great Eddie Merckx, had been able to muster a 6th. As it happened, Lance Armstrong's ride into history began in Merckx's backyard. The prologue for the Tour was in the Belgian city of Liège, 6 kilometres flat out through the city streets. However, all the historical evidence says that it's going to be a massive task to pull off, and even the famously focused Armstrong arrived in Liège struggling to keep it all in perspective.
It's never been done. It's legendary, but I can't think about that. I have to think about, I mean, sitting here today, I have to think about the prologue. Okay, what's the prologue like? After that, I have to think about the TTT. And if we make it to the end and it shakes out that I win again, then, man, I guess I can comment on it then and say how I feel, but I refuse to think about that and put myself in that position now, because I think that's the worst karma you could ever create. And sort of, I mean, how the hell can you write your victory speech before you've ridden 3 weeks of hard bike races? And I'm not doing that. There's, especially this year, there's a lot of guys that are good, and it's going to be tight.
So who, if anybody, can beat Armstrong? Well, while the American's going for his 6th win, Germany's Jan Ullrich will be trying to avoid his 6th second place in this race. The 1997 champion pushed Armstrong incredibly close last year, and he leads the pack of contenders again this year.
I hope. I make good training before and I feel me good. I have a strong team and I hope I can win.
Spain's Ivan Mayo has already beaten Armstrong this year. In fact, he hammered him in an uphill time trial last month. But Mayo knows that beating Lance in June and repeating the trick in July are totally different propositions.
Yo saldré con una aspiración máxima y veremos hasta dónde puedo llegar, pero bueno, yo tanto como ganar no diría, ¿no? Me gustaría a una etapa y estar en el podium, igual es más posible ganar, me queda un poco grande igual todavía.
Armstrong's old teammate Tyler Hamilton is more upbeat about his chances. Hamilton finished an astonishing 4th last year after riding with a broken collarbone for 3 weeks. This year, he has a new team custom built to help him take on his old leader.
My objective, the team's objective, is to win. It's clear. I'm confident. I'm confident in the team. I'm confident in myself. It really comes down to me. Certainly there's a lot of pressure on me, but I feel like I have the best of everything. So now, no excuses now for me.
Another US postal defector has joined the enemy this year. Roberto Arras used to be Armstrong's chief protector in the mountains. Now, as leader of his own team, the Spanish climber will be one more dangerous attacker for the defending champion to worry about.
No lo sé. Venimos preparados para intentarlo. Hay muchos candidatos a la victoria. Vamos a intentarlo al menos.
And he's got to take on the course as well this year, which some people think has been designed to make it more difficult for him. They've taken out the first week time trial, which is usually where he builds up a big lead over his rivals. Let's take a look at the route now.
Certainly gets its money's worth out of Belgium this year, with the prologue and 2 stages before the race leaves Waterloo for Vascal, heading back into France by the bone-shaking cobbles of the famous Paris-Roubaix one-day race. There's a rule change in the team time trial this year, which may help some of Lance Armstrong's rivals. Then the sprinters will lead the pack on a high-speed chase cross-country all the way to the Atlantic coast. Week 2 starts with a plane journey to Limoges for the first of 2 rest days. And it's south through the vineyards, ignoring the free tasting signs, and into the Pyrenees. This is where the battle between the defending champion and the men who reckon they're strong enough to attack him will really start. The highlights will be consecutive mountain top finishes at La Mongie and Plateau de Bay, both stages that Armstrong has won before. After another day's rest, the riders head up to the Alps and the first individual time trial of the race. It's only 15 kilometres long. Those 15 kilometres are up the legendary climb of Alpe d'Huez. The Tour's most famous mountain has never been used for a time trial before, and this promises to be a classic stage. No sooner are the riders out of the Alps than they face the Tour's second individual time trial. The 60 kilometres against the clock around Besançon could well decide the race, and if they don't, then it'll have to be decided on the Champs-Élysées. Now, usually the prologue is full of home interest in the form of David Miller.
Not this year though. As you might have read in the newspapers, Britain's World Time Trial champion is out of the race after confessing to the use of the performance-enhancing drug EPO. And while the rest of the riders were lining up for their pre-race medicals here in Liège, David was locked in judges' chambers across the French border in Nanterre, answering a series of highly uncomfortable questions. The rest of his Cofidis team is here, of course, but understandably not starting the race in the best frame of mind.
Shocked and, yeah, feel sorry for Dave. It's a good friend of mine and always will be, and you know, think times like this is going to need more support than anything. So just thinking of him.
Now David has more than just missing the Tour to worry about. He's already out of Britain's Olympic team for Athens, and once he's had time to speak to Cofidis management, he'll very likely be out of a job.
Well, the prologue course in Liège may well have suited David Miller, but of course we'll never know now. 6.1 kilometres, some cobbled stretches and a couple of tricky corners that could turn treacherous if it rained. And having lost David Miller to the legal system, Cofidis proceeded to lose a rider on the warm-up ride. The Australian Matt White, who should have been starting his first Tour de France, came off after hitting a television cable just off the route and headed off to hospital instead with a suspected broken collarbone. Once the race started, another Aussie went down, Michael Rogers touching the tarmac with a pedal and losing himself any chance of taking the early race lead. As we join the action, that is in the possession of the Spaniard Oscar Pereiro, a member of Tyler Hamilton's Phonak squad.
Well, we're looking now at Fabian Cancellara here, Paul. He has, he won't know, of course, the drama at the other end with Jens Voigt just losing first place by 0.02 of a second. Whatever did we do without the clocks in the old days with the old finger and thumb on the stopwatch? Because there's no way we could split these riders without the electronic timing these days. Cancellara has been talked about by a lot of people as the one man who could challenge the big boys in the prologue time trial. And I think they may have just reason to do that now.
We expected this man to put in a fine performance, and look at that, he's well inside. He's the fastest man to that corner so far, and I think he's not going to fade at all. He's a very big, strong bike rider, Phil. This is a new best time.
This is a new best time, his first ever day in his first ever Tour de France. He's on top of the leaderboard, 6:50.93. That is a superb time. Jan Ullrich. He says, I'm tired of finishing second, and he knows better than most. He's done it 5 times. It's a long time since he won this race in 1997. I don't know if you can hear the crowd, but we can. They are screaming at Jan Ullrich. He is the pin-up boy of world cycling. They say he has more talent in his body than any current cyclist.
The one man to add to that is Lance Armstrong, who has always regarded this man here in pink and white of T-Mobile as the most talented bike rider on the circuit. He is a powerful bike rider. He came from an East German upbringing to win the Tour de France a few years ago, but since then he's been dogged by illness and injury and defeat as well, 3 times at the hands of Lance Armstrong. And you're right, Phil, this year he doesn't want to be beaten again. He wants to be the #1 dog.
Well, he's on his way, Jan Ullrich, and that means there's only one man left to start his test now, and time is nearly up. Armstrong is in the start house. We'll see him very shortly. Ahead of Ullrich is Hamilton, ahead of Hamilton is Mayo, behind them all is Armstrong, almost impervious to the noise going on about him as he now concentrates. The countdown. Armstrong launches into his Tour de France. Will it be a record-breaking race for him? He looks for win number 6. He says, I'm not thinking of Paris, I'm taking this day by day and assessing it as I go. Well, he's off.
Look at the powerhouse from Germany here. This
look
man
at those legs, look at those muscles.
Unbelievable.
They're like pistons, they're huge muscles there that are pumping round these pedals. They're all to reach the 3.1 kilometre check at the moment, and that's where we'll get our first indication. But Mayo's there. Mayo's gone through 13 seconds off Cancellara's race time. Cancellara still looking set to win this prologue.
Look at the comparison between the 2 riders. We've just got a glimpse there of the way they were pedaling. Ivan Basso, he's a man who I think can finish in the top 5, is coming into the finishing straight. Won't be too happy with this time. He's going to finish fairly close to 50th position, but more importantly, he's going to lose himself almost half a minute on Fabian Cancellara.
This is Lance Armstrong. Those legs, once they catch up with the cadence, he just sits there and pumps.
He has got an incredible cadence here. He's able to accelerate quickly.
Paul, Ulrich has gone through, same time as Tyler Hamilton at 3.1 kilometres covered. They are locked together. Now we're waiting for Lance to get there.
10 seconds adrift. 10 seconds those two men have gone through slower than Fabian Cancellara. We're looking here at Alessandro Patacchi. This sprint in a couple of days' time will be in front of a huge bunch.
He's practicing there.
Practicing the lunge for the line. It's 55th place for him. But we're now waiting. In the next 30 seconds or so, we should get an indication of how Lance Armstrong is riding. He actually looks pretty good to me.
He looks very fast to me, but we don't know. Ulrich and Tyler Hamilton virtually same time at that check. No time. Armstrong is there. He is lying in second place. He is only 2 seconds off the win. It is possible.
Watch out for the corner. This is the corner that has been the undoing for several riders. He went round there very carefully, didn't touch his brakes. He went in at the right speed. He's in the right gear to accelerate away. We're now looking at Iban Mayo, fourth from the end. A good ride though by him.
Well, this is amazing now. Mayo is doing a good ride. The man that can't ride a time trial is at least not going to lose that many seconds. But Cancellara is just about holding off the man from the Tour de France. Lance Armstrong has gone through only 2 seconds down, and the good riders should accelerate as they come up towards the line. I don't think deep down, Paul, we expected a win from Armstrong today.
I don't think Armstrong expected it, but he did want to go out today and serve a bitter psychological blow to everybody else. You know, at 3.1 kilometres, Cancellara still has the fastest time of 3:18, but Armstrong is only 2 seconds slower than him at this point, and I'm sure that information has gone forward to this man, the big German challenger.
Oh dear, Paul, 8 seconds difference at the halfway mark. Greg LeMond once won the Tour de France by 8 seconds. It could be that important.
It could be so important. It's all down to seconds. The sport has come to such a level now, okay, that it could even be fractions of a second. This man has the most ungainly time trial position and style in the world, but it's probably one of the most efficient.
It is indeed, and Hamilton is not going to lose too much time, nowhere near Cancellara's time, but only 17 seconds. It'll be rounded up to 18 seconds for the overall classification. That's not a lot. He won't be worried about that. He will be concerned about the form, though, being shown by Armstrong.
2 men left to finish. Number 11, the challenger. 6 times he's ridden the Tour de France, Phil. 6 times he's been onto the podium, never lower than second place in the overall classification. He dearly wants to beat this man, Lance Armstrong, who has been the dominator for the last 5 years in a row.
In 6 miles, or 6 kilometres rather, of the Tour de France, we have already developed a great battle between these two terrific athletes. First and second in the Tour de France. 3 times Ulrich has finished second to Lance Armstrong. He's currently second in the time trial. He'll go back a little bit, but it shows you right now that Ulrich himself has continued to accelerate as he comes up to the line. It is not going to be a race-winning time, though. He's also just trying to conserve time here as Ulrich finishes 15th, just slightly better than Hamilton.
Only one man now can beat Fabian Cancellara, who's not too far away from the finishing straight, and the man who can beat him is Lance Armstrong. The time he has to beat is 6 minutes, 50 seconds, 0.9. Armstrong is watching that clock tick over. Look at that face. The pain is going all through his body. It's telling him, please stop, please give me a break. But look at the time.
Paul,
it's unbelievable.
This is a winning time. As he comes up to the line, Lance Armstrong, who won in Luxembourg in 2002, is going to throw down the gauntlet. You know, that book has made him a very, very angry man. As he races up to the line, he's going to have to sprint. It's going to be desperately close. He's missed it. As he hits the line, 1.65 seconds. Fabian Cancellara, in his first Tour de France, he's 23 years of age, has won the prologue. In the battle of psychology, Lance Armstrong wins that.
He wins the first battle, but it's going to be a very long war, this 3-week event. Look at that face. Look at the man as he comes up to the line here. That is an absolutely superb ride, and he has, Phil, delivered a serious psychological blow to everybody else. He's announced to them that he is the strong man, but here is the winner.
Oh.
Here is the new yellow jersey, Fabian Cancellara, Phil, 23 years of age.
I tell you, Paul, this is wonderful. He was born on March the 18th, 1981. He's been a professional since the year 2001. He was a sensational teenage star. He is now about to become a Tour de France stage winner at the very first day of his very first tour.
and he'll probably want this result signed by the entire peloton to put up on his wall. Fabian Cancellara 2 seconds ahead of the defending Tour de France champion Lance Armstrong, with Jose Ivan Gutierrez in third, 8 seconds back. Then Brad McGee, Thor Hushovd, Oscar Pereiro and Jens Voigt separated by another couple of seconds. For Armstrong, though, the real race wasn't with Cancellara. It was with Ulrich, Hamilton and Mayo, and they all had disappointing rides. 15, 16 and 19 second deficits on the American may not seem a lot, but they're a lot over 6 kilometres, and who knows how important they may become down the road. Fabian Cancellara couldn't have cared less about the bigger picture, though. He was on the podium posing for the biggest picture of his life and starting an endless round of interviews, including one with Ned Bolton.
Your first Tour de France, it's your first day of your Tour de France. You couldn't have dreamed that it would end like this.
Yeah, it's more than a dream, because before, when I was young, I have only seen TV and television, the Tour de France, with Miguel Indurain to win, or now with Lance Armstrong. Now I'm here. This is now it's 3 days, and it's all new. It's all special. It's more. It's unbelievable. It's too much.
Now, the Tour attracts its fair share of celebrity spectators. Robin Williams, Eric Idle, Arnold Schwarzenegger last year. However, as far as we know, none of those stars was romantically involved with Lance Armstrong. Sheryl Crow is, and just to help him keep a low profile, she's tagging along this year. Ned Bolton caught up with her before the start.
I think cycling is like what rock and roll probably used to be like when the Stones were in their heyday. I mean, now rock and roll or music has become sort of, it's kind of silly, really. They're great personalities in the sport, and you really get to know who they are, and then you start following them like you do, or you would have your music idols. And people are very dedicated and very emotionally committed to their cyclist, and it's not dissimilar than probably what it used to be like. I think with Lance's situation, he has the opportunity and certainly the capability, but the opportunity now to do something that's never been done before, and that's, I think, as history goes and as originality goes, there's nothing like doing something that's never been done. I think everybody really wants him to win, just to see someone do something that it has always been seen as the impossible. You know, you've had great cyclists before win 5, but this will really be history in the making, and if anybody can do it, it would be Lance. And I think also we've gotten the opportunity to watch Lance grow as a person through his career, and that's something we all relate to. So I'm probably more nervous about it than he is.
There was plenty for Sheryl to be nervous about on stage 1, which was officially flat but actually featured 5 small climbs and the kind of squally weather that has crash written all over it. It also featured the novelty of Lance Armstrong wearing the green jersey of the points competition leader, courtesy of coming second in the prologue. As winner on the opening day, Fabian Cancellara was officially leader of all categories, and since he couldn't wear all the relevant jerseys, Lance was forced into his cast-offs. Well, the crashes weren't long in coming. Mario Cipollini went down off camera, possibly the first thing he's done off camera in his entire career. Then Jens Voigt and Frank Renier simply pointed themselves at the grass verge when they realised they had no chance of making this corner. Worse off was Austria's Bernhard Eisel, who seemed to lose traction on the white lines in the middle of the road before touching somebody's back wheel and going down. Fabian Cancellara was up front at the intermediate sprints, protecting his yellow jersey. Remember, there are time bonuses of 6, 4 and 2 seconds for the first 3 riders under the banner at each of the designated sprints out on the road. And with Thor Hushovd starting the day just 10 seconds behind him, he couldn't let the Norwegian champion go unchallenged. Hushovd took the 6 seconds here, Cancellara 4 for second place, a 2-second net gain to Hushovd. At the next sprint though, Cancellara was second again, with Hushovd nowhere to be seen, so 4 seconds back to Cancellara. With bigger bonuses available for the first 3 riders across the line at the finish though, Cancellara and his Fassa Bortolo team couldn't afford to relax. As we join commentary with less than 5 kilometres to go, they're riding hard at the front of the pack to try to reel in a 2-man breakaway consisting of Denmark's Jacob Peel and Mark Wouters of Belgium.
Cancellara has shown us how to time trial yesterday. Earlier on today, he's also shown us how to sprint. At 5 kilometres to go, he is also in here, and there he is in yellow. Ulrich's team are moving to the front, but not for Jan Ulrich, but for ace sprinter Erik Zabel, 6 times a winner of the points competition.
Yaroslav Ekimov just kicking it up there to bring the pace up a little bit higher. I caught the long, slim figure of the T-Mobile rider, Rolf Aldag, who happens to be sharing a room at the moment with Erik Zabel. We've not spoken about Erik Zabel very much, but you can never discount him in a sprint. And last time the Tour de France came to Charleroi, who was the winner?
Erik Zabel on his birthday. Well, it's not the same date this year. His birthday runs on the 7th of July. I think it's the same date every year, so he can't win on his birthday today.
It's strange the way that works, isn't it?
Isn't
but
it
I
funny?
think Erik Zabel will certainly be super motivated coming back here. You know, if you've won in a place in your career, you're always motivated when a race goes back there. These two riders now have been suffering for a long time. They're looking back and they know the main field is whipping up the pace. They know the main field is not too far behind them, and they know that very shortly the teams of the sprinters must get themselves organised on the front end of the peloton. 4 kilometres to go, 2.5 miles, 15 seconds advantage.
It's at times like this when you've worked this hard, they should give them the victory, but I'm afraid it doesn't work like that in professional sport, and they're out to hunt them down at 15 seconds. It's all over. It's only a matter of when. Mark Wouters, it worked for him last time when he won in Antwerp. It's not going to work this time. Jakob Piel, it worked for him last time when he won down in Marseille. It's not going to work for him this time either. I've noticed Gerolsteiner also had a crash. There's a crash in the field. I don't know if we'll see it, but we're hearing shouts on the race radio. There's the split in the peloton. And there is the chaos. And somebody has gone down. It's a Phonak rider. Now let's hope it's not... I don't think it's Tyler Hamilton. No, it's not Tyler Hamilton who's gone down.
Nicolas
Jalabert.
Well, this is what it's all about on the run into the finish. Just a small touch of wheels and somebody can go down, but everybody was alert at that moment. You see, only one bike rider went down. Now we're approaching the outskirts of Charleroi. 3 kilometres to go. This is not going to take them very much more than 3 minutes. These two riders have not given up at all, and they have still got a breadth of chance in them. They're just hoping they can survive. But look at this. On the front, Cancellara is now whipping up the pace, and it's not to conserve his yellow jersey. It's to try and set up the line, what is normally the blue and white line of the big man from Italy, Alessandro Patacchi, the new sprinter on the block.
Unlucky Jalabert here, because that means he'll lose time today. Not a great concern, but a shame. Unnecessary loss of time. There was one other rider, I think, either delayed or fell, but he got up as well, and he got out before we recognised who it was. But take a look at this now. Fabian Cancellara, the winner yesterday, his first Tour de France, not riding, not thinking long term. He'll still be in yellow tomorrow, but right now his world would be complete if Alessandro Patacchi won the stage. He's the boss.
He's the boss. He's the king of the sprint. 2 kilometres to go. That sign will tell the riders, and unfortunately when they take the next left-hand bell, it goes right the way up towards the finishing line. It's a long, hard line, a long, hard final kilometre. Cancellara on the front, shadowed there by Matteo Tossato, and not far away at the back end of that blue line will be Alessandro Patacchi. And all of the sprinters, Phil, will be fighting to get into his wheel, and it looks to me like now it is all over for the two leaders, and that is tough.
At 1.5 kilometres from the finish and a long straight up to the line shortly, they have pulled back those two leaders. There is the catch as they come round that left-hander. So close, yet so far. Wouters looks across at the bunch. He'll see what he expects. The riders from Fassa Bortolo leading the charge as they are caught. And now it's AG2R for Kersipou who has come to the front. That's thrown a big spanner in the works for Fassa.
A lot of sprinters in the Tour this year. You can see the big organisation coming from AG2R, but they're getting swept away. They don't have the firepower of Fassa Bortolo, and there's still a lot of blue and white jerseys of Fassa Bortolo on the front end of the main field. There is a line of pink jerseys too there as well. That's Team Mobile. That is the team of Erik Zabel. Erik Zabel will be looking for the victory, but there's a good organisation coming in for Fassa Bortolo. They're looking for the final kilometre. They're kicking up the pace. This is a routine they put to success in the Giro d'Italia on 9 separate occasions. Erik Zabel there, Phil, is trying to get the jump up to the wheel of Alessandro Patacchi.
He's got it. Under 1 kilometre to go now. Zabel has got. He's the first pink jersey we can see there. Also Stuart O'Grady's trying to burst in onto the scene, and Jimmy Castor is there. Also Thor Hushoff has started to bounce his way up towards the leaders. Wiped away now the names we've talked about. Lance Armstrong, Jan Ulrich taking a back seat now, because this is a matter for the sprinters. You don't get mixed up with the men of steel who have no nerve, who won't win the Tour de France, but they can win these stages. Zabel is to the right. Danilo Hondo is there. So too is Fabio Alberto. This is going to be one terrific sprint.
Well, coming up through the middle there, you can see Baden Cook as well, the man who won the green jersey points competition last year. The blue jersey of Gerolsteiner is Danilo Hondo. Thor Hushovd has moved up into second position. Everybody is looking for position, and I think Alessandro Pataki is out of place.
But Thor Hushovd isn't. Hushovd is on the left of our picture here. Kersipuu running in the centre of our picture now. This could be a tremendous result, and Robbie McEwen coming late on the line. I think it's Kersipuu, so does he. Boy, McEwen came late, but he could have stolen it on the photo. He won a stage of the Tour of Switzerland when the other guy thought he'd won this year. Robbie kept going. I think I'm going to give it to Kersipuu, but that was desperately close, and Hushovd was right there as well, and he will move right up the overall classification, probably to second. Now there is McEwen on the right. This is Jan Kersipuu pushing to the middle. Hushovd is over to the left. The camera needs to show us down below. We're not interested in this because we need to know where those wheels are.
Look at the face of Jan Kersipuu. I'm pretty sure he knows with confidence that he was ahead. Let's have a look from the helicopter angle here. Hushovd starting the sprint there on the right-hand side. He's got a great line there, right up against the barriers. That means nobody can overtake him on the inside, only coming round the left-hand side, which is exactly what Jan Kersipuu is trying to do. Kersipuu admirably set up here by his teammate. A last lunge for the line here coming by Robbie McEwen. McEwen is up alongside the Estonian rider, but as you can see the lunge for the line, it was too desperate. Jan Kersipuu gets win number one. Nice move by him.
Well, the helicopter shot confirmed it. Jan Kersipuu just ahead of a fast-closing Robbie McEwen, with Thor Hushovd in third. Fabian Cancellara's teammate Alessandro Pataki, the world's leading sprinter this season, was back in 8th, apparently having lost the fight for position in the home straight. All the contenders for overall victory finished safely in the main pack, so no time gaps there.
Jan, before this stage everyone was talking about Pataki, but you were the man who crossed the line first.
Normal, because he has so many victories this year, and as well Tom Boonen. And well, maybe they were too much marked, and I had a little more liberty maybe. And that and the sprint as well suited me, because with a little uphill and with a headwind. So this is a sprint, not very fast sprint, but you need to have much power and strength. So that suited me as well.
Trailing in 6 minutes behind Jan Kersipuu was Brad McGee, one of the pre-race favourites for the prologue, now a leading candidate for first rider to abandon. A second day on the podium for Fabian Cancellara though, and after the yellow jersey he promised his mum, he can now start thinking about who gets number 2. Afterwards he spoke to Ned.
Fabian, you said you wanted to stay in yellow, you've done it, how does it feel?
Wow, I'm happy. I'm think I'm also more happy, because another day in yellow jersey is it's very good. It's crazy. It's a crazy day. It's crazy. These 2 days too much crazy, but it's good. It's a good feeling, and I hope I can this have tomorrow after the stage another day.
Well, a look at the general classification shows that Cancellara's lead has doubled. He started the day 2 seconds ahead of Armstrong. Now he's 4 seconds ahead of Thor Hushovd. Hushovd picked up an 8-second bonus for being third on the stage, and if Fabian hadn't battled for all those intermediate sprints out on the road, he might have lost his lead. Lance Armstrong now slips to third, 10 seconds back, not that that'll worry him, and his lead over his main challengers remains the same.
Now, stage 2 looked like being another long, windy day's work for the Fassa Bortolo team, chasing down breakaways to keep their man Cancellara in the yellow jersey. Bad news for Alessandro Pataki, who would really rather have some fresh legs in front of him for the sprint finish. Mario Cipollini wouldn't mind some fresh legs either. Unfortunately for the world's former fastest man, he's stuck with the ones he's got, and they're now 37 years old. But although he's not as quick as he once was, Chippo still packs a mean wardrobe, and it's good to have him bringing some colour back to the Tour after 4 years away. Here's Ned.
Yes, the Lion King is back. The big Italian with the understated personality and the shy, retiring racing style has returned to his old hunting ground. It's fully a decade since Super Mario won his first stage on the Tour de France in 1993, and in the following 6 years he notched up another 11, the last of which came in 99 when he blasted to 4 consecutive wins in the first week of the Tour. One of those was the fastest road stage in Tour history.
Of course, there are always three traditional questions which we always used to ask of Mario Cipollini. Number one, how many stages will he win?
Per me riuscire a vincere soltanto una tappa varrebbe come vincerne 10, perché sarebbe una dimostrazione di caparbietà, di voglia e di capacità nel voler ottenere un risultato.
It'll be tough. Gone is the big red train, the hallmark of his dominance throughout the 90s, the distinctive sight of half a dozen scarlet psychos bearing down on unsuspecting French towns. If he's going to do it, much will depend on his new teammates at Domina Vacanzi. No glorious Technicolor, Cipollini is now in black and white. Gone too is his youth, now 37. Age has not withered him, but it's probably slowed him down a touch. Add to that the emergence of Alessandro Petacchi as the new chip off the old Chippo block, and he's in for a struggle. Petacchi has been sweeping all before him. Quadruple stage winner last year at the Tour, he's just come back from 9 stage wins in the Giro d'Italia.
Petacchi credo che sia estremamente all'altezza, ha una squadra imperniata su di lui, esce da un Giro d'Italia estremamente vincente, per cui sarà sicuramente il faro di questi sprint e noi cerchiamo di rendergli la vita più difficile possibile.
Number 2. What awful sort of clothes will he wear, and how much is it going to cost him in fines?
The undisputed world wardrobe champion has picked up where he left off. His controversial full spandex all-in-one body hugger, which he donned for Saturday's prologue, was deemed just too all-in-one for the Tour. At the age of nearly 40, he was forced to wear shorts for the day. Extreme measures, but the Tour simply wouldn't allow him to start without the intervention of the scissors. Just another clothing crime in a long list of previous offences. The mellow yellow, the stars and stripes, the green machine, and how could we forget Julius Caesar? Gone too are the long locks that could launch 1,000 attacks and sell 1,000 coffee machines.
And finally, exactly how far up the first mountain will he give up?
The answer, of course, is not very far. The slightest twitch on the altimeter and Chippo's heading for an early bath. And by the way, don't believe him when he says
per accontentare i giornalisti e i media di sportivi una volta per forza bisogna arrivare a Parigi, speriamo che sia l'anno buono.
Chippo has never completed the Tour, and just when you think it'll end in tears, with him it normally does. A nice little side bet might be the battle for the back seat in the broom wagon between Petacchi and Chippo.
So, given that this is almost certainly Mario Cipollini's last appearance at the Tour de France, like that final one for the road, enjoy it while it lasts.
Well, it'd be nice to see Chippo register a win before he retires from the Tour, but stage 2, 197 kilometres from Charleroi to Namur, was developing nicely for his successor Alessandro Petacchi and for Fabian Cancellara. A 6-man break was out front, none of them a threat to Cancellara's race lead, so Fassa Bortolo could relax, let other teams do the chasing and save their legs to set Petacchi up at the finish, providing the break got caught. As we join the race, they're approaching the final intermediate sprint of the day. Inside 40 kilometres to go, and with a lead of 1:45 over the chasing pack.
Looking here now at Christophe Mongeon, still a member of the 6-man leading break. Mark Scanlon sitting right behind him. Now, somewhere in the distance is the last sprint of the day for those small time bonuses, the small prize, and a small number of points for the green jersey competition. And it looks as though it is going to be a rather nasty uphill sprint this last 500 metres.
Going to be tricky. You can see once again on the front there, Christophe Mongeon is the man leading it out, looking over his shoulder. Scanlon in second position. Pinot in third. But they need to watch out for the man who's been 100% successful so far. The rider from Cofidis is in the ideal position here to surprise him.
What he'll have to do if he wins this, he's got to hang on. Oh, there's been a mass crash at the back of the peloton here. One of the Domina Vacanzi riders down again. I'm just trying to see who it is, but well, it's certainly not on this occasion.
It's Fanini.
It's
That's the lead-out man for Mario Cipollini, who's gone down there quite dramatically.
Gian Matteo Fanini, meanwhile, while he sits in the grass back at the front, Jakob Peel leads out here, but he's going to get pipped again. And this is a fine piece of sprinting by Cofidis, as indeed Edelin makes it a hat-trick. Back to the crash, Fanini.
Perron. That's Andrea Perron who's gone down there for Team CSC. There's somebody else who's rather seriously injured. Is still at the side of the road there, Gian Matteo Fanini, who's pretty hard hit. Fortunately, he was able to dive across, I think, into the side of the road and get himself into the grass. But this is rather dramatic for Mario Cipollini because he is an ideal. And Andrea Perron, let's have a look here. There's a Phonak rider gone down as well.
Well, let's hope it's not Tyler. It doesn't look like Tyler Hamilton. 1, 2, 3 stepping off his bike there. That was Anthony Chateau. Gerard Porte, the doctor here, just checking on Fanini and again checking his collarbone.
That's the biggest injury. All bike riders fear this when they go down, just because of the way that you go down. That is the bone that more often than not will crack, and I think it might be the situation here that this man could have just snapped his collarbone.
Well,
it
this
doesn't
is
look like he's getting up.
I think this is they're called in the doctor's car there. It looks as though he might be out, and this is a big blow for Cipollini, that's for sure.
Well, with less than 25 kilometres to go, the inevitable happened when the pack, led by the sprinters team, swallowed up the six-man break, and everything was in place for a big bunch finish. The man with the most to gain from it, though, was in trouble. Thor Hushovd, to credit Agricole, just 4 seconds off the race lead, remember, was involved in a crash that damaged his bike and forced him to swap to a replacement that didn't seem to suit him.
What sprinters like to see in the last kilometre of a race is a long, wide boulevard like this, straight up to the finish line, so they can judge how to make their effort by pinpointing exactly where the line is. Unfortunately, that's not the situation today, because at 400 metres to go, the road actually starts to curve around. It curves around up until 150 metres to the line. Only then can they actually see the line and know when to open up the sprint. If Alessandro Petacchi wants to win this race this afternoon, he's going to want to go right along these barriers, probably in third position behind 2 of his teammates, and then he will open up the sprint for the line. Maybe he'll open up his account here at the Tour de France this year.
It is Flecker here, who is riding hard at the front and riding with supreme determination for his team. And it's unusual for a Spanish rider to be so good on the flat, really. 5 kilometres to go.
He's a great bike rider. We've seen a lot of him throughout this season. In fact, he's a completely changed bike rider since he came across to Fassa Bortolo. And I tell you what, Phil, at 5 kilometres to go, this is very reminiscent of the Serengeti Plains. You know, this looks like the migration of the great wildebeest.
We're going slightly faster, mind you. Running down the side now of... Oh, there's been another crash, and Seiko have got a man down now. Well, this is amazing the way this is happening. And looking at his number, this is Stefano Casagrande, who makes a return after a few years out of the Tour de France. Perhaps it's not the time to remind him of that.
I don't think it is. He's not too worried. He knows now he's inside of 5 kilometres to go. He's not got to worry about the elimination time. Just trying to fix his machine on his own, but the action and the excitement is really on the front end of the main field. Fassa Bortolo in the blue and white jerseys are very much in control, and I think they have got themselves organised to perfection. Look at that. The 4th place rider is the yellow jersey. Don't forget, he is a Fassa Bortolo rider. And then right behind, there are 4 or 5 others. Now they're keeping the tempo high, but they're also seeing a situation here where Alessio are setting up the sprint, possibly for big Magnus Backstedt.
And wouldn't that be a lovely result, especially for one Megan in South Wales. But let's see what happens here now, as Alessio are looking here. Scott Sunderland making a return to this team as well, the Australian. 1996 was the last time Scott rode the Tour de France. Since then he's had to recover from a near-death crash in the bike races. Well, he is now in there somewhere, and his team are working very hard. But just look at the change of rhythm there as Fabian Cancellara now goes to the front as he rides yet again in support of his man Petacchi.
Right now, he's forgotten about his yellow jersey. He's thinking about the stage win for his team leader, the man who is regarded as the fastest man in the world. He wasn't the fastest man yesterday when he only finished 8th, but Fassa Bortolo have got the organisation which they didn't have yesterday. Cancellara is in 1st place. I would think it's next to be Tossato coming up. Then the last man to be just in front of the big sprinter Alessandro Petacchi will be Marco Velo, and he's the man who sets him up for the final sprint to the line.
Look at that, the maillot jaune of the Tour de France, first in the race and first on the race right now, as he just puts his head down and keeps that rhythm going, keeps the pace up, not far short of 50 kilometres. Now, goodness me, they went through the straw bales there. I wasn't sure whether that was Eric Zabel.
That was Eric Zabel, and you know what he's doing? He's battling to get the wheel of the man 5th in line there, because the man 5th in line is Alessandro Petacchi. There's Hushovd as well. Everybody is moving up through this line here to try and battle for the wheel of Alessandro Petacchi. They know if they can be on that wheel, they've got a great chance of opening up the sprint.
Well, this is going to be too quick, I think, for Mario Cipollini, who's lost his lead-out man today. Don't forget, with Fanini crashing out with a broken collarbone suspected. I don't know if you saw to the right there, Paul. That was Robin McEwen, who was waving his arms in the air. He's now moved into the heart of the field here.
Well, he was trying to get up around the outside, taking a few risks. Everybody is taking risks now. The arms are coming off the handlebars. Heads are being used to keep themselves in position. Baden Cook is right up at the front end of the main field. You can see now Kim Kirken moving up into 3rd place. He's got the national champions jersey of Luxembourg on his shoulders, but he is well and truly a Fassa Bortolo rider.
I tell you what, the big heads of the race here have got out of the way. Lance Armstrong, Jan Ulrich, Mayo, Zubeldia, Tyler Hamilton, they're all taking a back seat now. because this is the front row in the afternoon matinee, and the man driving with tremendous speed is Cancellara. I think the legs are slowly now having to give best. Cofidis take over.
Cofidis take over, but it's still a lot of blue and white jerseys of Fassa Bortolo on the front. Kim Kürken here looking great. He's all over his bike. He knows he's got to bury himself for the next 500 metres or so, and when he swings off, he knows that one of his teammates will take up the pace-making. This is how you lead out a big sprint. But look, you can see in about 8th position, a long way back still, Alessandro Patacchi is slightly boxed in. He's got a number of riders from Gerolstein and moving up through the outside. Fassa Bortolo right now need to kick it up a notch.
Well, the Fassa Bortolo boys have got control, but here comes Gerolstein, who've got a big sprinter in Danilo Hondo. That's not Hondo who's got there yet, it'll be the helpers, but look at that sweep round to the right now, momentarily out of range. Here they come back into view now. Fassa Bortolo been split up here by the Gerolsteiner team, and Eric Zabel is still in there, the 6 times winner of the green jersey. Hushoff a little bit further down. This is going to be one terrific sprint.
Hushoff needs to move up right now if he's going to get himself the yellow jersey at the end of the day. Don't forget he needs to finish in 3rd position, but now they're kicking up to the line. There's going to be a long sweeping left-hand bend. Alessandro Patacchi has got Eric Zabel right on his wheel, but in fact Freddie Agricola taking over supremacy.
Well, look at this now, because Hushoff is being led here to a yellow jersey. First 3 will be good enough on the bonuses. The lead out now, and again Alessandro Patacchi's been moved out of it a little bit. Hushoff is finding himself in a perfect position as they swing now towards the finish. Hushoff must kick here. This is going to be a tremendous result. There's been a crash and a major pile up there as the riders go through, but keep your eyes on the front because Robbie McEwen is taking it. McEwen always comes out best when the going gets rough. Hushoff is the new maillot jaune of the Tour de France, and McEwen in Belgium gets the result, and he leaves behind the debris.
Well, he gave warning on stage 1, Robbie McEwen, and he timed it perfectly on stage 2. No need for a photo. Thor Hushoff was even happier with 2nd, and Jean-Patrick Nazon took 3rd. For the 2nd day running, though, Alessandro Patacchi was a disappointing 8th. With Gian Matteo Fagnini out nursing a broken collarbone, Mario Cipollini had no help in the sprint. He came in 10th as a freelance, while Lance Armstrong and the rest of the overall contenders avoided the home straight crash and finished safely in the same time as the winner. Well, he's been overshadowed by Alessandro Patacchi for most of the season, but Robbie McEwen was timed today at 66 kilometres an hour coming across the line. Ned Boulting caught up with him at the bottom of the podium steps.
2nd yesterday and a stage winner today. It's all working out beautifully for you, isn't it?
Yeah, yesterday I was a bit disappointed because I felt really great in the sprint, but I ran out of road to be able to catch Kisipu. Today I started fairly early, and yeah, if you're not feeling really good, you don't win from that distance. I think I hit the front at 2:50 to go, but I felt great and I was able to go all the way through to the line, and to get one in, a stage win, in the first 2 days is great, takes pressure off now.
And you had special reasons to dedicate that stage win today as well.
Yeah, true. An ex-teammate of mine, Steve Vermont, he unfortunately passed away last week and was buried today. So for him and his family, and also for my teammate and roommate, Nick Gates, who couldn't start today because he injured himself yesterday.
So a great day for Robbie McEwen, but as far as the standings go, 2nd place was more important today. Thor Hushoff took it, and the 12-second bonus that comes with it was enough for him to leapfrog Fabian Cancellara and take 1st place. Cancellara, who did his bit at the front, delivering Patacchi to the finish, is now 2nd, and 2 good days for Robbie McEwen move him up to 3rd and Lance Armstrong down into 4th. By the way, riders can't lose time for crashes inside the final kilometre of the race, so Kurt Asler Arvidsson keeps his 15th place, and all the other big names are where they were in relation to each other. So Thor Hushoff is the 2nd yellow jersey of the 2004 race, the first Norwegian, as well as the first man named Thor, I believe, to lead the Tour. However, he almost didn't make it to the finish, involved in that crash with Frederick Bessy.
Like 15k to go, I had somebody touch my bike and the bike broke down, so I had to change it, and the whole team went back to get me back on, and that was so hard. I was already then tired, but last 5k I recovered, and Julian Din did a perfect lead out, took me up to a perfect position 200 meters to go.
At that stage you must have thought it would have been tough to end up in the yellow jersey.
Yeah, after I had a problem 15k to go, I said, I think it would be hard to be top 3, but I'm in good shape, I love the power, and now I took my 12 seconds and now I'm in yellow.
This is the infamous pavé, the cobblestones of northern France. And tackling them on a road bike is like trying to pedal a pneumatic drill. The big difference being that at least with a pneumatic drill, you're the one inflicting damage on the road. This terrain forms part of Paris-Roubaix, perhaps the most famous one-day race in the cycling calendar. So for the Tour organisers, it's simply a matter of paying their respects. To them, each one of these cobbles is a unique piece of cycling history. To the riders, though, they all look the same, like a trip to Casualty. In fact, there were only 4 kilometres worth of cobbles on the 210-kilometre stage, split into 2 sections. But everyone knows the kind of carnage Paris-Roubaix regularly produces, and the bunch was extremely nervous approaching the first stretch of pavé, all trying to get to the front where it was safest.
There is a lot of work being done here now as they try to defend the front of the peloton. Just look at that long line, and there's been a crash. There is another pile-up again at the back. That, in fact, is Noval, who was moments ago driving the charge.
I saw that number, and all of a sudden I thought it was a number 1. It looked very much like number 1, but it is Benjamin Noval. This is the kind of accident that can happen, and this accident must have happened pretty close up to the front end of the main field. This is Iban Mayo, who's gone down, number 31. Now, this is a very important moment. We had said that the cobblestone sections and the run-up to the cobblestones was very dangerous. Iban Mayo does not have any teammates around him as we speak, and in fact 2 or 3 of his teammates went down in that incident. He's going to have a major battle right now to get himself up to the rear end of the main field.
While the Tour doctors dealt with the aftermath of the crash, the front of the field was already on the cobbles, with Lance Armstrong protected by a full retinue of US postal workers. Behind them, Euskaltel had regrouped to try to pace the bruised and bloody Mayo back into the race. Thor Hushovd, the yellow jersey, was in the same group, but the gap was widening, not coming down, which meant there was going to be a new race leader at the finish. The most likely candidates were the men who started the day second and third, Fabien Cancellara and the Tour's informed sprinter, Robbie McEwen.
Remember, the winner gets a 20-second bonus, second gets 12 seconds, third gets 8 seconds. And at this stage of the Tour de France, it could produce almost one of 7 or 8 riders as the new leader of the Tour. Just hope we get it right when we come to the finish. But Robbie McEwen, who's never worn the yellow jersey, and only 3 Australians ever had, by the way, Phil Anderson, Stuart O'Grady and Brad McGee. And I know that Robbie would like to join that rather salubrious group of Aussies.
He certainly would. He's in fine sprinting form. The acceleration he got yesterday surprised 1 or 2 of his competitors, including one by the name of Alessandro Patacchi, who said, I wanted to get onto McEwen's wheel, but he came past me so fast there was absolutely nothing I could do, and when I saw that he'd got the gap, I basically gave up because I knew I wasn't going to win. This is the group of the yellow jersey, Thor Hushovd, a yellow jersey for a day. He started the day with an 8-second advantage over Cancellara, a 17-second advantage over Robbie McEwen, and 18 over Lance Armstrong, but that has all completely changed right now.
Well, looking down there, a very select group. Alessandro Patacchi obviously feels confident now as he's got his team working again on the front. This is going to be a sprint royale, even though we split the field, because some of the best sprinters are still here. I'm not too sure Baden Cook's made it. I think he must have been left back.
Baden Cook, I haven't seen him. I think he might have had an incident earlier on at the rear end of the event, but certainly Cancellara is looking to see if he can help his own teammate out to get himself the win. Cancellara will hope that Robbie McEwen doesn't get into the top 3, because if Robbie McEwen does not make top 3 on the stage, then Fabien Cancellara, the first wearer of the yellow jersey, will get himself the yellow jersey back again. But there's a lot of confusion. There are a lot of riders in this group here, Phil, from Fassa Bortolo, nice and organised. Don't discount Jan Ullrich having a go to try and lead out Eric Zabel, because Zabel is just bobbing around in and out there with the pink and white jersey of T-Mobile.
And there's always also the possibility that Mark Scanlon could win this. He packs a good sprint, although he'll feel his job perhaps is to lead out Jean-Patrick Nazon, who is still the team's #1 sprinter in this race. He won in Paris last year and was right up amongst the placings yesterday, so he's warming up. Now the pressure is going on here as they try to take control for Patacchi, but Lotto have a man in second place.
This is a dodgy part of the course here. They don't come into the nice long straightaway until 1.5 kilometers to go. They're going through a nice little neighborhood, but unfortunately there are 3 or 4 very difficult corners that they have to negotiate. Fassa Bortolo keeping the pace nice and high. They're trying to keep their man Alessandro Patacchi at the front end of the main field. Danilo Hondo could be a serious contender for the win this afternoon. A couple of years ago, we remember, he won 3 stages of the Giro d'Italia. We thought he was going to be the new sprinter on the block.
Well, this is the difficult part of the race today now, but they're going so quick. They've pulled it into a long, thin line, which will eliminate some of the dangers around the back streets here. As we run through the suburbs of Vascal, this is really a very nice residential area, although the neighbours have had to move the cars off the road today for the arrival of the Tour de France. 2 kilometres from the finish now. The big sprinters are still here. Robbie McEwen is here, Danilo Hondo, Jean-Patrick Nazon, and of course Alessandro Patacchi, who's looking for revenge today.
The team that's got the biggest organisation, though, is Gerolsteiner in the pale blue jerseys there. They're looking over their shoulders to see the position of Danilo Hondo. Jean-Patrick Nazon is not too far away. He won the final stage of the Tour de France last year, if you remember, on the Champs-Élysées, the one that all the sprinters want to see. Now they're at 1.5 kilometres to go. It is straightening up. Robbie McEwen is a long way back.
Miles.
Too far back, I think, for the moment. He's going to panic, but Robbie is a clever bike rider. He'll wait for a slight slowing at the front end of the main field and take advantage of that to catapult himself up into the top 5.
Well, he is an awful long way back. If he wins this, it would not surprise us. He's a very talented bike rider. There he is there, the green jersey, sitting on the back wheel, I think, of Voigtler there, probably Kim Kirk, and actually a Luxembourg champion, similar colours to the champions of France and Holland. But Kim Kirken it is, and in fact McEwen has got his wheel. Now the big lead out though is coming for Danilo Hondo here, the third wheel of those 3 boys. A bit of an early swing over because Hondo's being left now, and Jean-Patrick Nazon and Mark Scanlon are both moving up here now. This is going to be a tight sprint, and Robbie still is not in the frame as they line up for the finish now. Hondo gets the big lead out. This could be a great win for the German if it happens. Jean-Patrick Nazon digs on the left of our picture now. Now Hondo goes here. Hondo launches for the line, but there's a big fan. Robbie McEwen no way through, or is there? Oh, it's a shame the cars come in the front view here, because there's McEwen off to the right now as we try to look over the top of the car. McEwen is digging in, and if he hits the line first, and I think he's going to, he's got tremendous power. McEwen on the line though. I think that's Jean-Patrick Nazon who has taken it on the line. That is a great result. McEwen maybe 3rd or 4th, and I don't think that's good enough, but we'll have to see how the maths work out on that one as to who leads the Tour, but the winner is Nazon.
The winner was Jean-Patrick Nazon, making the first stage finish in France a home win ahead of Eric Zabel. But more importantly for the race overall, Robbie McEwen took 3rd, and the all-important 8-second bonus that went with it. Lance Armstrong's group was just behind them, but nearly 4 minutes had passed by the time Iban Mayo struggled in, facing the prospect that his Tour challenge might be over just 4 days into the race. Robbie McEwen's Tour, though, was getting better by the day. He'd finished 2nd, 1st and 3rd on consecutive days, and the bonuses he picked up along the way were enough to put him into the race lead by a second ahead of Fabian Cancellara. The leading big name was still the biggest of all, Lance Armstrong in 5th, and the time gaps to his major rivals were starting to open up. Closest to him were 2 Americans, Rabobank's Levi Leipheimer and a rejuvenated Bobby Julich riding for CSC, both within 10 seconds. Jan Ullrich was another 5 seconds behind them, just ahead of Tyler Hamilton. The climbers Francisco Mancebo and Roberto Heras were over half a minute down, but the big loser was Iban Mayo, who in the space of a stage had slipped to 101st place, 4 minutes and 7 seconds behind the man he beat in a warm-up race for the Tour just last month. Robbie McEwen, by the way, did double duty on the podium, taking the green jersey as leader of the points competition, as well as the yellow of race leader.
Let's have a look at 1 or 2 emails. This is one we've had from a lot of you. Alan Hughes in Exeter and Alex McGibbon will give you credit. If it is an unwritten rule in cycling, you don't attack when there has been a crash. Why did the peloton not wait for Iban Mayo? The US Postal Team seemed to increase the pace at the front. Well, first of all, I don't think the US Postal Team were attacking Mayo at all. They knew the cobblestones were coming and the strongest men got to the front because they knew there would be a lot of crashes behind. They weren't attacking any particular rider on this situation at all. They just wanted to make sure they were safe. I don't think you can expect anybody to wait in that situation, Paul.
I think everyone was very nervous about the cobblestones. I don't think they accelerated the pace. They certainly didn't wait for Iban Mayo after the cobblestones. But let's not forget there was another cobblestone section coming up a little further up the road, and I think that's why the speed of the main field just kept up, and at the end of the day, Euskaltel-Euskadi were not strong enough to bring Mayo back into the race.
That's true. It's true the Spanish riders don't really like riding on these particular roads, and if you get yourself in the wrong position in the peloton, the chances are you will fall. I don't think it was any case of a rider attacking another rider. It was simply a case of every man riding for himself on that particular day. Graham Lang in Plymouth, as someone who's just turned 40, I would be interested to know the age of the oldest rider ever to complete the race. Well, indeed, we're not absolutely certain who is the oldest riders to actually finish the Tour, but we can certainly tell you there are a number of riders at your age, Graham, who have ridden extremely well in this race. The oldest winner, by the way, is Fernand Lambeau in 1922. He was a mere 36, just a youngster. Uzien Christophe, Joop Zoetemelk, Remo Polidor, Joachim Agostino, they all completed the Tour when they were 40 years of age. That must have been fantastic for them. David Murphy from Glasgow, this is one for you, Paul. Why do they have feeding stations when you can get replenished from team cars throughout the race?
Well, in fact, the reason is, I think, that out on the course, the reason to have a feeding station is so that it takes away the chaos of all the riders in the field going back to the team cars to take on board food and drinks. If that was to happen, there'd be a constant movement of riders going back to the team cars all of the time, and it would be very precarious. The reason they changed the rules to allow riders to go back to the team car to take on board drinks and food is basically because of safety. In the old days, riders were only allowed to take drinks at the start and at one point during the race, but because of the fact that physiologically we've understood a lot more about athletes' bodies, and we know now they need to take on 3, 4 and even 5 litres of drinks during the course of a race, that they've made the rules just that little bit more flexible.
They certainly spend a lot of time back at those cars when the sun comes out. Let's hope it isn't too long before it does and gets warmer. Moving on, our last question, and Mike Beer from Liverpool. Is there a wet weather tyre?
Well, yes, there is. In the 1980s, when I was racing and when I went to the UK to race in the city centre races, they had a tyre specifically for wet weather conditions, and I thought it was very good. It's never really been adopted in races like the Tour de France because the rubber compound was so sticky, it felt as if it was sticking to the road once the weather started to dry out, and it's impossible really to have riders start on a wet weather tyre and change halfway through the race like the Tour de France, just because it's not structured the same way as a Formula One event, for example.
And remember, the tyres at the moment are blown up very hard, and that's probably why some riders are falling in the wet, often 4 times the pressure of a car tyre. Let's go back to the action.
Now, it's a funny event, the team time trial, sort of a cycling equivalent of tax breaks for the rich, whereby a big star on a strong team can gain significant advantage over a talented challenger who can't quite afford the same supporting cast. In 2003, for example, Lance Armstrong won the Tour over Jan Ullrich by 61 seconds, and 43 of those came from the team time trial. His advantage over Ivan Mayo in this event was closer to 3.5 minutes. Now, to their credit, the Tour organisers have recognised this problem, and instead of having the gumption to simply drop the team time trial, as they did for a few years in the 90s, they've introduced rule changes to limit the amount of time each team can lose on the stage. That is to say, they're loath to lose the colourful spectacle of 9 men riding in formation in skin suits, but they'd rather it didn't have too much effect on the outcome of the race. Here's Ned Bolting to explain.
Race management in consultation with the stewards. Well, just when you thought the rules governing the team time trial were complicated enough, watch out, they've just got a whole lot more complicated. Now, pay attention, the gentleman will say this only once.
The new rule is very important for rider because it's not it's not obligation and then the finish on the winter, the delay is very, very long. Now it's possible, with new rule, it's finished, it's on the top, it's 3 minutes. Et on peut, j'ai pas un peu pensé, between 2 teams, it's possible 20 seconds. For example, the first team, time is 0, the second team, 50 seconds. 15 seconds is possible to time in the classical general is 15 seconds.
So basically what that means is that if, like LeTour, who lost 4 minutes 53 seconds on the team time trial last year, you're frankly no good at it, then why bother putting any effort in at all? The worst that's going to happen to you is you're going to lose 3 minutes. Big deal.
In fact, there is a little more to it than that. The most time the second place team can now lose is set at 20 seconds. The third place can lose no more than 30 seconds, and so on, all the way down to that maximum 21st place time limit of 3 minutes. The confusion is so abundant that not even the riders themselves have fully digested the facts.
Teams like our team, we spent a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of equipment to build a team that can go fast in climbs and on the flat. And, we really put in a big effort to make our team trial working good. And now it's all limited. I mean, nobody really seriously is talking about having a 2 minutes 30 limit on LPS time trial. I would like that. Why is that? No, the climbers, they cannot lose time in a team time trial. But us, the big and heavy guys, we lose 6 minutes, 8 minutes on a time trial on LPS. So we should then have 2 minutes 30 on both time trials, or just forget about it.
The upshot of it all is that once more in the Tour's long history of tampering with the rules, uncertainty and possibly amused bafflement will be widespread. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Which is more than the riders could. This shot shows you just how fortunate they were that there was no rain on the cobbles on stage 3. No such luck on this stage though, and the early teams were all having trouble in the driving rain. Race leader Robbie McEwen wasn't out of trouble even after he'd finished. On the way back to the team bus, he had the indignity of being attacked by souvenir hunters, or possibly very young eBay merchants who were after his bottle. Well, Robbie's quick to lose his at the best of times and gave them a lesson in manners by taking it back off the chief culprit and handing it to a more respectful young fan in front of him. Not so sure about the English lesson he gave them though. The best early time was set by the Spanish squad, Illas Balears, who came in with a time of 1 hour, 13 minutes and 18 seconds. With the teams going out in reverse order of their rankings in the team competition, US Postal were last to start. At the first time check, after 19 kilometres though, they were only 5th fastest. And their Tour novice, Benjamin Noval, had dropped off the back, leaving 8 men to take their turns at the front. By the time they hit the second time check, the weather had improved substantially, and so had they. Through the 41.8 kilometre point, they had the best split time, 28 seconds faster than the leaders in the clubhouse, Illas Balears. As we pick up commentary, the next team to finish will be Jan Ullrich's T-Mobile.
So as T-Mobile come up now, it's 1:12:55 and counting.
It's going to be a very fast time here for these riders as they come to the line. Now then, this is the time that they've got to beat, 1:13:18. They've got to go round these corners very quickly. Team Mobile are not going to do it. They will not get it there this time, but they will go very close indeed.
Well, this is an incredible sprint for the line. They've just slipped behind Balears as they come up to the line, but they're in second place, 1:13:22 for T-Mobile. They really did pull that one out of the bag.
Tyler Hamilton's team here, still looking strong, but they're down now to 5 riders. I cannot believe this. This is bad. This is panic on the streets of London, or should I say panic on the streets of northern France.
Well, you say it's panic, Paul, but their time is improving since they've lost their men. They've gone through in second place. What they've done now is throw out all their cards. They can't lose anybody else, otherwise they've got to stop and wait.
The Team CSC are catching a couple of riders who were dropped from Team Phonak a little earlier. That's Santiago Perez, who's being caught there, and Nicolas Jalabert. And they will just try and ride to the finish now and make sure that they don't get eliminated. But Team CSC are doing a fabulous job here. They were well down in the 15th place at the first time check, and they're pulling themselves up now into the top 5.
There's the times of the leader at the bottom, 1:13:18. It'll be a big call, but I think it's just possible, this, as they come up the rise and make the left turn onto the cobblestones. They could snick it by a couple of seconds. They're going to have to put a bit of a sprint in, but what a turn-up. The problems this team has had on the road, and to produce this ride, this has been absolutely remarkable. And as they come to the line, the clock will give them best time, 1:13:10. Incredible.
That is unbelievable. This team has had 5 riders for the last 15 kilometres The majority of the work must have been done in there by Tyler Hamilton. There is Oscar Sevilla, babyface they call him. He's looked like a 15-year-old for the last 10 years, but he's a man that Tyler Hamilton can really count upon in the big mountains. This is a huge bonus this afternoon for Tyler Hamilton and Team Phonak. Let's not forget, first participation in the Tour de France for this team, which is why Hamilton switched across.
It looks like settling for fourth. Bobby Wisely saying just take it easy. We're not going to worry about second on these cobbles. As they swing into the home straight, nobody's going to fall. They cruise to the line here. Do they hold fourth? It's going to be close, I think, because they were fifth at the last check, and they've just got about enough time to get to the line here for fourth. And that, after all their trouble, simply brilliant. 1:13.49, fourth at the moment.
Absolutely magical performance. Just to remind ourselves, Phil, at the first time check, Team CSC was 12th place, 58 seconds down off the leaders. They have done one of the performances of the event. When you add in all of the mishaps and misfortunes they've had out on the course, this has been a great ride by this team.
Absolutely outstanding. The face there, the study of Bobby Julich, who is refining himself. Once a third place finisher, let us never forget that, in the Tour de France in 1998. Well, there are two teams left. One we've never seen at all, Fassa Bortolo, but they're not featuring at all. But I can now tell you that US Postal at the third check is through 1 minute and 8 seconds ahead of Elis Berliris and clearly in the lead.
Wow, that is unbelievable. 1:08 at 56.8 kilometers covered.
Here comes Fassa Bortolo. They're nowhere in the hunt at any of the time checks. Life has not improved for them. They're not interested in the overall classification. They're hoping that Alessandro Batacchi will find his sprinting legs very shortly and start winning stages for them. Ninth at 1:14.55. Here they come, no need to worry. The big Commander-in-Chief, George Hincapie, brings them around the corner. It is a magnificent time as they race up towards the line. Hincapie, Paul, he should play poker for a living. Look at that face. And look at Armstrong too. Into second place now. The first five get the time. They all will get the same time. Lance Armstrong is back where he's been for 5 years. The leader of the Tour de France.
In the yellow jersey, Hincapie enjoying the victory. Look at his face now. Lance coming to the front. Look at that smile. It's incredible. As wide as the Pacific Ocean as he crosses the line. The fastest time of the day, 1 hour, 12 minutes, 03, 53 kilometers an hour. Thank you very much. Look at that smile. Superb.
Tell you, Paul,
the team did this.
There were moments early on I thought the crowd had gone home, but can you hear them now? This is the most popular man in France as well. You read so many things against him in the press. Sometimes the journalists should go out and speak to the public.
All smiles and high, low and medium fives among the 8 US Postal finishers. But Lance was already dried off and addressing the world on television by the time the 9th came in. Benjamin Noval, the Tour rookie, rolled home 13 minutes late for the celebrations. It was a great team day though for US Postal, albeit not as great as it would have been last year. Have a look at the two columns of times here. The first one shows the real time gaps between US Postal and the teams behind them. The second shows the adjusted times using the new limits for every place in the pecking order. So despite beating Phonak into second place by 1 minute and 7 seconds, US Postal's official winning margin was only 20 seconds. Last year Armstrong would have gained 1:19 on Jan Ullrich of T-Mobile. This year it's barely half that at 40 seconds. And it's the same all the way down the line to Euskaltel in 8th place, who effectively get 1 minute 15 back on their real deficit, cut from 2:35 to 1:20. The one fact of the day not open to reinterpretation by calculator was that Lance Armstrong took over as race leader, although even that was a byproduct of the stage win rather than the main objective. At this point, having the race lead isn't something he's going to want to waste precious energy defending. Now, the team time trial always gives the general classification a top-heavy look, and this year it was no different. The top 5 places all occupied by US Postal, with Jose Enrique Gutierrez and Tyler Hamilton of Phonak the only outsiders in the top 8. And here's how Armstrong stacked up now against his rivals for the race overall after that result. Hamilton was the closest serious contender, 36 seconds in arrears. Jan Ullrich now 55 seconds back. Bobby Julich, Francisco Mancebo and Levi Leifheimer were all grouped around the minute mark. Then there was Roberto Heras at 1 minute 45 and Iban Mayo nearly 5.5 minutes behind the leader. So the first yellow jersey of the race for Lance, the first souvenir cuddly toy of her Tour career for Sheryl Crow, and the first and who knows possibly last experiment with adjusted timings for the team time trial event.
Now, you may have noticed on this year's Tour de France coverage these little yellow boxes fitted to the back of every single bike. These things are transponders, and at the finishing line you can see here a long electromagnetic loop, the width of the racing track. Now, as these transponders pass through the loop, every single individual bike is registered. Don't be fooled by the fact that they appear to be behind the real finishing line. That's because they're fitted to the back of the bike exactly 1.20 meters from the leading edge of the front wheel, so that when they pass through here, that means the bike itself is finishing the race. Now, what they do with that information is another story altogether. Right, this is the readout from the transponders at the end of stage 1. Here they all are, instantaneous, highly accurate, but still unofficial timings. The official timings are still done in the traditional way here, using the finishing line camera. You can see Jan Kursipuu crossing the line just ahead of Robbie McEwen. What these offer, however, is an instant, very accurate cross-referencing. For example, here you can see this rider. You can't quite make out the number on his back, and although we probably know who it is, confirmation is given straight away here, because we know from his transponder crossing the line that Thor Hushovd was indeed in third place. It's that sort of very accurate readout that these transponders offer the Tour.
When groups of riders bunch together cross the line, they all receive the same finishing time as the first in the group to finish. But where one group stops and another one begins has always been a point of vagueness for the officials. This technology removes any room for doubt, defining the groups instantly and precisely. And it's not just at the finishing line that they record these timings. 1 kilometre out, the Flamme Rouge has a similar loop, and if this system is adopted officially, so will every intermediate sprint and mountain prize.
So just a little footnote to that, on the final intermediate sprint of stage 1, after the riders had crossed the line, there was chaos for fully 20 minutes while the organisers tried to work out just who had crossed ahead of who. Now, when I quizzed these guys about why it had taken so long to get that information out, they had one very simple explanation. They hadn't fitted a magnetic loop. This is, after all, a trial, it's new technology, but it is precisely that sort of problem that it's designed to sort out.
Now, as much as he was happy to win the team time trial and open up gaps on his major rivals, Lance Armstrong wouldn't have been too thrilled to be wearing the yellow jersey. To other riders, it would be a career highlight. To Lance, at least at this stage, it was almost more trouble than it was worth. For one thing, all the other squads looked to the leader's team to control the race, and trying to defend the jersey means chasing down every madcap attack that goes off the front. Lance would have preferred to be back in the bunch in civilian clothes, keeping himself and his team fresh for the mountains, where the next big showdown with his rivals was going to come. So if anybody fancied taking the jersey on stage 5, they were welcome to come and have a go if they thought they were hard enough.
And a long stage after a tough team time trial is the perfect opportunity to get a jump on a tired peloton. Stage 5 was 200 kilometres from Amiens to Chartres. It was another difficult day on the road, windy and rainy and littered with crashes. Brad McGee didn't actually go down in any of them, but he did get off. FDJeux.com's Australian rider had been suffering all week with a bad back and finally conceded that it wasn't going to get any better on a 3,400 kilometre bike ride. As we join commentary, the inevitable breakaway is out front, and there are some good riders in it. The Australian Stuart O'Grady, Sweden's Magnus Backstedt, Jakob Piel of Denmark, who's been in just about every break since the Tour began, and two Frenchmen, Sandy Cazard and Thomas Voeckler, riding in the colours of the French national champion. And Voeckler is the highest placed man in the classification, 3 minutes behind Lance Armstrong. So if the break stays away, he will be the new leader of the race.
They're all starting to look back now. O'Grady's in an ideal position. He's going to force Jakob Piel to lead out the sprint. 1,000 metres to go. It's a long way. The two others are just about to make contact.
There
Sandy
we go.
Cazard comes back.
Now, if I was one of those, I'd have gone straight for it and I wouldn't have wasted time. But there he goes again. And Piel again grits his teeth. All 5 men at 900 metres are back. Maggie just hasn't got it. He's going to be 5th.
Maggie's on the rivet here this afternoon, but it's now 4 riders. Voeckler very nervous. He's used a lot of energy to attack here. Jakob Piel in 2nd position, trying to get some breath into his body for the final explosion up to the line. Sandy Cazard has been very clever. If he's got anything left in those legs now, he needs to launch the counter-attack. O'Grady looking over his shoulder, waiting to see if Maggie Backstedt is going to come back. Very nervous. They're losing big time now. O'Grady moves up into 1st place. If he opens the sprint, Maggie's going for it. He's got not much left in his body, but it's one last little attempt.
O'Grady takes a look at Maggie. He wanted somebody in front. He needed a wheel. He's got the biggest man in the race to hide behind now.
This could be a perfect finish. Stuart O'Grady is the pure man. It's a track finish, this. He's the ace rider on the track. He's won medals there at every colour, Commonwealth and World Championships. Now goes Sandy Kazar. Is he going to upset it? Now comes O'Grady on the inside. O'Grady grits his teeth, takes on Kazar. Nobody will beat O'Grady in a finish like this. The Australian remembers 1998, takes it on the line. Peel is second, Kazar is third. The Maillot Jaune of the Tour de France, Voeckler is fourth, and Bagstead finishes fifth.
Well, 12.5 minutes later, the main field arrived, and there was another sprint to pick up the bonus points for 6th place. Robbie McEwen, the leader of the green jersey points competition, nabbed them ahead of Yannick Tombak and Thor Hushovd. And there's confirmation of the result, O'Grady winning the stage, but 4th place more than enough for Thomas Voeckler to take the yellow jersey, with the group containing Lance Armstrong and all the other leading contenders coming in 12 minutes 33 seconds down. First man on the podium, though, was the stage winner, Stuart O'Grady's second win in the Tour, 6 years after his first in Grenoble.
Stuart, many congratulations. That was quite a stage and pretty extraordinary conditions as well.
Hard conditions, very, very hard. That really sucked.
What, you didn't enjoy it?
No, not really. I mean, you enjoy it because you're out there, and definitely enjoy it now because I've won. But yeah, I mean, it's just a hard slog. It's just a big psychological battle, you know. You're always looking around to see if the other guys are hurting. The blockhead wind, the rain never eased up. That was just a hard day.
Well, the Stage 5 result changed the general classification beyond all recognition. While Lance took a day's holiday, that 5-man gang had broken into the top of the standings and established squatters' rights. Thomas Voeckler in particular looked as though he was going to prove difficult to shift, with a lead of 3 minutes over the second-place man O'Grady and 9.5 on Armstrong, who'd slipped to 6th. There were no changes in the time gaps between him and his challengers for overall victory, although of course everybody had been bumped back down the order by the 5-man break. Well, it was common knowledge that the yellow jersey was up for grabs for anyone who got into the right break on Stage 5. Thomas Voeckler took advantage of it, and that's why he was the new race leader.
Time for the emails, and first one here from Brian in Liverpool. Why do all the riders get the same finishing time when they cross the line in one big group? Those at the front are up to 20 seconds or more ahead of the ones at the back. Well, you're quite right, Brian. But, you know, can you imagine on the narrow roads when the riders are sprinting for the finish, if the boys at the back try to be the boys at the front, it would be absolute carnage. So it makes sense if you finish alongside one another, you are given the same time. And it really is up to the referees of the day. If there is a measurable gap and daylight between the groups, say of a second or more, they will get a separate time. Ian Fawkes, could you please settle an argument? I say that helmets are now compulsory, but my son says that it is up to the teams as to whether they should be worn. Paul?
Well, Ian, you're right. In fact, it is compulsory in all professional racing for riders to wear helmets, but there is one exception to the rule. If they come to a mountaintop finish, and a mountaintop finish that is more than 5 kilometres in length, they're allowed to take the helmets off for the final climb of the day.
Right. The final question today, Rudolph Morrison says, during the interviews at the end of your programme, can you get the woman to stand out of camera shot as she is not important to the content and a big distraction? Well, I'll tell you what, indeed, Rudolph, that is Marilene Klesch, and she is the head of broadcasting, and in fact, if it wasn't for her, we probably wouldn't get access to the riders themselves, because she makes sure they come to our camera. However, she has promised me that she will, in fact, never get in the way of the camera again, and I'm sure she's telling the truth. Now back to the action.
Stage 6 took the race down into the Loire Valley, 196 kilometres from Bonval to Angers. The two big Italian sprinters in the race were already heading home. Alessandro Petacchi and Mario Cipollini abandoning without a stage win between them. Well, the weather was improving, but the road safety statistics weren't. Lance Armstrong came down in an early crash, and as part of their contractual obligations, a couple of teammates fell off with him. He was soon back on the bike, though, and back in the race.
This is going to be the most difficult finish we've had for the sprinters in the Tour de France so far. Why? Because at 600 metres to go, it climbs up all the way to the finish line. It's made just that little bit more difficult to judge as well by the fact that just here, with around about 400 metres to go, there's a very nasty bend around to the finish. The riders trying to win this will hug the corner there and come around and hope to see the finish line in front of them. But unlucky, it's not there. It's a further 200 metres up the road around the final bend. If you want to win this sprint, you have to wait until the last possible moment to open up the gallop. A man who's got the experience to do that I feel could very well be Eric Zabel, the man who on 6 occasions has won the green jersey. He'd like to open up his account at the Tour de France this year with a win right here in Angers.
As we join commentary, Spain's Juan Antonio Flecha is out front on his own, trying to win with a solo escape for the second year running, but the pack is bearing down on him fast as he powers towards the finish.
4 kilometres to go. The pink and white jerseys on the front of T-Mobile. They'll be thinking about Eric Zabel. Now, what kind of a lead out would that be if Jan Ullrich came to the front to lead out his old mate Eric Zabel? Because I think this is a good finish for Zabel. And in the past, we've seen Ullrich actually lead Zabel out to a finish like this in the outskirts of Liège.
Well, what kind of a win would this be if Flecha survives? Because inside 4 kilometres to go, he has still got 18 seconds over the field. They're not pulling him back right now, and unless they reorganise, and they haven't been very well organised at all so far, because he is holding them and he's riding so strongly. Remember, he will respond to the cheers here. These people know what they're watching, they'll know who's in the lead, and they will shout him on. The French love a winner, and this is a runaway just now by Juan Antonio Flecha of Spain, who rides for Antel. Now, trouble at the back there. That looks as though Decker has sat up and slipped off the back.
Flat tyre for Eric Decker, but it's not a problem for him now. He'll just cruise into the finish. He will not make contact with the main field again here this afternoon because there is such a lot of pressure on the front end of the main field. It is 13 seconds advantage for Juan Antonio Flecha at 3 kilometres to go to the finish. That's around about 3.5 minutes of effort he has to keep going on. It's going to be very difficult for him on the last 600 metres, but it looks as if he's got the strength in those thighs of his still ticking over.
They have not been able to reorganise. Remember, they're preoccupied now. They've got to look for their sprinters, the men they've tried to shut this race down for, and put them in position to win the sprint, while at the same time they've got to continue the chase. Just inside 2 miles from the finish now, and this is a wonderful ride by Flecha, whichever way it goes. They are coming back. It's 13 seconds, they're saying now. He just got to keep on trying and hoping. The only disadvantage, it is slightly, ever so slightly uphill, and those legs surely will complain.
Down again, 10 seconds this time. Slowly but surely they're eating into this man's advantage. He looks good. I think the whole of Spain is on his shoulders, egging him on to try and get himself the victory. Another second disappearing right now as he sees the banner indicating 2 kilometres to go. Stefano Zanini on the front. Look at the organisation on the left-hand side there. Stuart O'Grady's team moving forward as well. Jimmy Casper, I think, this afternoon going to try and repay the favour to Stuart O'Grady and get him to the front in an ideal position.
Well, he continues now without looking over his shoulder. He knows exactly what's going on behind him. He's looking, though, for the 2 kilometre banner. It's just around this corner. There is still a very good chance here for Flecha. Zabel's men, as they are at the moment, T-Mobile, are being sent to the front to try and put Zabel in a position to win. There is the gap now. You have to feel sorry for Juan Antonio Flecha. That's all he's got left after a breakaway of 170 plus kilometres. 5 solitary seconds, and they're about to gobble him up.
The eagle has landed. I think the vultures are in the trees now, ready to pounce on that lone man at the front. He has been pulled back into the fold for a crazy moment there. I thought he was going to survive. He's sat up right now inside of the last kilometre. He's being caught. Now look at the movement on the right-hand side. You can see riders now trying to set the sprint up for everybody. I think there's been a crash in the final kilometre as well. 1 or 2 riders have gone down. I can't see the yellow jersey. I can't see. This is what's happened. This is at the red kite. 1 kilometre to go. They'll be given the same time.
Well, it's very, very close. If that is the kite, there'll be a big argument as to whether they get the same time or not. Some of those boys aren't the right side of the kite, but we don't know where Lance Armstrong is. He's not here, that's for sure. We think they'll all be given the same time, but let's get back to the action at the front here now. Zabel is right there in the pink jersey trying to break in here, but I'm not sure. That looks like Scarponi trying to have a little bit of a dig in second place. Zabel, this is the sweep up the hill here now. No sign at all of Robbie McEwen this time out either. Tom Bowman in second place, and boxed in was in fact Jean-Patrick Nazon. Bowman is in the perfect position here to take this one. Now he digs in, the quick step rider. This is the win he has wanted, and he's not going to relinquish this. Tom Bowman gets his first victory in the Tour de France as he hits the line, right on the line. Stuart O'Grady, Paul Sherwin's tip, has got second.
Good ride by O'Grady. He recovered overnight, but there's absolute carnage at the back. We're looking to see where the leaders of the Tour de France are. Here's Hincapie, and there is Armstrong right behind him. Armstrong is in second place. I should think there is Oscar Sevilla as well, but this accident happened right underneath the 1 kilometre to go banner, so we should all have exactly the same time at the end of the day. I haven't seen Tyler Hamilton, I haven't seen Jan Ullrich come up to the line, but I think fortunately that accident happened, Phil, at 1 kilometre to go exactly. Oscar Sevilla went down there. He's just looking at his hip. He must have gone down quite heavily. Let's have a look. There is Floyd Landis coming up through the finishing line. We're looking for a pink jersey. There's the yellow jersey of Thomas Voeckler. But as you can see, that accident was right plumb beneath the red kite of the last kilometre.
Tom Bonan left US Postal so that he could be free to ride for himself instead of Lance Armstrong. And he did that brilliantly here, rocking the bike like Eric Zabel in the final metres and beating the old master at his own uphill strongman's game to take a superb first stage win that promises many more. Stuart O'Grady came in ahead of Zabel too and picked up some valuable green jersey points in the process. Behind the sprint though, it was chaos. Riders all over the road at the 1 kilometre banner. But it was the 1 kilometre banner that saved them all losing time, because according to race rules, any rider who crashes in the final kilometre of a stage is given the same time as the main field. The irony being that that particular rule is there precisely to discourage people taking unnecessary risks in the run-in. But that was no consolation to Robbie McEwen. The crash didn't cost him any time, but it stopped him sprinting for the points places, which meant Stuart O'Grady's second place was enough to deprive McEwen of the green jersey by 2 points. In the end though, all the day's drama did absolutely nothing to the overall standings. The Stage 5 escapees still held the top 5 spots ahead of Lance Armstrong 9.5 minutes back in 6th, and the time gaps from the defending champion to his challengers stayed the same all the way down the line. Armstrong though was unimpressed at what he perceived to be the cause of yet another crash.
Coming in, they got the barriers really tight, and you've got 200 guys raging through there at 40 miles an hour. I don't know what the hell they're thinking. I mean, you're going to have crashes, and we were fortunate that that crash was literally 10 meters inside the 1K barrier, our banner. Otherwise, you know, we would have been docked half a minute, and it's just, anyways.
All right. Good.
Bad luck and good luck.
All right.
And look at this, Chris Bouman is down. The time trial has hardly started, the Tour de France has hardly begun, and I think Bouman could be out of it already.
It was 1995 when Chris Bouman crashed out of the prologue so spectacularly, and it happened in the finish town for Stage 7, Saint-Brieuc. Not a good omen for a race in which road accidents were threatening to decide the fate of the leading contenders.
There's a crash in the main field.
There's a crash. There's about 14 riders down in the middle of the main field. Looking down at the side of the road, the orange jerseys of Euskaltel Euskadi, there's a number of them gone down very hard.
Well, the man who suffered the most has undoubtedly been Iban Mayo, who went down on Stage 3 and lost nearly 4 minutes as the pack all fought for position approaching a dangerous section of cobbles. The Spaniard was expected to attack Lance Armstrong in the mountains this year. Now he's so far behind he'll have no choice. Roberto Heras, another Spanish climber, was also caught up in that crash, but his team paced him back to the main group. Heras has had a good week, staying out of trouble and within striking distance of Armstrong, the man he helped to victory last year and hopes to beat this year.
Crash! Shoot dans le peloton, as the race radio is shouting to us.
Perhaps the biggest story of the Tour was that Tyler Hamilton hadn't crashed. In fact, the man with the loyalty card at Casualty had been busy coming to the aid of his teammate.
Now this is Robbie McEwen who's gone down in the green jersey, and he's probably the best bike rider in the race.
Jan Ullrich has been almost invisible for the first 7 days, intelligently riding close to the front and ghosting past the pilots. The only casualty on Team Mobile has been one of his helpers, Rolf Aldag, who couldn't decide which side of a traffic island to take and ended up going into the man in front of him. There's no doubt this is the most crash-ridden Tour in recent memory, and not even Armstrong can claim immunity. Stage 7 took the race up out of the Loire Valley almost to the Brittany coast, 196 kilometres from Chateaubriand to Saint-Brieuc. And almost immediately the Tour registered its 100th crash victim, Sven Montgomery of Gerolsteiner, down and out of the race with a broken collarbone.
With the points competition so close, McEwen and O'Grady were going at it out on the road. With a two-man break out front, they were both sprinting for third place, and McEwen looked clearly faster. He took O'Grady at the second intermediate sprint, despite the Cofidis man having a teammate lead him out, and repeated the trick at the third. So from 2 points down, he was now 2 points up, and ownership of the green jersey was going to come down to the finish. On the run-in, the two-man break was caught, but another attack of 7 riders was launched almost immediately, and from it, 3 men pulled away. Francisco Mancebo of Illes Balears, Iker Flores in the orange of Euskaltel, and Filippo Pozzato in the blue and white of Fassa Bortolo.
This is a big attack by Flores, and he's spread eagle this breakaway of 7, and there's no sign of the peloton. We are inside 2 kilometres to go. This is the break that will decide the day. Scarponi has come back right up to him. If it comes to a straight sprint, Scarponi surely will be favourite.
Watch out for Filippo Pozzato, who's going now.
Sorry,
this is
that's
a counter-attack
quite
of the
right.
blue and white there of Fassa Bortolo. Dragging himself up there is Mancebo. This man has got a very gangly position, but he's in fine form. He's just dragging himself back up. The group has been split into 2. I'm surprised Paolo Bettini is caught in the second half of the acceleration.
Well, Paolo is a very crafty bike rider. He might well come back yet, but Pozzato's riding his first Tour de France. He's in the middle of these 3. As the Balearic Islands now head for the finish here, this is Mancebo, who's a very good climber, and he's pinching a few seconds over the big boys here.
And he's also the Spanish national champion. Now then, this group has split into 2. Iker Flores is in a bit of difficulty there in third position on the road. Mancebo needs to keep riding. Pozzato is going to be very cool. This man has won a lot of races already since turning professional. He's in second position in the blue and white jersey. He is in the ideal position to take out the sprint. Iker Flores in the orange jersey, just trying to pull himself back into the race.
Well, he is pulling Pozzato to the victory here for sure if he keeps this up, because he wants time over the field. The other boys just want the stage win. Mancebo looks over his shoulder. He'll see Pozzato. Pozzato, by the way, was the rider who finished second to the Irish rider Mark Scanlon in the Junior World Championships a few years ago, and Scanlon also riding his first Tour de France this year. But it looks like Pozzato is setting himself up, coming right on his back wheel, Flores, but Pozzato has gone. This is a very, very difficult finish to go that far out, but I think Pozzato should have the strength now. But look at Flores, no chance. Filippo Pozzato for Fassa Bortolo, then comes Flores, then comes Mancebo, and the pack are right on the heels of the rest of them. But I think Brochard, is he just going to hang on? Well, yes he is, from Sebastian Eno on the line, and the green jersey right there of Stuart O'Grady.
The youngest man in the race and the third Tour debutant to win a stage, 22-year-old Filippo Pozzato probably knew he had it as soon as he recognised the 2 Spanish climbers he was up against. A great win nonetheless, and much clearer than the sprint for the minor points going on behind him. Thor Hushovd led the bunch home. Stuart O'Grady in the green jersey came across in 10th place, while Robbie McEwen, tired at the end of a long day in the wind, was 13th. And that was enough for O'Grady to hold on to the green jersey by a single point. The competition was hotting up behind him though. 3rd and 4th, Danilo Hondo and Eric Zabel were also separated by just a point, and Thor Hushovd had moved up into 5th. It started the week as Fabian Cancellara's cast-off, when the young Swiss claimed all the jerseys by winning the prologue. He took yellow, and green passed down to the next man in the standings, which just happened to be Lance Armstrong. He was hardly going to risk his chances of a 6th Tour win by getting his elbows out in the bunch sprints, so on stage 1, it was up for grabs. Thor Hushovd took 1 intermediate sprint on the road and 3rd place on the stage, and that was enough to put a proper blue-collar worker in the green jersey. The next man to take it was a former winner of the competition overall, Robbie McEwen, and with finishes of 2nd, 1st and 3rd on consecutive days, he was setting the standard of consistency for everyone to beat. Out on the road though, Stuart O'Grady was being smart. Knowing he couldn't match McEwen for straight speed in a bunch finish, he got himself into a breakaway and promptly won all 3 intermediate sprints plus the stage itself without any competition from the real sprinters. Very smart. That away day was worth over 50 points, and suddenly Stewie was in contention. When McEwen got caught in the pile-up at the 1 kilometre banner the following day, the finishing straight was clear for O'Grady. His 2nd place to Tom Bonan was enough to take the jersey by 2 points. Of course, yesterday, McEwen started paying more attention to the intermediate sprints and beat O'Grady in both of the ones they contested. But at the end of a punishing day in the Brittany wind, was O'Grady who gritted his teeth slightly harder at the finish, and his 10th place versus Robbie's 13th kept him in green by a single point. With Thomas Verkler safely in yellow, the green jersey competition was the main attraction on stage 8 too. 168 kilometres from Lombal west almost to the coast and Quimper. At the first sprint of the day, Thor Hushoff took first place and 6 points. Robbie McEwen took second and 4 points. Stuart O'Grady was nowhere to be seen. So McEwen had gone from 1 point behind to 3 points ahead of his fellow Australian. Well, the first of the daily crashes happened with just over 8 kilometres to go. Samuel Dumoulin was the chief victim as the pack left him behind, heading at high speed for another tight run into the finish in Quimper.
And now inside, 5 kilometres from the finish, as still two teams believe they're carrying the day's winner. But now we're seeing the arrival too of the LeTour riders. Robbie McEwen won't be far away. The green jersey of Stuart O'Grady is also moving to the front. He will fancy this is a good scoring opportunity for him. And off to our picture, I've seen Paolo Bettini. He fancies this because it's a sharp uphill before the line, and also the Italian former champion in Salvatore Camesso. All riders believing now they're in with a shout today.
Well, Robbie McEwen will like this finish as a very nasty left-hand corner at 250 metres to go. In the past there, we've seen Robbie McEwen cruising around these corners, especially in the wet. It's as if it's dry for him. Don't forget, Robbie McEwen in the past started his career off as a BMX rider, and he's probably one of the best bike handlers in this event. Picking their way around the first of this big repetition of traffic roundabouts on the outskirts of Quimper. There are 6 of these in the final 5 kilometres. Fortunately, I've got my breath held here to see whether or not everybody's going to get around safely. At the back end of the pack, you can see how riders are picking their way around here very precariously.
Well, I have to say that has knocked a lot of the wind out of quite a lot of riders there who've lost enormous distance by making that corner through the roundabout. It'll take a huge effort now for these boys at the back. Their day is probably over now, and it's going to go the front end that it's going to decide this race. There are more roundabouts to come. There's a very sharp climb. Just look how far behind now the men at the back of the peloton. For them, the day is over. The riders at the front will try to keep the pace high. They will take them into the roundabouts at high speed, and if they can't come out at high speed, they'll be on the floor. And still controlling the race at the front is Quickstep, and looking now for the victory too. Kloden is also moving up behind in that white jersey, the champion of Germany.
Kloden will be looking after Eric Zabel. You can see they've got the main field stretched out into a very long line. This is again to exaggerate the point of why the big contenders, Armstrong, Ulrich, Hamilton, Leipheimer, ride near the front end of the main field. This field could split on the run into the finish, and you've spent the whole day sitting in the pack, and just because there's a split down towards the end, you can lose 5, 10 or even 30 seconds to one of your challengers. Christophe Moreau whipping up the pace, but there's a big battle now happening between 6th and 10th place. The sprinters are all looking for the wheel that they want to follow. There is Eric Zabel, nice and comfortable in about 10th position, but Robbie McEwen is right to the fore. McEwen currently holds the lead in the green jersey points race, and he will want to try and get across the line ahead of Stuart O'Grady, who is the man wearing that green jersey, and O'Grady himself has been very close to the front end of the pack.
3 kilometres to go now for the whole field that's surviving in today's stage of the Tour de France. David Bramati continues. Kloden here looking over at his teammates to see the gaps are forming there, because 1 or 2 riders beginning to bottle out now on the slippery road surfaces. They know that the sprinters are forcing the way to the front. That is always by design. This is by nature a very tough type of rider to finish. The sprinters will be pushing and shoving. If they get caught, of course, they get fined or disqualified, but they've got to get caught first. It's a tough man's sport at the end of a stage when the whole field rushed for the line. As they head now for 2 kilometres to go, all of a sudden it's thinning out a little bit at the front.
Michael Rogers on the front. This man's got a very big turn of speed. He's thinking about just one thing. He wants to make sure that they keep the line a long, stretched out line. They're inside 2 kilometres right now. What he is doing this for is his own teammate, the young kid from Belgium, Tom Boonen, 23 years of age, winning a stage in the Tour de France at his first attempt. They've got another teammate up there as well in 3rd position. You can see the rider there from...
Oh no, it's Il Baleares.
That's Stefano Zanini will take up this one because he's in about 3rd position. Il Baleares, the Balearic Islands team, have been very aggressive over the last couple of days, but look at Zanini coming round there. There's another crash at the back end of the main field, but we'll stay at the front end of the pack.
We might well switch if our camera gets hold of it, but Vicente Garcia da Costa is pushing on now for the Il Baleares team. He's been marshalled. He tried it yesterday, remember, and the light blue jerseys are trying to bring up now Danilo Hondo. There's Bettini, and there is the crash, and it's a Cofidis rider, I think, who has gone down. It looked to me as though it was Yannick Tombak. He's a sprinter. Well, he's out of this sprint, but he can, of course, get into the finish. That's really sad, but it seems to me whenever there's a crash, there's a Cofidis boy in trouble. Back to the front, and watch out for the boy in the white jersey with the red spots now.
Stefano Zanini on the front, looking a little bit further back. You can see Paolo Bettini, Gerolsteiner swinging off. Robbie McEwen is not far away. Bettini are about to take up the pace making at the front, but there is the green jersey of Stuart O'Grady. In the middle, the pink jersey's on the shoulders of Eric Zabel. We're getting to the difficult part now. They're looking to see when they're going to notice the 1 kilometre to go. There's still a couple more sprints to go and a couple more corners. Bettini's got the acceleration.
This is the one he wanted. This is a strong finish for Bettini. Koos Moerenhout, I think it is, who's latched up. No, it's Robbie McEwen himself who's latched onto the back wheel there.
Good acceleration there. Stuart O'Grady's been caught out. He's waiting for somebody else to make the acceleration. They're inside of 1,000 metres to go, but that was the move that everybody was waiting for. Paolo Bettini was waiting to pounce. He's leapt off the front, and this might be just the right moment. McEwen right on his wheel.
Well, that's incredible. McEwen has got onto his wheel. He doesn't know what to do here. He wants to win. He's even talking to Bettini as he goes past now. They're inside the last 600 metres to go, and they couldn't open the sprint because of the nature of the finish. McEwen has waited for the field to catch up and retake his place in a crucial stage of the race. Well, McEwen read the move, but Bettini went just that little bit too early now, as we've got an attack now by Kim Kirken.
Kim Kirken, he's got the gap for Fassa Bortolo. This would be remarkable. 2 wins in 2 days if he can just hold off the front of the main field. Yesterday was Filippo Pozzato. This is the Luxembourg national champion with a slight gap over the front end of the main field. Crédit Agricole have got their man Thor Hushoff right up there in second position on his wheel. You can just see there tucked in is Eric Zabel, then it's Stuart O'Grady, then coming up there is Tom Boonen. The sprinters may well have just been caught out. This is the corner at 250 metres to go.
They line up for the finish. Kim Kirken looking for win at number 3 of the season, may well have done it right. Thor Hushoff, the reason the boys in green and white have worked so hard, is coming to the front and he's going to get the stage win. It's all worked out for Crédit Agricole. That's what they wanted. Thor Hushoff gets the points. He'll be right up in that green jersey competition. He raced into the yellow, became Norway's first race leader early last week. He started off this second week of the Tour de France in similar style.
Thor Hushoff taking the most macho stage win celebration prize of the Tour to date, after Paolo Bettini had confused everybody by jumping off the front far too early in the King of the Mountains jersey. Kim Kirken was second, Eric Zabel was third again, and Robbie McEwen a crucial fourth against O'Grady's 8th in terms of the points competition. Well, there aren't many people who would look at the weather on a day like this and say, isn't it good? But a Norwegian would.
It was cold today and windy, it was raining, and I was just like laughing about the rain. Sometimes it doesn't care. I was like motivated today because I was waiting for my day, and finally today I did it.
And in the process, he moved up in the green jersey competition. 25 points off the lead at the start of the day, he'd moved to within 11. The lead, though, was still alternating between the two Aussies, and now back with Robbie McEwen, who'd fought back impressively after losing it in that stage 6 crash.
It's always good to be in the lead rather than trying to chase points down. I got in the situation last year where I crashed when I was in the jersey. I was suddenly 20 points behind, had to make it up, and it's really difficult. Now I've crashed again in the jersey this year and, missed out on, 25, 30, 35 points, and now I'm in the lead, but it's only slender, and there's anything can happen. There's a long way to go.
All right, let's wrap up the other competitions now, and although the mountains don't really start until after the rest day, Paolo Bettini has usually been first over what climbs we've seen so far. He retains the polka dot jersey, which he's had pretty much since the start of the race. And Thomas Voeckler holds on to the race lead ahead of his fellow escapees from stage 5, with Lance Armstrong, the nearest big name, 9.5 minutes back in 6th. That cushion is going to be pulled from under him pretty smartly once the serious climbing starts, but the popular Frenchman at least has the honour of carrying the yellow jersey into the rest day.
Déjà, c'est une bonne chose d'arriver à la journée de repos avec le maillot jaune, et demain je vais essayer de décompresser un peu dans la tête et puis physiquement. Et après, on va voir comme on a fait jusque-là, étape par étape, tous les jours, voir comment ça se passe, donner le maximum et puis voir au jour le jour.
Well, as I say, it won't take many days in the mountains before the serious contenders relieve Thomas Voeckler of the pressure of being at the top, and here's how they'll stack up coming out of the rest day. Lance Armstrong, the defending champion, is 6th, 36 seconds ahead of Tyler Hamilton, who's 11th. Jan Ullrich is 20th and 55 seconds behind Armstrong. Then come the Spanish climbers, Roberto Heras, 1 minute and 45 down in 36th place, and Iban Mayo, 5.5 minutes back in 89th. They'll all move up over the next week. Sebastian Joly probably won't. He's already nearly an hour down in 176th and last place.
Yes, thanks, Gary. Just time for one or two questions. Interesting one here from Harry Hailwood, who comes from Barnes. Harry, you're asking how many other riders have made their Tour debut and taken out victory in the prologue, like the Swiss cyclist Fabian Cancellara yesterday. Well, in fact, there have been 4, Paul.
Yeah, the first man to do it was the Italian Francesco Moser back in 1975. A couple of years later, Dietrich Thurau from Germany did the same thing. Then a bit of a gap to Eric van der Arden from Belgium. But then 1994, Chris Boardman did the same thing in Lille, and he set the fastest ever prologue record there at 55 kilometres an hour. And before anybody writes in, David Miller won the opening stage of the Tour de France in his first attempt, but that was a long time trial stage, not an individual prologue.
That's right, not a bad memory, Paul. Anyway, let's move on. Ellen Cheetham from Ufcombe in Devon. Ellen, we seem to get this question every year. Why do cyclists shave their legs? So we thought we'd let Bradley McGee tell you the answer.
I don't know what the traditional role it is. It's definitely just, for me as an athlete, firstly, massaged every day. It just feels clean. It feels right. Yeah, I've been doing it since I was 15 years old, so it's more natural to do it than not to do it. So, yeah.
Thanks, Brad. OK, Ellen, there you are. Let's move on now to Terry Jones from Newcastle. Were my eyes deceiving me, or are Skoda really sponsoring the cars in the Tour de France? The answer is yes. It's the first year of a new contract for Skoda after Fiat pulled out last year.
Now, before the Tour, almost everyone seemed to have circled stage 16, the time trial up Alpe d'Huez, as being the day that would most likely decide the outcome of the race. Almost everyone.
I don't think that, let me just put it this way, I don't think the critical stages of the Tour de France are going to be in the Alps. I think they're, for me and in my opinion, in between just us and all the American viewers, I think it goes down before then.
It was unlikely to be going down on stage 9 though. It was the shortest road stage of the race, 160 kilometres from Saint-Léonard-de-Noblat to Guéret, with nothing more testing than a couple of 4th category climbs. But even they were too much for Jan Kirsipou. The winner of stage 1 back in Charleroi had been suffering before the rest day, and he abandoned early in the stage. 2 riders then managed to escape the bunch, Inigo Landaluze of Euskaltel and Filippo Simeoni of Domino Vacanze. With the peloton putting the hammer down to pull them in on the closing stages, it was touch and go whether they'd survive, and Simeoni's teammates were worried enough to be up at the front, trying to get in amongst the pursuers and disrupt their rhythm.
10 kilometres to go now for the 2 leaders. It's still there, it's still possible. 1:33 the gap. The peloton attempts to disrupt the chase by teammates of Simeoni, not going down well with certain members of the bunch.
It certainly isn't. It's difficult to understand the pressure that these riders are on who are chasing at the front end of the main field, and they push to the point of actually making almost animal decisions. It's a decision that you don't make literally, it's just something that you react to, and if somebody's coming alongside barging you while you're trying to do a job like this, sometimes you make a decision that you wouldn't in a nice, cold, calm atmosphere, but it's not cold and calm, the atmosphere in the front end of the main field. Everyone is fighting for survival, everyone is trying to do their job at the front end of the main field, and tempers today are starting to flare.
They are, and this is a nasty split in the road here as they go either side to what is a narrow street at best of times. We're racing now up to 9 kilometres to go for the leaders. These boys are probably at 10 kilometres as the split there has been done safely. Oh no, it hasn't, because that was a crash at the bottom of our picture. Somebody clipped somebody, and this was the danger. And Phonak have a man down there. And a couple of Balearis riders. That's Gonzalez who's gone down.
A lot of riders. This was at the back end of the pack. Somebody's gone down very hard on the far side as well. And it was right in the middle. In fact, you see the one rider who went down, it was his own fault, because in fact he was switching across from the left-hand side to the road to the right, and he actually hit one of those directional signs in the middle of the road. I'm trying to see who is really down and hurt quite badly, and it's one of the riders from CSC. It could be Kurt Arvidsson, who in fact was a rider who a couple of days ago who'd had an injury out on the road. He didn't look too good, and I think in fact Arvidsson was the first rider to go down and then got catapulted across the road. Just looking here to see exactly who it was, but he does not look very good at all.
The race doctor is up alongside, and you can see here just exactly how it happened. It was, in fact, the man who went down, I feel fairly certain, was the CSC rider. Somebody went right off into the crowd on the right-hand side. And we're just having a look down here to see just exactly who it is. The man with the blue coat on there is the Dr. Gerard Porte. This guy has gone down very hard indeed.
Well, I'm not sure whether that isn't Kurt Attel Arvidsson, because he's got flashes on his... Has he got flash on his sleeve? I'm not sure, Paul.
I'm not sure. He was a rider who was involved in an accident a couple of days ago, and he had a very nasty cut to his thigh, and this man had a big bandage on his thigh as well, so I'm fairly certain it could well have been Kurt Attel Arvidsson. He went down hard. He's back up on his bike, and it is Arvidsson. He's up and riding.
New bike for him, Paul, because I reckon he smashed that one to pieces. He went clean over the top of the falling rider. 4 kilometres to go. They are 3/4 of a kilometre behind the two leaders at the moment. Officially, it's 40 seconds to them. The gendarme again warning of a tight bend here as we swoop through the town of Guéret, and then we go out the other side of it. These two boys went away at 37 kilometres today. They planned an attack, if it were to succeed, of 123 kilometres. They've got just 4 kilometres to go. And now a big effort by the Basque rider Landeluz, but Simeone's with him.
They may well just survive, you know, because they've got a fairly good advantage. They're outside of the 30-second mark. The main field, though, is absolutely splintering at the front end because of the pressure and the difficult nature of the run-in. There's McEwen pulling his way up through the middle of the main field. McEwen is obviously thinking about getting himself a few more points. It's 35 seconds, and this is a great move here coming off the front by the FDJ.com team, but the reason to do that is to try and whip up the pace, I think, for Baden Cook.
That's what we would assume. It actually looks like Carlos de Cruz here, who's got himself up to the front. He was the rider, had the flat tyre, and got back just before that big crash. He's trying to get away now.
Well, I thought it was Carlos de Cruz, but I couldn't believe that he'd got back into the main field. It looks very much like the shape and form of Carlos de Cruz, trying to whip up the face at the front end of the main field. That's 3 kilometres to go right now. Landeluz getting nervous, looking back to see what the gap is. You can see the race referee there trying to pull everybody out of this gap. The reason for that is because the main field are absolutely boring down upon these two riders.
Well, they still got to rise up. We're out the backside of the town now. We go out onto a highway, and then we swing back for the finish on a brand new road made especially for the arrival of the Tour de France and to take out a roundabout which would have been 200 metres to go. They are under 3 kilometres to go now. We are talking seconds. I can't see them surviving, but I'd love them to.
Well, they could. It's 25 seconds, but look how long that big main field is, stretched out completely. Simeone looking over his shoulder. He wants to see if there's any sign of weakness in the eyes of Inigo Landeluz.
Good looking over his shoulder.
Landeluz in the orange jersey has never had a victory in his whole career, and he turned professional 4 years ago. 2 kilometres to go. These riders dare not now start to make any tactical manoeuvring, because if they do, they will get wiped out immediately.
We are talking of slightly more than 1 mile in old money as we race for the line, and the peloton are not being timed currently, but it can't be more than 16 or 17 seconds. These boys are slightly ahead of the rest as they continue now. The crash may have just done enough to disturb the rhythm to give them the victory. There's the 3 riders who are being brought up now. They are saying 20 seconds at 2 kilometres. Surely that is possible.
It's completely and utterly possible. If these 2 riders don't start to mess around and look for tactical manoeuvring in the sprint, they could just hang off the front of the main field and probably could see a situation here where they'd be given the same time as the main field, because I think the main field will just come onto their wheels.
A flick of the arm there by Simeone, and Landeluz didn't seem to want to come through there. This is the turn back towards town now to give us the new road eventually that has been specially built for the finish. There is the last 1,000 metres, and the peloton, who have given it their best shot, may have misjudged it by 2 guys who broke away after 37 kilometres. Now Simeone doesn't want to go through now, and calling him through is Landeluz. Here comes the cavalry.
Charging into town right now. They are looking for the final kilometre flag. There is Stefano Zanini in 3rd place. Right on his wheel was Tom Boonen. Moving up through the middle is the green jersey of Robbie McEwen. Around the corner is the 2 leaders. They should not get caught. They will, I think, survive over this last 500 metres, but who is going to take out the victory? It's a shame, you know, when you've got a two-man breakaway like this, because somebody has to lose.
Simone's won 7 races in a career which began back in 1995. The guy in orange has never won a race, and this is his 4th year as a pro. They cannot afford to mess around. It's a slightly uphill finish. If you wait, you're dead, because the peloton are on your tail, and it's a big lead out now. And I can see the pink jersey of Eric Zabel looking for the win. Thor Hushoff is brilliantly placed in second wheel, and Robbie McEwen is boxed in that green jersey. Here comes the charge now. Filippi Simeone has got to go all of the way. He can't wait. He's giving Landeluz the perfect lead out. One thing's for sure, everybody will finish in the same time. Camp, they got the legs. Here comes Hushoff. Here comes Tom Bonen now. There goes the bouncing Robbie McEwen as they get to the line. Landeluz is going to be passed by McEwen and Hushoff one-on-one as they hit the line. And it's gone to the Australian. Robbie McEwen has won the stage of the Tour de France.
Unbelievable. You feel so sorry for those 2 guys who were off the front, but they messed about just a little bit in the last 500 metres, and what a great comeback by all of the sprinters. Robbie McEwen got his wheel across the line, I think just ahead of Stuart O'Grady, and on the other side Eric Zabel.
A great finish, and so close that even the winner headed straight for the nearest TV set after he crossed the line to watch the replay and make sure.
Oh, what a fantastic victory in the green jersey. And after my crash a few days ago, I'm still suffering a lot with my knee, but I was still able to win the stage. It's just incredible.
And as a result, Robbie's lead in the green jersey competition had doubled. Thor Hushoff's second place on the stage was enough for him to overtake Stuart O'Grady. O'Grady retained his second place in the overall standings, though, a few seconds closer now to Thomas Voeckler, with Lance Armstrong still 9.5 minutes back.
Usually the opening stage in the mountains is a monster in the Alps or the Pyrenees, an open invitation to the favourites to stamp their authority on the race, which is exactly what Lance Armstrong had done in the majority of his 5 Tour wins. This year, though, the organisers had thrown in a couple of sparring rounds here in the Massif Central, and it was impossible to predict exactly what the favourites were going to do, or what they were going to be forced to do in response to a maverick attack. Either way, it looked like being fascinating to find out, and one thing we did know: this was the year that the best climber's jersey, all things being equal, was actually going to be won by the best climber.
Stage 10 brought the first substantial climbs of the race, and plenty of them. 9 mountains spread over 237 kilometres from Limoges to Saint-Flour. It was the Tour's longest day, and coincidentally Bastille Day, which meant it was odds on we'd see a French rider having a go. In fact, it was odds on we'd see Richard Virenque looking for a record 7th King of the Mountains title. With Axel Merckx for company, he led the race over the first 6 climbs of the day, then accelerated away on his own up the 7th, the first category, Col du Pas de Peyrolle.
Virenque is just dancing away. He's riding at his own pedal rate, and he's riding at his own rhythm, just making sure that he gets the maximum points where he goes over the summit of this climb. His advantage is opened up quite a lot over the last 1.5 kilometres to 24 seconds ahead of Axel Merckx, but Axel Merckx could very easily pull it all back together.
Looking then over the top goes Virenque, and with the 15 points he gets there, he also gets the lead in the King of the Mountains. Here comes Axel Merckx, and they're not very far apart, so I suspect you never know with Richard Virenque, in all honesty, but I would expect Richard Virenque to hang on a little bit.
Well, you can see the clock ticking away here on Axel Merckx, and it's going to be around about the 30 to 35 second mark, and it's the kind of distance that can be completely and utterly wiped away over the summit as Axel Merckx takes on board a drink here, and he will probably very quickly be up to maximum. In fact, it's just 40 seconds over the summit there, the official time check coming through.
Well, Virenque is one of the fastest descenders as well as one of the best climbers, and it was obvious he had no intention of waiting and working together with Merckx. As the pack came down off the payroll, there was a nasty crash involving Jan Ullrich's T-Mobile teammate Matthias Kessler, who fell really heavily, cracking a rib and bruising a lung. Amazingly, though, he rode to the finish before leaving the race and going to hospital. Credit Agricole's Sebastianino, though, was even worse off. He fell on the same descent and was helped straight into the ambulance. Out ahead, though, Richard Virenque was closing in on a superb solo Bastille Day win.
This has been one of the most outstanding performances, and we'll talk about this for many years to come. Now they start to cheer, they can see him for the first time. Richard Virenque, stage win number 7. to marry up with the great place names of the Tour de France. Luzardidon, Cauterets, Courchevel, Morzine and Mont Ventoux, and to that he can now add the little mountain top of Saint-Flour.
And I can imagine exactly what his victory salute is going to look to. It's going to be one finger up to the sky when he comes round the corner. Face looking just a little bit drained, but it will be a relaxed face when he comes round this corner. The crowd can now finally see him. It's Bastille Day here in France this afternoon, and it's a Frenchman who's going to win.
Well, what a great tour the French are having. The race leader will stay on the shoulders of the French champion, while the man who has been one of the best French riders, Richard Virenque, his 12th Tour de France, his 7th stage win. He is again the leader in the King of the Mountains, and it's happened in Saint-Flour.
This is really a remarkable performance by Richard Virenque today to go out and cover this course in 6 hours for 240 kilometres. That is an incredible average speed. You can just see the scenes there at the finishing line. He is being absolutely mobbed there, Phil, by the French press.
Well, they all want the very first words to come out of his mouth, and I can imagine it'd be something similar to "I'm pretty tired."
Yeah, je suis un peu fatigué.
Exactement.
C'est fabuleux, quoi. J'étais vraiment au bout de mes forces aujourd'hui. L'année passée, 14 juillet, j'avais le maillot jaune, et aujourd'hui, je gagne. C'est génial pour l'équipe Quick-Step David Tamon, et pour moi, c'est clair. Et simplement, je voulais un peu dédier mes victoires à 2 personnes. À Joël Chabiron. J'ai beaucoup pensé à lui aujourd'hui, qui nous a quittés, et m'a mis lu. Donc c'est un peu pour eux aujourd'hui que dans le final, j'avais des crampes de partout et j'ai été chercher des forces pour eux. Et voilà, 2 personnes s'étaient en allées et c'était un peu pour eux aujourd'hui. Et voilà, un hommage à eux.
1 kilometre to go. It's actually only 800 meters as the big sprint starts now. Now, is Lance Armstrong going to have a dig? Is Jan Ulrich going to have a dig here? I can see Kim Kirken looking over his shoulder, and Ulrich isn't far off the front.
Armstrong there in 5th position there. He's got a teammate right in front of him. I think it was Jose Acevedo. There was a good move coming here from Crédit Agricole. Laurent Brochard trying to wing off the front there as they take this hairpin bend. There are around about 600 meters to go to the finish. I don't think that Ulrich is going to let Armstrong sneak away over the last few meters just to get himself a couple more seconds.
Patrice Algon is the rider there, trying to go there with Brochard, but there's a break by Mancebo. The champion of Spain's gone on the left of the picture now, and still Armstrong is trying to move forward here now. Ulrich is just following wheels in the centre. Francisco Mancebo, who's had a great day out today, just nipping points at the mountain summits, he's trying to pull away, but look at this. Thomas Voigtler, the yellow jersey of the Tour de France, is looking for a bonus here. He's being challenged by Clouden, Andreas Clouden. Mancebo, Ulrich is on the wheel there as well, and over to the left. Armstrong looks a little bit troubled here. This is now, no, it's not, in fact,
it's Zabel. Zabel is there. There's a gap to the main field for Armstrong as well. Zabel's just on the back there on the wheel of Clouden. There's Mancebo. There's a gap between Armstrong and the rest of the field. I'm not sure if they'll give it, but there is a definite gap in the peloton.
There'll be no gap there as they come over the line. It will be Clouden, Zabel, Mancebo. There's the split now. It looks as though they'll give the others, and Ulrich was tagged onto the back just along with Armstrong. With the other boys, and if Tyler Hamilton is in that second half, he may have lost, what, a couple of seconds.
So, a great win for Virenque, which catapulted him up the overall standings, but the favourites didn't all finish in the same time in the group, as they usually do. Tyler Hamilton, Oscar Sevilla and Roberto Heras all lost 7 seconds. And here's where it happened. Right behind Jan Ulrich in the pink and white of T-Mobile, the judges ruled that there was a break in the group, and once that happens, the clock starts ticking. Full concentration by Hamilton and company, which produced the first change in the time gaps between the favourites since the team time trial. Stage 11, not a particularly arduous day, saw another split in the field.
Looking at the face of the 3 leaders here, they're well safe now. They've just moments ago passed under 10 kilometres to go, and they are now leading by 6 3/4 minutes. And in fact, they're telling us on the raceway it's come down to 6 minutes 40 at 10 kilometres to go.
That's not a problem for these riders. They are certainly not going to lose 6 minutes in the final 10 kilometers of racing, but they will start to get quite nervous because, you know, they've led this race since the 47th kilometer. They've been at the front for around about 106 kilometers of racing so far. In fact, Juan Antonio Fletcher seems to be, oh, look at this move here now.
That was the attack, and they're all looking at each other, and they've given him a gap. He's a dangerous man if he settles down, but straight away Martinez knows that, and that's a sign that Martinez is looking for the win. He has had no wins this year, and in fact he hasn't had a win last year. He won the overall in the GC, and Moncoutier rather, seeing the two Spanish riders, that's a good move.
Very good move, and I'm surprised to see that there's no challenge there come immediately again there from Igor Martinez. Moncoutier now has got himself an advantage, and these guys, if they don't react immediately, are going to see themselves losing any chance of a stage victory. That was a desperate move by the man at the back there, Juan Antonio Fletcher, but they are giving the advantage to France. Now, France have not ridden well in the Tour de France like this for very many years, and if they get another victory after the one of today, it will certainly be the old Cocorico.
Well, and it's a Cofidis rider. They've had a stage win already. This is the team which has been racked by bad luck, bad management, and of course the cheating riders who have been thrown off this squad, like David Miller, for taking drugs. And now they're trying to put matters to right here, and this is a great attack by David Moncoutier.
Moncoutier now, all he can do now, he's made the move, he's taken the risk of going out for the long attack. He has to just bury himself. He's got to get into the zone. He's got to concentrate on tapping out a rhythm. This is going to be a very long time trial for him. He's inside of 9 kilometers to go to the finish. Got to pick up that pace. And these two riders, I'm very surprised to see that Juan Antonio Fletcher was the man who started the aggression, but he wasn't able to back it up.
It was a brilliant move there by Moncoutier, because Fletcher made the attack, Martinez made the counter. They were both caught out of wind, and then Moncoutier wasted no time. It's one thing making the move, Paul, it's another thing hanging on to it.
Exactly, he's opened up the gap, but he has to contain his effort. He's got to actually just keep riding over the next few kilometers. You know, he's an excellent rider. He's in the Tour de France here, Phil, for the 5th time. But in the past, he's finished very high up, 13th place overall in the Tour de France back in 2002. But in fact, this year, in the pre-Tour de France warm-up, he finished 11th in the Dauphiné Libéré, a race that was won by Iban Mayo.
Well, like other riders in this race, he's never won a race this year. He finished 3rd in a race in the Alcobendas. I think it's in Spain. Spain or Portugal? Spain. Yeah. He finished 3rd overall, but again, he didn't win a stage of that race. And to me, these two Spanish boys are in serious trouble here. They're looking at each other. They need to make friends and start to work together, but otherwise Moncoutier is going to carry on the Tour de France for the French.
Well, coming through on race radio now, the first time check for Moncoutier over those two chases is 27 seconds, so it's certainly going very much in the right direction. I think, in fact, Juan Antonio Fletcher must have been just a little bit on the rivet there. That's an expression cyclists use, because in the old days, when they made leather saddles, they used to have brass rivets right on the front of the saddle, and when you were not feeling very good, you'd sit right on the front end of the saddle, and thus the term sitting on the rivet.
Well, these boys are sitting right back on their new style plastic jobs right now and thinking, what are we going to do? He timed his move to perfection. They both hit him. They were out of breath, and he went. He's got a first-time gap of 35 seconds. That's enormous just at this stage. He's running into the last 8 kilometers to go. The helicopter's totally confused now, because there are 2 riders chasing 1 rider up there. He's won 10 races in his career, this man. He's nearly 30 years of age now, which I find amazing, because we still talk about him as a new boy.
Good move there. You just saw the team car of Team Cofidis going forward. The race referees have allowed them to go through because that gap has gone over the 30-second mark. In fact, that was an attack straight out of the handbook there, Phil. Absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
He waited for Igor Martinez to make the effort to nail back the first move, which came from Juan Antonio Fletcher, and as soon as the junction was made, he went straight over the top in a counter-attack, and he very easily opened up immediately a gap of 10 or 15 seconds. What he has to do now is get into a rhythm, concentrate on keeping those legs ticking over. The pain in a situation like this is almost unbearable, but you are able to support it just for a fraction of a second longer than anybody else, because you feel now as if you're going to win the race.
The marvellous crowds cheering once again. A Frenchman out front on a day stage of the Tour.
So these two guys don't look to me as if they've actually got very much firepower left in those legs of theirs. They've been at the front of the race, and they all attacked after 47 kilometres and continue to build up a big advantage, which at one time was in excess of 8.5 minutes. Since then it's started to come down, but what's more important as we speak is the gap of this man David Moncoutier to the two chasers Martinez and Fletcher. It's now 54 seconds, so it's definitely going in the right direction.
Oh, there's no question. Almost a minute. That is incredible. He has given this 110% to break the spirit. He's obviously pushed himself right to his maximum, because he's got to break the spirit straight away and get out of their sight. Then he can sort of slow down a little bit. But Fletcher there is kicking himself now, because I really thought that Fletcher or Martinez should have had this race sewn up. But David Moncoutier, carrying on the true French tradition here, is now going on. You know, it's been 10 years since a Frenchman has won a back-to-back stage in the Tour de France. Time flies.
It certainly has, and this is excellent for French cycling, which has really been in the doldrums for many seasons. It's also very good for Team Cofidis, which is a team that's had an awful lot of bad luck over the years, and this year they're looking at getting themselves their second stage victory at the Tour de France. Stuart O'Grady's already got a win, and Moncoutier, as far as I'm concerned right now, is going to walk away with this one.
So that's the peloton under 10 kilometres from the line. No reaction whatsoever. The drama up front doesn't mean a thing to them. The gap to them is actually coming down. They are getting a little bit closer. Up to the leader now. They're just over 7 minutes. 7 minutes 12 seconds is the overall spread of the breakaways. These two riders are 6:17. But the lone leader now, I think, has put one over big time here on Igor Martinez. Funnily enough, Martinez, who won the Tour de l'Avenir in 2003. David Moncoutier down there, he finished second in that race in the year 2000. So anything you can do, I can do as well.
He's got to start to feel quite confident now as he keeps extending his advantage over the two men who he was with, and it really looks to me as if they'd lost all firepower in their chase, Igor Martinez and Juan Antonio Fletcher. Fletcher's attack there looked a very strong attack, and he was very quickly nailed back by Martinez, but this man from France went straight over the top of that attack, and now he's looking at tickling the 1 minute advantage, and that is a good advantage for him. He's not showing any signs of weakness. Just look at the way he's pedaling there, very strong, well posed on his machine. While if you look at the style of the two chasers and look at the faces on the two chasers, it looks to me as if these men are men who have surrendered the hope of getting the victory here this afternoon and settling for second and third place on the road. Out of the saddle, Juan Antonio Fletcher, who won a stage in the Tour de France last year when he rode for the ibanesto.com team, and that was on the road into the outskirts of Toulouse. And right now he was the man who set up the aggression. He was the man who opened up the attacks with 16 kilometers to go, but he couldn't keep it going. This man, I think, can.
Well, our television camera's got the best seat in the house now, right behind it. Yet another Frenchman in full cry here. Well, they may eventually have to succumb to the likes of Armstrong, Ulrich, Hamilton, and maybe even the Spanish riders Heras and Mayo. But right now, the French are enjoying their own race for the first time I can remember, with so much success.
It's a long time since the French have had so much success, and the French teams have had a lot of success out of this year's Tour de France as well. Inside of 5 kilometers to go, look at that face. He's concentrating right now. You can just see that whiteness over his lips. It's been a very hot day out in the saddle. A lot of these riders will have certainly lost a certain amount of salt, and they've had to take on board huge amounts of liquid, probably drinking between 5 and 7 liters of water on this 103-mile race. This man has certainly got the speed to survive. I hope he keeps just a little bit under his belt for the final climb of the day, because although it's not marked on the race profile as a climb, there is a naughty little climb on the run into the finish at around about 2 kilometers to go. And of course, let's not forget, the final 500 meters are not that easy either.
No, the only thing that will help him, he arrives there with a minute to go, which is what he's got, more than a minute now of the two chasers. He'll be able to ride up like Richard Virenque did yesterday when he won his stage. It was too far ahead to be caught. 2.5 miles to go, or something like 4 kilometers from the finish. There down below is the town of Figeac. Doesn't look uphill, does it? We have a nice little downhill to it first of all, though, before we climb out, and now things are looking extremely good. He's racing now somewhere around 58 kilometers an hour, and they're never going to catch him. He's still moving away. Our computer steadily counting in his favor. It's now 1 minute and 24 seconds.
Well, Fletcher in second position. I think Fletcher was just trying to surprise those two riders, but maybe he was just trying to hide his form because he didn't have the legs this afternoon, I don't think, to go for a move like this. He won his race in the Tour de France last year on the last-minute burst, which he was able to keep on the way down towards the finish. But this counter-attack by David Moncoutier was a superbly timed move. He waited, I think, for the rivalry between the two Spanish riders, and once they came together after the first initial move by Fletcher, he went straight over the top, and he's never looked back since. And he's in fact really extending his advantage, because it's now not too far away from 1.5 minutes over the two chasers, and he doesn't even have to worry about the main field because they're only just inside of 6 minutes 49.
Yeah, they've just gone under the 6 kilometers to go, I think, for the main field. This man is coming up to inside 3 now. Just got to watch these corners, these roads, twist and turn, duck and dive, adverse cambers. Don't be taking too many risks now. The French crowd here are going to enjoy the occasion now as a Cofidis team is looking to take their second stage win of this tour. And if you go back to April, they were all under voluntary suspension by the sponsors because they were trying to sort out a huge doping problem within the team. They didn't know what to do, so they stopped everybody riding until they sorted it out. They weren't allowed to race again, in fact, until the Dunkirk 4-day race in May. So they've done well to get themselves into shape for the Tour de France. Now they're looking for win number 2. Stewie O'Grady got the first one for them in the opening week of the Tour de France. Now Moncoutier is going to get the second one, because these two boys, a wry smile there on the face of a fairly new pro, at least he's pretty young, Igor Martinez. They are not going to get it under the banner. And in fact, as we're watching these pictures, you might be hearing the cheers now. They've just cheered Moncoutier under the 2 kilometers to go banner. It's not long before he'll be with us here on the finishing line.
No problem at all now. He just needs to not take too many risks on the run into town. There are 1 or 2 tricky little corners as he maneuvers his way into the outskirts of this very interesting medieval town of Figeac. Cross over the bridge, which goes back to medieval times, but now he's in a nice long straight inside of 2 kilometers to go, and he can actually savor his victory here this afternoon because he's got a huge buffer over the 2 chasers, and of course he'll be able to wait for an awful long time before the main field comes charging into town as well.
Well, the long straight road before we swing right and then climb the nasty little climb up to the finishing line. He won't worry about it now. His gap is 1 minute and 40 seconds. Even down here at basement level, the crowd are packed here, getting a glimpse of yet another Frenchman. There is the kite, the most popular sight by the leading rider of the Tour de France. It means 1,000 meters to the line.
Well, in the outskirts of town right now, and he picks his way through very carefully now. He can actually enjoy the last few kilometers. You can almost feel the pain being lifted away from his body as he now is looking to see the flag that everybody in the sport of professional cycling would like to see, and that is the last kilometer kite, the red kite, La Flamme Rouge, and he's not too far away from it. And then you can hear the crowd here on the finishing line. They're actually just looking at the big screen here. There's the enjoyment. He knows he's got it, and this is a fabulous move by this young man.
Well, we go back to 1994, and there were 3 French stage winners consecutively. Jacques Duron, followed by Luc Leblanc, followed by one Richard Virenque. That was 10 years ago. Richard Virenque won yesterday, and now Moncoutier is making it 2 French wins in as many days. Wise man, just making sure nobody's coming back at him. Never believe what the judges are telling you in time gaps. Make sure there's nobody in sight, and then enjoy the moment. He's going to win by about 1 minute and 30 seconds on the line, what has been an incredibly quick stage, arriving here some 25 minutes ahead of expected time.
He's going to notch up his win number 11 here, but this, I feel today, Phil, is confirmation of what everybody's always expected from David Moncoutier. Everyone has always thought that one day he was going to be a great star at the Tour de France. Here he's starting to enjoy. He's inside of 100 meters to go. This is his biggest ever win.
You bet your life it is. And of course his first, let's hear as he's saying to the crowd here, another victory for France, an incredible ride. Got away with 116 kilometers to go with the other 2. He left them outside of 9 kilometers from the finish, and he's home and given Cofidis win number 2 of this tour. So they've known every aspect of emotion during this year of sponsorship, but let's hope the 2 stage wins might stop that team from withdrawing the support of cycling.
Well, this is a great way to do it. This is a man that they've invested a lot of time and money in over the last few years, and they've been waiting for him to come up to do something very special at the Tour de France. And after finishing fairly high up in the overall classification, you know, a couple of years ago, he actually finished 13th overall in the Tour de France, and they started to tip him as a man capable of getting onto the podium. But that's what he wanted to do today. He wanted to go out and get himself some individual glory. I think a lot of riders in this Tour de France are being given freedom because the big contenders like Armstrong and Ulrich and the rest are waiting for the final week, which is going to be a real serious showdown.
And let's tell you right now, the final week of this year's Tour de France starts tomorrow on the road to the Pyrenees. The last day before we'll call the big famous names, I'm sure of that. You can see the clock counting down now as the two Spanish are going to fight out each other for second place today. At least Fletcher's going to get a place on the podium, because when he came into Angers, he was wiped away in the last 1,000 metres, and he didn't get a victory like he did in Toulouse last year. Fletcher and Igor Martinez. Wayne Martinez is poising himself there. He's going to pounce any second. He's letting the climb up here take its toll on perhaps one Antonio Fletcher. There's the time gap for you. It was an amazing gap in the end. These two boys knew as soon as Moncoutier settled into his rhythm, they were not going to catch him, so they didn't even bother to chase him down.
Huge advantage. Moncoutier still a minute and 50 seconds since the Frenchman crossed the finishing line, and these two Spaniards, I think, must really be kicking them. I think we tipped these two guys, either one of them, to win the stage, and we never ever gave David Moncoutier much of a chance.
No, the commentators' death throes, I'm afraid. We chose one of these two to win, so Moncoutier got the great win of the day. Here's the big effort now, and Fletcher has something left at least. Plenty of gas there. Second for one Antonio Fletcher, third for Igor Martinez.
There is Hondo in third position, moving up. They're sprinting for fourth place here, and they're trying to set it up for Eric Zabel. Eric Zabel in an ideal position, not too far away from either Stuart O'Grady. And in fact, Robbie McEwen in the green is just a little bit further back.
Well, I'll tell you what, if if Zabel gets this, he'll take the green jersey lead away from McEwen. There was only 10 points between them. McEwen, by tradition, comes late, and he moves to the right. Even Armstrong is mixing there on McEwen's shoulder, but it's given Zabel a great finish here. Thor Hushovd is on the wheel now of Eric Zabel, but now McEwen has got the wheel of Hushovd, but has he got the legs? I don't think he has, because coming up the line it's Hushovd followed by Zabel, and I think just getting in there was McEwen, but he'll just about hang on to his green jersey there. Armstrong also getting himself mixed up with that one, but wisely just moving out towards the end.
Even people who knew nothing about cycling could tell that stage 12 to La Mongie was important. Sheryl Crow was back on the race, and she had half the population of Europe and a good portion of Texas for company. The slopes up the final climb to La Mongie were absolutely packed, and with good reason. Everybody knew that this was where the face-off really started between Lance Armstrong and the men intent on depriving him of a sixth Tour de France. And the question for those riders, to paraphrase Sheryl, was, are you strong enough to beat my man? The man, as usual, had his own opinions.
You hear stories from teammates and friends of his, or people that are close enough to know, and that say that he's happy to get second. And I'm not saying that as a criticism. I mean, when he gets second, it's like, yeah, that's a great race. I got second, Lance was stronger, or the guy who got first was stronger, and I'll take second. If that's his approach, then I think that's great.
What's going to happen to Roberto Heras? Because he was your right-hand man in the mountains. Now, instead of setting the tempo for you, he's going to try and blow you away.
Yeah. Well, good luck. Tyler's he's a contender. You know, I think he needs a lot of things. Not a lot. He needs a few things to happen in his favor. But he's certainly a person that can win the Tour. He has to stay out of trouble. He's different than a Mayo who I think, with 60 Ks on the final time trial, will for sure lose time. Tyler, you won't look at him and say, this guy will for sure lose time, because he can time trial. So, you know, he's one of the favorites. As I've said many times, I think, especially early on in the Pyrenees, when those climbs favor the Spanish climbers, the more that we can have Roberto being aggressive, Mayo being aggressive, whoever else from Spain being aggressive, that's better for us, I think. I think that historically, that's a chance that we have to distance Ulrich a little bit. And if those guys are attacking, that's not a bad thing.
Well, it's now day 13 in the Tour de France. It's taken a long time to find the serious climbs of this year's race, and the same man has been in the yellow jersey for 7 days. Paul, they must attack him, but I have a feeling Volker might do well today.
I think Volker is actually going to survive. He's ridden very well. I think he's actually transformed over the last few days. And I think what's impressed most people is, in fact, the way that his team have risen to the occasion. Very often when you get a yellow jersey into a team, it changes the approach of the whole team, and that's what's happened to the Brioche Boulanger team.
Well, Lance Armstrong, of course, he was the last winner here at La Mongie, and he was with Roberto Heras on the same team then. He even asked Heras to slow down because he was hurting Armstrong. Well, now they're rivals, and it could well be a Spanish winner here today, because there's most of the people out here speaking the common language, which is Spanish. And if you want to be more pedantic, then it's Basque. Watch out for Iban Mayo.
Stage 12 was one long gentle ramp leading to two massive spikes in the landscape, the Col d'Aspin and the Col du Tourmalet, with the finish 300 metres below the summit of the Tourmalet at La Mongie.
Well, we're looking at US Postal at the front of what is left of the Tour de France right now, mid-climb of the Col d'Aspin. And it is Noval and Beltran, the two Spanish climbers for Armstrong, who have blown this race apart. The only men really who are left are the significant names of the Tour de France, and the Maillot Jaune is still continuing to surprise us. Thomas Voigtler there riding about 10 men from the front. He has survived an onslaught I think we've rarely seen on the Col d'Aspin.
It's unbelievable the way they came at this climb. I think everybody's not necessarily worried about the Col d'Aspin in itself. They're worried about the descent off it. As you can see, this is actually the easiest descent if we were to come down on the west to east trajectory. It's a safe descent down into the town of Arrow below us. But the way we're going over here, the descent off the summit of the Col d'Aspin is very treacherous. There's some very nasty corners. Some of them come round on themselves almost 300 degrees. They're unbelievable.
Well, we're looking at Beltran taking over from Noval, the newcomer on US Postal, but turning out to be a bit of a star now. Now we know why they selected him. He can drive. Now what's going on at the back there, because that was Rabobank's Grisha Nierman. He's probably number 3 on the team in the mountains, and he's also in trouble now as well.
Martin Elmiger, we get a chance here just to see which riders are being eliminated from the front end of the main field. Christophe Mangin just going back there as well from fdjeux.com. Nicky Sorensen in difficulty. Stuart O'Grady, that's not a surprise. Stewie is not one of the biggest bike riders when it comes to the big mountains, and he too will get left behind on the slopes of the Col d'Aspin. Just in front of him, Marzio Brusegin.
Yes, well, Stuart, I think that's to be expected for O'Grady today. Second overall, remember, he'll be losing that place today, I think. But that's all right. He still looks for another stage win. He's having a great Tour de France. Like many riders in the Tour, these are not the days that they appreciate. Here's the gendarmerie who safely escort the race. They're waiting to go through because they must be as confused as everybody else. There's groups of riders all over the Col d'Aspin today. They've still got to get to the front, though. And now look at this here, because this is Zubeldia, and he was 5th in the Tour de France last year and wasn't happy with his tour at all. And Landeluz is also with him, the man who nearly was the winner the other day.
Right, there's an attack off the front end of the group here.
Might slow it down a bit.
It might slow it down, but I think US Postal have got complete control. They don't want to react to every little flurry of attacks on the front end of the main field. They will have a number of names notched into their brains or into their helmets, which will tell them who they have to react and chase after. And that certainly is not one of the men that they're too worried about. But you can see the reaction is coming here from the Euskaltel team. They want to have somebody in every move that goes off the front, because there are so many orange jerseys on this final climb of the day looking to see if the Basques can win.
Well, this looks like Francesco Secchiari here from Domina Vacanzi. Just about see him through the picture breakup. Sorry about that. Atmospherics, the trees, everything working against us. Here's Life a little bit further down at the back again. He's still hanging on, though. This is Zubeldia, the man who finished 5th in the Tour de France, is a great climber. All of his country people are waiting for him at the finish, where, by the way, the sun has now come out. We can't work this weather out at all, can we? It's very wet, but at least the sun is shining. He's just about hooked on again there.
Well, in fact, that was Filippo Simeone who's attacked at the front end of the group, one of the riders from Domina Vacanzi. And this is at the back end of the group. Number 118 there is Christian van der Velde. I don't think anybody's going to react to this acceleration by Filippo Simeone, because he's not really somebody who's regarded as a possible overall winner, and he may well think that he's going to give himself a slight advantage over the front end of the peloton. In fact, he's got around about 10 seconds, and that might well just calm the speed down at the front end of the main field. This is Simeone. If you remember, he was on the attack a couple of days ago, and charging into the finishing line. We thought he was going to come out with a win at the end of the day. Just holding him there. He won a stage of the Tour of Austria this year, but
now the peloton here, now having made their initial surge, reduced to around 55-60 men, I would think, here now. Nobody missing as far as we know in the key players of the Tour de France, but they've all had a real dig today, and there's the Air Force that belongs to the Tour de France, by the way. They've all decided to park the helicopters here, pick up the VIPs and give them the best seat in the house. We're on the Col d'Aspin, and marginally ahead is Filippo Simeone, and I think he's just been caught. This is Christophe Moreau who's having a go.
a long way down in the overall classification. He probably feels as if they won't lift the pace to chase him down. He was 8th overall in the Tour de France last year, but this year he's already lost himself huge chunks of time because of the fact that he got caught out over the cobblestone section of stage 3, and he trailed in around about 4 minutes behind the winner on that occasion, Jean-Patrick Nazon. This climb, by the way, as the weather starts to play havoc with the pictures, is a fairly long climb at 12.3 kilometers, 7.5 miles. 6.5% is the average gradient, but I can tell you that halfway through the climb, with about 4 kilometers to go to the summit, it's 9.5%.
Well, this is the attack we've just seen of Christophe Moreau as he goes forward now to try and link up with Filippo Simeone. Two riders, if they've got the legs today, might get away here and continue the great French dream. While we look further down the back of the race here, now we've got a CSC rider here who's trying to... no, that was Simeone, I beg your pardon, that was Simeone. Here comes Moreau. Somebody else has got clear as well. And this, of course, who else would it be? Richard Virenque.
Tricky Ricky, you cannot discount this man. He's regarded as the darling of France. He's chasing after Christophe Moreau because let's not forget, Moreau the other day was out on the road just picking away at the points. He's 4th in the King of the Mountains classification with 30 points, 54 points behind Richard Virenque at the start of the day. But that's why Virenque has responded.
And Beltran, who's done all of the pacemaking to destroy the field, has cracked there. He is now slipped to the back of this very select group, and that's the price you do pay. Also, the other man, Noval, is also cracking at the moment.
That's amazing. These men, I'm surprised to see Beltran cracking, Phil, because Beltran, he really looked like he was going to ride the whole way up this mountain. There will be some strange reactions in the body, I think, because of these climatic conditions.
Well, they gave 110% there to do a lot of damage to the main bulk of the race, but it looks as though they've paid the price in full here. Armstrong still has, of course, some of his faithful teammates, including Hincapie and Floyd Landis, up at the front. But you know, Virenque is a danger now. Virenque is seeking the yellow jersey. He lies 4th in this race. That's got to bring a reaction from Vauclair, otherwise he won't be in yellow.
Paolo Bettini, he did a magnificent job of work in the few kilometers leading up to the corner at the bottom of the Col d'Aspin. He now, I think, will just sit up and find his own rhythm and comfortably go over the summit of the climb. Now we're looking at a 3-man leading group. Christophe Moreau in the green shorts there, Filippo Simeone of Domino Vacanze, and Richard Virenque, the man who has won the King of the Mountains classifications on 6 occasions. And let's not forget, as you said, Phil, he's fairly high up in the overall classification. And what a surprise that would be if Richard Virenque climbed up from 4th into 1st place.
Well, nothing surprises me with this man, you know, Richard Virenque. Now, we're just being told our helicopters have just been grounded, so we're going to lose our magnificent helicopter shots for the moment because of the bad weather. But once they get round the mountain, and the Col de Tourmalet, which is where we finish, is now bathed in sunshine, so we should get them for the finish.
But the amazing thing about the Tour de France is the fact that we don't have to rely completely on the helicopters. There is a fixed-wing aeroplane which flies at 10,000 feet above the race and brings us pictures all the way through. They might get just a little bit softer, but we'll be able to witness all of the attacks. A big battle here between the French.
Well, they've destroyed their own break here. They've let Simeone go on the front here. This is Rasmussen coming up as well, and he's got a rider from Euskaltel on his wheel. Wouldn't surprise me. I don't think it is Mayo at the moment, but it might be. And if it is, the crowd here are going to release a raucous cheer because they can see this on the television as he climbs away. I don't think it was Mayo, Paul, but we'll have a little closer look at his face there in a second. It looks to me like it might be Igor Martinez again. Wasn't it Martinez and Simeone together the other day?
Yeah, it was those two riders in the breakaway trying to get themselves off the front. This is definitely Michael Rasmussen on the front. You can just see the World Championship bands. Everybody from Danish television was waiting for the mountains because they felt that this man was going to ride superbly this afternoon. Now you give him 20 seconds advantage over the top of the Col d'Aspin, you won't catch him because he was a former world mountain bike champion.
Now this is interesting now because it was US Postal that caused the big split here and did all the making. The men who survived the hit are now having to stay in that peloton because these riders have decided to push on now and try and win the day. And of course, if they win the day and gain time, they will gradually become men who can threaten the overall leaders. Rasmussen, for example, is 11 minutes behind at the moment, but he could be closing in if he got a good win today.
But he's only around about a minute and 40 seconds behind Lance Armstrong in the race of the big challenges. I'm very surprised to see the Blue Guard, Phil, losing Manuel Beltran, but still they can hand over some very solid other bike. What's the problem there? There's a problem for Floyd Landis.
Yes, just saw one rider get pushed to one side.
That was Landis getting pushed across there by his own teammate, Lance Armstrong.
Unfortunately, we can't control our cameras and we've cut away from it. Nothing coming to us at the moment on race radio. This is Michael Bogart at the back for Rabobank, who are clearly in trouble as well, while his younger teammate Rasmussen is beginning to move clear here. Awfully sorry about the pictures. We do have an aeroplane flying at 10,000 feet and it will catch these signals, but our helicopters are down because of the weather. But the weather is clearing very rapidly on La Mongie, so we should have a nice ride to the finish. This is the group US Postal now, just trying to keep a good tempo going, and they're limiting their losses just now because we're looking here at the two leaders, Martinez and Rasmussen. They're not exactly running away from the chase group, are they?
No, they've only got themselves 5 to 10 seconds advantage, as you can see there. Let's have a look at the back of the pack. There is the yellow jersey, still defending very well. It's good to see him holding on here. Number 117 at the back there from the Liberty Seguros team is Marco Serrano, and I think just in front of him was number 111. That's Roberto Heras. He should be sitting at the back.
There's Tyler Hamilton too off to the right. So they're all in the group. They've read it well. They're allowing US Postal, allowing might be the wrong word, to do all of the pacemaking and use their energy up. Remember, US Postal have destroyed 2 of the team in this effort today. Sitting right here at the back too is Camano of the Euskadel team, another danger man when the roads go up. Looking over his shoulder there is Iban Mayo. This is quite an amazing group now. I think we can just move up there. Heras and Fowen and Tyler Hamilton and Mayo Jean all riding. Let's have a look at his face, see if we can see what he looks like.
Well, I'll tell you who's just in front of him as well, number 31, Iban Mayo. A lot of riders under pressure. It's still a very large group. Let's just move slightly forward. That was Gilberto Simoni in the group too. And in fact, Rasmussen now decided to go alone. Everybody wanted to see how this man was going to perform in the mountains. We've seen him ride very well in the past in races like the Tour of Spain and, of course, like the Giro. I don't think they really have to chase down Michael Rasmussen. He's not really regarded as a threat for the overall classification. It's his first attempt at the Tour de France. And I think right here he's finding himself using up an awful lot of energy because there's still 30 kilometers to go to the finish from the summit of this climb.
Well, Michael Rasmussen, there's no doubt in anybody's mind he is a star for the future. And don't forget, Rabobank have never had a candidate to win this race overall. They've always been a very good all-round team to take stage wins, etc. But Levi Leipheimer, that's the reason the American was brought to the team, to try and win the Tour. He came close. He's had an 8th. But last year, of course, he had that horrible crash. Now they've got a 2-pronged attack here. But even so, as they wipe out Martinez, it's big George Hincapie stamping on the pedals. He's a magnificent cyclist.
He is unbelievable. George Hincapie rides a superb early season classics campaign, riding the great races like the Tour of Flanders and, of course, like the incredible performances we've seen him put in Paris-Roubaix. But once the month of July comes, it's dedication to just one cause, and that is the cause of his leader, Lance Armstrong. I'm a little bit surprised to see Roberto Heras riding so close to the back of this group, number 111. But, you know, he's already 2 minutes behind Armstrong in the overall classification. The big difference between riding for a leader and actually supporting the weight as the leader of the bike race yourself is a completely different thing.
Now he has to reverse his tactics. If he had been in the same situation as 2 years ago when he was coming up La Mongie, he would have had to been riding here right now, making the pace for Lance Armstrong. There is Armstrong. There's no message coming at us as to how he feels by looking at his face, but I think pretty good right now. Nobody else is getting a look in here. The whole field of the Tour de France again being placed into second, subservient to the work being done by US Postal. Only Michael Rasmussen is in front.
Just look at him though, he's got three riders in front of him, one behind. The rider behind him there is just in case Armstrong has a problem and needs to change his time. Look at Ulrich's face, he's really grimacing. He's looking for the power. He's a big, powerful bike rider, using probably a couple of teeth bigger on his sprockets at the back there than Lance Armstrong is. He's surrounded by his men too. That's Andreas Kloden in the white jersey, national champion of Germany. Just off to the right-hand side was Giuseppe Guerini, winner at the summit of the Alpe d'Huez a couple of years ago.
He has his moments in the clash. He's a great ally for Ulrich. Ulrich, remember, he's lost a good man the other day in that very nasty crash coming down the Puy-Marie. There's Heras in the little boy in the blue jersey, and the yellow jersey here I think is under a little bit of pressure here. He's having to work very hard to hold position. Now, Heras may have sensed that because he's gone round him and moved right up, and that was probably a very wise move. Here we go back up to the leader. Michael Rasmussen, he's been around a long time, but not in this particular branch of the sport. He was a mountain biker and a world champion. He's now 30 years of age, and just to give you some idea of his successes, he won the sixth stage of the Dauphiné this year, which is the build-up race for the Tour de France, and last year he won a stage of the Tour of Spain. So he really is a great bike rider. The last time he won a mountain bike world championship was 1999, when a certain Lance Armstrong was winning his first Tour de France.
Yeah, but the mountain stage that this man won in the Tour of Spain was no mean mountain stage either, because if you remember, he won to the summit of the climb called Cauterets, which is not too very far away from where we are here.
Yes, and Richard Baron won there once as well, and so too did one Miguel Indurain. Well, there he is, and he still looks good to me. He's got a lovely position on that bike, and little small man he is, and he keeps on the inside. He must think, goodness me, there's all these riders can climb like me in the Tour de France. It's a big battle now.
Hamilton, number 21, sitting at the back there. For my liking, just a little bit too far back in the group. If I was feeling strong, I'd want to be riding up alongside Ulrich and Armstrong.
So would I, because, you know, Tyler Hamilton, and we don't want this to happen, has a habit of falling off, and it's going to be a very treacherous descent down here.
2 kilometers to go to the summit of the climb now, and the leader Rasmussen has an advantage of around about 13 seconds. That's Chechu Rubiera on the front. Jose Luis is his proper name, but his nickname in the team is Chechu, and he is always on form in the month of July for Lance Armstrong. Came across the team with Roberto Heras from Kelme. The yellow jersey here, Phil, he's suffering. He's just holding on. He wants to hold on for another meter, another kilometer. He's under serious pressure. I actually want this guy to stay in contact over the summit here this afternoon. He's been so courageous over the last 7 days of racing that I really would like to see him keep the yellow jersey for one more day. He needs to go with him.
We've seen him in this situation where he does hurt him, he does suffer deeply, but he does have the ability to get out of the mess he gets himself in, and we've seen him even sprint out for the Premier place. He had a 5th and a 6th. When you see he's jumping around the riders who crack, and that rider is none less than Michele Bartoli, who is slipping back, and Bartoli's seen the maillot jaune come round him, but he just nips round him, gets back into the peloton. 1.5 kilometers to the top, then it's a freewheel down, and take it easy.
He's riding on courage there. I don't know if you noticed, he actually looked down to see what his gears were telling him. That's always a bad sign, because it means that your body is not enjoying the gear ratio that you've selected. But he knocked it up one sprocket and then accelerated onto the back of the group. Ulrich grimacing there on the wheel of Jose Acevedo, the Portuguese rider. Now they are keeping Acevedo in reserve here as well, I think, for a final ascent to the climb. Maybe Acevedo is going to be the Roberto Heras of 2002.
Well, as we watch Michael Rasmussen here, I can hear the race director, Jean-Marie Leblanc, telling all of the race followers to leave the race for the descent, because not only is it wet, but the visibility is reduced by fog. So let's hope that they can see their way down, as well as Bartoli just about keeps the race in sight here as we're looking for the last kilometre of the climb. And just look at this man. How many times have we seen Voigtler do that? Appears to be down and out. He goes back as if somebody kicks him, and he goes straight to the field.
Well, this is courage. This is the yellow jersey. It really has a special spell that it casts over a bike rider, and it casts a very special spell over that man Vogler here this afternoon. He was off the back, and now he's halfway up the main field. Hamilton surrounded by his teammates there. Number 21, you can see riding fairly comfortably. He's got Santos Gonzalez not too far away from him. The leader of the race is just going past the 1 kilometre to go banner to the summit, while still the US Postal Field are not showing any signs of pressure.
They've shed 4 men not coming up this climb. Ribiera here now doing all the work. Floyd Landis, George Hincapie. They've lost 4 men, but they've still got plenty around Lance Armstrong for the final ascent. 1 kilometre to go for Rasmussen. I think we're about to hit the same marker. We're not getting a time check any more than 10 seconds, going up slightly. So it's still very good. Richard Virenque is waiting now, about 10 men down, to try and get the points over the top. It'll be second at the moment, but that'll be good enough for him. Christophe Moreau is still here and showing some good ability on the mountains at what we've seen of them this year. There's the concentration of Rasmussen, 30 years of age and seeking his first ever stage win in his first ever Tour de France.
Well, the Danish were waiting for this. They were very excited about the possibility that this man was going to win here this afternoon. They said he's a strange bike rider. He always predicts when he's going to operate a breakaway. And that's exactly what he told them today, that he wanted to go out on the attack. He wanted to win today's stage. He did exactly that in the Dauphiné Libéré earlier on this year. He actually purposely lost time in the overall standings so that he could attack the next day and win the stage.
George Hincapie, Floyd Landis here. These boys get better and better every year we see them ride. Hincapie seems to continue to develop. 3 years ago he wouldn't have been on the mountain at this stage of the day. Here he is setting the pace, keeping everybody under control. Andreas Clouden off to the left there, the champion of Germany, looking out for his team captain Jan Ullrich. As we start to head up towards the summit now, it looks as though Rasmussen is going to get his name in the history books as the man who topped the climb first. It's been a very good climb by him, and being a mountain biker, and they tend to have better skills than a road cyclist, he could well descend very quickly.
He's going to go downhill like a man possessed, and he won't be scared at all about the weather conditions. It is a bit scary on the descent of the Col d'Aspin, especially with the fact that the clouds have come down to make it a little bit foggy in 1 or 2 of the corners. But there are some dark corners as well, because after the first 2 or 3 kilometers of the descent, you go into a forested area, and that's very difficult in a forested area to actually be able to read the lay of the land, and the corners that you're kind of going to go through.
Well, Virenque's moving up there to snatch second place. I don't think they'll get up to see this man here. When the crowd gets thick and deep like this, you know you're not far from the summit of the first category climb. There's a magnificent cloud here. The rain is still coming down, but it is beautiful at the finish on La Mongie now. All of our spectators have come back onto the finishing line in their thousands. I don't know where they've been, but they're back. And just look at the crowd on top of the Aspan, seeing the leader go. Here's the sprint for second, unless they sweep up Rasmussen. And Richard Virenque, watch out, because it was only seconds in it. Rasmussen will go over the top, and that's how close. Looked the wrong way, Richard. I think Moreau pipped him.
Moreau pipped him, I think, just on the line there, but the acceleration has pulled Rasmussen back into the fold. Moreau there going across in second place. I think the photo will give us the right answer. But this is a bit of a worry, Phil, for me to see Tyler Hamilton sitting at the back of the group, surrounded by all of his teammates. He shouldn't be there.
Well, there sitting on the back too is Chavanel of Brioche-La Boulangère. He's last of that very select front group over the Aspan.
So now they're starting the descent. They go over the top of that climb with 25 kilometers to go. They will drop down into the small town of Sainte-Marie-de-Campin, and it's a descent of around about 8 kilometers, 5 miles of descent. As you can see, Sylvain Chavanel just on the back of the group there. There's the banner indicating 25 kilometers to go to the finish. And I know this descent, it is a very precarious descent. The race has been re-tarmacked over the last couple of years. As you get a chance to have a look over here, you can see that we've climbed up above the cloud level as the riders will charge down into that rather nasty foggy area, and then they'll make their way down into Sainte-Marie-en-Campin in the bottom.
Well, now we've got to watch it down here. No heroics, just come down this mountain because they'll have a better shot at the climb up to the finish. It's drying nicely on the La Mongie climb. There is Virenque, just waiting for confirmation who got that second place. There is the long, fast descent, and the trouble is these are very quick straights like this, and then you try and slam the brakes on for the sharp bends. Your bike gives that horrible feeling of accelerating when the water traps between the brake blocks and the rim of the wheel.
There's the scary moment. You can see the first part of the climb is nice and open. It's not in the forested area, but it's actually most dangerous when you get into the forest towards the bottom of the descent, and then it's hard to pick the line of the riders going around these corners. As you can see at the back, it's still Sylvain Chavanel, one of the big hopes for French cycling, but most certainly hoping that he can stay in contact with the group to help his leader.
This is what's left of the head of the peloton now as we begin our descent of the Col d'Aspin. Sylvain Chavanel, the last man, just hanging on, wisely lying off to get a good look at the corner. And it looks as though we've got an attack here by Moreau, who's gone off the front. Rasmussen is still ahead as he makes the descent, but we haven't seen him, so there is a possibility that he was wiped out when he went over the top.
Well, they just caught onto the tail end of Rasmussen as they went over the summit of the climb, and Richard Virenque, I think, was given third place at the top of that climb, and immediately they began descent. Christophe Moreau decided he wanted to go out on his own, but it looks, I can see a figure just in front there. Now, from this distance, it's very difficult to see whether or not that is a figure of somebody descending or whether it's one of the race lead motorbikes.
Well, we'll know pretty soon. The way they're going down, they are taking it common sense down here because these roads are treacherous. And what's the point of risking things now, because all of the projected leaders of the Tour de France are in this very select group?
Race Radio just crackling in here as we go down the descent. They are actually saying that Rasmussen has opened up a slight gap on the descent, so it wasn't a motorbike in front, it was Rasmussen and Christophe Moreau. Down through the trees now, you can see the gaps starting to appear. Armstrong, by the way, is a fairly good bike rider, very good at handling his machine in situations like this, but as I said in the early part of the day, if the weather conditions change, what is very important is to make sure that you do have the exact right tyre pressures. This is the leader now. This in fact is probably Martinez or Echevarria coming forward. Get a chance to see. This is the corner, by the way. I remember it distinctly from years gone by, where we came up in the opposite direction in a Tour de France when Greg LeMond was the world champion, and he was knocked off his bike by one of the team cars of Gianni Bugno, the team leader from the Chateau d'Ax squad. This is the back of the group.
Just looking at the back of the race, there's one of those nasty corkscrew bends. And fortunately, all of the riders getting round safely, but they can't afford to take any chances. Now, never be a spectator, Paul, standing on the outside of those corners.
Absolutely not. These guys come into these corners sometimes at speeds in excess of 60 miles an hour. It's actually in this area and on this very descent that we are looking down at, the climb down from the Col de la Mangie that my very good friend Sean Yates once recorded 112 kilometers an hour on the descent. Unfortunately, today the riders are coming up.
So, as they, yes, that's a good point, that, Paul. Well, after the mountain points, we think that Virenque was given third place on the climb. He's now got 95 points, if that's the case. Axel Merckx still holding on into second place. Christophe Moreau now beginning to get in the frame there because he's 43 and he is in third place. Still less than half of Richard Virenque as they continue. There is the leader now, so we do have Rasmussen still up there. As we pull right back, it looks as though the good descenders, I'm not sure where we are here, but I think we're at the head of the lead group.
Well, that's the head of the lead group. Just going around the corner there is Rasmussen, just going in front of those houses. Chasing him still is Christophe Moreau. There was a rider from Euskaltel-Euskadi. It looked like the smaller shape of, in fact, David Echevarria. There's the yellow jersey doing a fabulous job here. This man was dropped at 2 kilometers to go. He's actually said, I can't climb the same way as the big stars do, like Ulrich and Armstrong. I'm always on the rivet. I've got to slow down and accelerate and slow down and accelerate, and he's done that to perfection here.
What a fighter. What an absolutely great fighter. That is Voigtler. 20 kilometers to go for the head of the race. That's 12 miles. And of course, the last 12 are all uphill. We're only down here for a moment. It's a very pleasant day on La Mangie now. The sun is coming through. The roads are getting a little bit dry. There's 20 kilometers to go for the rest of the string here. So they're not that far behind the leaders, who are continuing to push on. We are lining ourselves up for a great battle on La Mangie. Every man for himself, I would suggest. Here's the leader, still driving on, Michael Rasmussen, looking for his first ever stage win. He has been waiting for these mountains like a first-time cyclist, never mind a first-time rider in the Tour. he has relished the thought of climbing the big mountains of the Pyrenees. Michael Rasmussen drives on now, holding off a very select group of riders on today's stage. Here we're looking at Jan Ullrich and still trying to be guided through by Claude.
Where is Armstrong? Right now I haven't seen Armstrong. This is the Ullrich group. Hincapie is looking over his shoulders, and I think that is because maybe Lance Armstrong has had some kind of a problem. Armstrong is not in that group there. Hincapie is sitting up, so that would indicate that Armstrong has had a problem to me. There he is.
He's in that group there. Well, Ullrich has gone. Now, we don't know how this has happened. Our cameras, our helicopters weren't flying, of course. So we're not sure why Armstrong is here. He's got his team all around him. He's looking pretty regular when you look down there.
He wouldn't take any risks on the descent. You see now they're looking over their shoulders. Now let's see what happens here to Jan Ullrich in the pink jersey. Ullrich, let's not forget, 4 or 5 years ago was regarded as a very bad descender, but now he's put himself into a position where he actually looks very comfortable. This small group containing the yellow jersey and the big contender to the overall title, Jan Ullrich, have got the advantage on Armstrong, but Armstrong has his men around him.
There are 8 riders now in that group, all in pursuit of Rasmussen. This is the first time I think we've seen Lance on the defensive like this for a long time. Rasmussen being chased by 8 riders, including Christophe Moreau, and also the Maillot Jaune of Voeckler and Jan Ullrich. And I think Iban Mayo is also in that group. So Lance Armstrong's been put on the defensive here by some very, very important names. And Rasmussen, who's trying to win the stage, might have got himself involved in a major battle here.
Well, I think Armstrong, I hope, was only just sitting back and not taking too many risks on the descent. He doesn't want to blow his Tour de France on the descent of the Col d'Aspin. But the men in front are men who are serious challengers. Iban Mayo is in the orange jersey. The pink jersey is Jan Ullrich. The pressure is on the American.
Well, there is the chase by Lance Armstrong.
Here's the yellow jersey. And this is really quite an interesting composition of this leading group, because although, well, let's not forget, we still have Michael Rasmussen a little bit up the road at around about 15 seconds, chased by Richard Virenque. The group which is forming there, a very serious group, contains Jan Ullrich, Andreas Klöden, Iban Mayo, Christophe Moreau, Juan Miguel Mercado, Thomas Voeckler, the yellow jersey, and Laurent Brochard. Now, Laurent Brochard has been successful in the Pyrenees before. He won a stage on the 14th of July a few years ago onto the town of Loudonvielle. Armstrong is surrounded by his teammates. He's got 4 very strong teammates with him. And I think only, Phil, at the end of the day will we find out the story as to just exactly what happened to Armstrong on that descent.
Absolutely, and we'll have to work it out. I think you might have a degree of correctness thinking there was no problem with him mechanically. And maybe there was a problem with him physically. That's the only other reason, other than playing safe and taking care on the tricky descent, because he's racing into better weather and he'll gamble on chasing back on the climb up to the finish. This is Rasmussen waiting for no one as he continues to try and hold them off there. Jan Ullrich, Andreas Klöden, Iban Mayo, Christophe Moreau, Juan Miguel Mercado, Thomas Voeckler, the yellow jersey, Laurent Brochard, and we think Richard Virenque makes up the 8 riders. They're reforming here at the moment. Well, Paul, this is the first time I can recall with Jan Ullrich actually on the attack. But look out, it's about to be healed, that gap now, because here they come.
This is called control. This is called not panicking. This is called keeping all of your teammates around you. Now, if you have a quick look there at Jan Ullrich, he's only got 1 teammate left with him. Armstrong still has 4 very strong teammates. And I'll give you the names. We're talking Jose Acevedo. We're talking here George Hincapie. We're talking Floyd Landis and Chechu Ribiera. Strong, experienced bike riders. That's what's going to count towards the end.
And that's why you need a team, because you can't win the Tour de France by yourself. If Armstrong had been isolated alone there, he would have probably been left behind.
Well, I thought I'd seen David Echevarria. In fact, it was the orange jersey of Echevarria coming up here to Richard Virenque. The race situation still on the front. Michael Rasmussen with about 15 seconds over this chasing group of 2 riders. David Echevarria there just joining up to Richard Virenque, and a further 20 seconds back to the group, which now contains Armstrong, Ullrich, and the yellow jersey. The yellow jersey, Thomas Voeckler, Phil, doing a brilliant job.
It's unbelievable the way this man is riding, and again he fooled us. He hangs off the back and then he goes and he's up with the leaders.
Now Echevarria no stranger to victories at the Tour de France. He's got 2 Tour de France wins throughout his career, but they're about to get picked up by the front end of the group. That's Laurent Brochard. This is Juan Miguel Mercado, the rider from Quick-Step d'Avitamont. We'd expected to see him ride well once we came up into the mountains. I think he's dropped back just a little bit too far in the overall classification to be a real threat for a high finish, but he certainly is a very good climber. You can actually see there it's a long way back down the line, but there's a lot of riders starting to reintegrate the group here. Tyler Hamilton, I believe, must have made the group, but he did start that descent in absolutely the wrong place. He was at the back end of the group. As we have a quick look now. Just looking through this group, we get a chance to pick up who is here. Ivan Basso is in the group from Team CSU. This is the arrière du peloton, the back end of the group. And look like Brochard. Brochard trying to counter the move by Mercado.
Now, if those 4 riders get together, Paul, then we are going to see 4 riders who might cause no concern to the big riders.
Well, the race situation, as I can see it now, is Michael Rasmussen is still leading, but I have a feeling that Richard Virenque and David Echeverria have just been picked up by the front end of this group. That man trying to launch out there we just saw was Laurent Brochard trying to get across to Juan Miguel Mercado.
That looked like Echeverria just behind there in second wheel. They're taking great respect on the roads here. This is the last start of the last climb of the day soon. As we start, La Mongie will take us up to the finish. We're just starting the climb now. It's some 13 kilometers to the summit. Here come the leaders. This is David Echeverria heading up the chase group. And your guess is as good as mine. At the moment, Laurent Brochard is certainly ahead of this group, and Rasmussen is certainly the leader, and that's about all we know. 13 kilometers to go. Santa Maria de Campan, played throughout the history. The first year we came through this town was in 1910, and not long after that, Eugene Christophe was the famous man who repaired his forks in the forge, and he was penalised because he had some little boy blow up the bellows.
It was tough, the rules in those days. Now you can see Rasmussen here, and he must have started the final climb of the day because he's taken off his helmet. Now, the rules in professional cycling nowadays say that you have to wear a helmet, a crash helmet, on every stage of the race. However, if the final climb of the day is more than 5 kilometers, you can take off your hats at the helmet at the bottom of that final climb. So he started going uphill.
That's right. We saw the PMU sign which announced the start of the climb. That's the signal. You're on the climb to the finish now. There's no more downhill. It is literally every man for himself on this climb up the mountain. Rasmussen is still ahead. Mercado, I think it is now, has joined Brochard in the chase behind, followed by the group.
There's not very much in it, though, because Rasmussen leads those 2 chasers by just 13 seconds. And then at 24 seconds, or just 11 seconds behind the 2 chasers, is the main group containing Armstrong, Ulrich, the yellow jersey, Thomas Voeckler, and, of course, Tyler Hamilton, who I seem to think I just caught a glimpse of recovering at the bottom of that descent.
Well, Rasmussen continues to ride at the front. Here is Mercado and Brochard, but they're bringing them back. Grit their teeth they may. That's not a good sight, though. When Mercado looked over his shoulder, he will have seen the group still coming up. Brochard, in fact, got his helmet off, but he's got it on his handlebars. And I would have thought he'd find that rather annoying.
Now, you have to think about the psychology of Jan Ulrich. Ulrich has been caught out by Armstrong's tricks, as he calls them, a couple of times over the last few years. This is Echeverria, job done. He tried to escape on the descent. Now he'll just have to survive up to the finish. Having seen Ulrich get a slight advantage on Armstrong on the descent, I wonder if he's going to make the mistake of thinking that Armstrong was in difficulty and try and attack a long way from the top. There's another problem there. I think that was a supporter, actually.
It was a Rabobank supporter there.
Pretty scary, though.
Always a bit of a shock, that. We're going to be fooled a few times by Euskadel, because the orange jersey of the crowd here outnumber anybody else up on top at La Mongie. There is Voeckler, done a brilliant ride, looked in trouble, went back to the front, was in the attacks, and is now looking very settled to be the yellow jersey tomorrow as well. Laurent Brochard rides up to the right, while US Postal come back into control now of this race. And I think they've had their shocks, but it looks good again as George Hincapie gets back on the front.
Chechu Rubiera coming to the front now, one of the US Postal riders involved in the crash in the early part of the event. Nearly every bike rider in the US Postal Service had a crash at one time or another, including Lance Armstrong. And just for the record, of all of the major contenders for the final victory, only one man didn't crash in the first 10 days of the race. His name was Jan Ulrich. Everybody else was on the ground at one time or another.
Sometimes you need a bit of luck. He was in the place where it didn't happen. He was delayed by crashes, but he never fell off his bike. There's that very, very select group now. The strong men of the Tour de France coming back together now. It could be that they'll calm down a little bit, and that will give Rasmussen his chance to win that stage. And we're looking at Hamilton off to the right, number 21, all in this group now. Remember, we're nearly at the end of what has been a nearly 200-kilometre stage today. The Aspan in the wet. They've safely descended it, and they're now beginning the final climb up to 1,715 metres, which is 12.8 kilometres, and we're about 2 kilometres up the climb at the moment. There's the 10 kilometres to go sign. That wasn't a bad guess, was it? As we now see Floyd Landis on the front. Armstrong, it'll be interesting finding out later as to exactly why he was behind Jan Ullrich. We're looking now at Floyd Landis as he continues to set the pace here. If there was any shockwaves, they put them to rights now. The riders are all together with the exception of a couple of riders just ahead.
Big organisation now. And we really will not know until after the race tonight just exactly what happened to Armstrong on that descent. My own personal feeling is that Armstrong didn't want to take any risks at all on the descent and allowed other riders like Jan Ullrich there wearing number 11 maybe to take a risk or two too many on the descent running down towards the line. Georg Tocznik is in this group. Christophe Moreau is in this group. It's amazing how many numbers were pairing that won. All the leaders and the heads of state of all the teams. There's Gilberto Simoni on the far side, number 171.
Ever since he said his morale was in his boots and he was going home, he's got better and better. And I think he will win a stage, probably in the Alps, maybe here, who knows. These boys, I think, have had a big fight today, and they're now just taking a few deep breaths as they settle down for the climb up to the finish. Just Rasmussen now out in front, and the fact they've slowed down, he might have a chance of this stage win now.
Yep, but this climb gets very hard up towards the summit. Yes, it is around about 12.5 kilometers in length. It's an average gradient of 6.8%, but as you get up to the last 5 kilometers, it tips up to 8% and then 10%, and it stays at that all the way to the finish. And sadly enough, I feel very sorry for the bike riders, Phil, because once they've crossed the finishing line, they can't actually freewheel because it continues to climb up to the area where they have to park all the team cars.
That's right, because normally it's another 4 or 5 kilometers to the actual summit of the mountain. This is the Col de Tourmalet, and it first came into the Tour along with the first mountains in the history of the Tour de France in 1910, on the very first mountain roads the Tour climbed. I can tell you the road surface wasn't quite as good.
It certainly wasn't. It was almost like a dirt track, but it's come across then many times since then. Landis already got his helmet off, going to the front for the team, setting all the pacemaking. This man started his season off very well this year with a brilliant win in the Tour of the Algarve, despite a beating in the time trial stage by his own teammate Lance Armstrong by a single second. Now moving up just a little bit further back, Chechu Ribiera, Hincapie and the rest. These guys trying to pull themselves into the race. That is Roberto Heras, I think they're trying to come up to the group again.
Well, if he's got caught out, and it looks like it is Roberto Heras, then what on earth happened to him? Whether he got caught out with whatever caused the problem with Lance Armstrong, but he's still got a little bit of work to do, but he's obviously feeling good because he is coming up towards the group once more.
Could have been dropped on the descent. Like Tyler Hamilton, I felt they were riding too far to the back of the group before the start of the descent of the Col d'Aspin, a descent which is in the early part of the descent very fast, and then after that it is very tricky with some nasty hairpin bends down towards the bottom. The sun has come out for the riders here at the Tour de France now as we sit up at the finish on the line in the small town of La Mongie, and all of the big leaders. There is Roberto Heras. He's reintegrated the group. But fortunately, the yellow jersey too has managed to stay in contact, and they're going to have a hard time getting rid of this young man. He's got a rather ungainly style as he gets out of the saddle, and it's all really based on courage here, his ability to stay in contact with some of the best bike riders in the world. Should keep this. He doesn't look like a man showing any signs of weakness. He's got around about 9 minutes to lose on Lance Armstrong, and he's got around about 6 minutes to lose on Richard Virenque, and the way he's been riding, I can't really see that happening to him this afternoon. So I don't really think anybody has missed the wagon in this group now.
And there he is again, Paul, just trying to give us a heart attack, Voigtler, but he's once more riding himself back into the situation.
Taking a quick head count in this group, I've actually not really been able to see if anybody has missed out. I've seen Armstrong there, I've seen Ulrich, I've seen Hamilton, Mayo, Moro, Basso, all of the big names are in this leading group now. So we're looking now to a fairly interesting first showdown, but it's not going to be that decisive, I don't think, on the first day of the race into the Pyrenees.
All the US Postal boys waited for the mechanic there to throw off their helmets, and they just got back on with their job. Hincapie looking as though he's almost enjoying this experience. Never seen him look so good as he climbs on the mountain, and they're just riding up here. He's turned into a mountain climber as well as a great classic rider right now. Hitting out the tempo. Floyd Landis waiting if he should fail. Bobbing in and out the picture there, we can see Levi Leipheimer, and I'm just worried a little bit about Tyler Hamilton here, and his two teammates are waiting for them. That is Gutierrez and Perez.
He's not having a good day. When you see two teammates riding alongside a leader like this, the information has gone out that he is not good. He is not in great form. Just moving up alongside him, his teammate there is Santiago Perez. They're trying to pace Hamilton back into the group, but just look at he doesn't have the power in this pedaling action right now. His body is rocking. They're going to have to try and survive. This is the first sign of the crack of a champion at the Tour, but there's a move at the front. This looks like it could be Ivan Basso.
Well, that's going to hurt if it is an attack here. I saw that Jakob Peel just came onto the tail there, past Tyler Hamilton. Remember that Peel is 5th overall in this race, and he's going to conserve that or improve. Now, that is Carlos Sastre by the look of it, as we get clear of the field. Another man we forget about, but he is a great climber, and he's always ridden well in the mountains.
Well, Rasmussen, by the way, we've kind of forgotten about him on his own at the front of the bike race, is around about 33 seconds ahead of that group. But this was a very good move. This is the leader right now. He's on his own, making his way towards the summit of this climb. He's on the easiest part of the climb, and it's very easy for me as an ex-non-climber to say this is an easy climb. He's on that part of the climb which is only around about 4 or 5%. The yellow jersey has cracked.
And Richard Virenque took a good look at him there. They're on rival teams, so I have a feeling Virenque is just saying stay cool here. I think he's actually passed him a word of advice. Voigtler is in desperate trouble right now, but he's fighting, and he's got every chance of hanging on here. We think Levi Leipheimer is just ahead. He's also been detached slightly after that attack by Sastre, who won a stage at Benasque last time. This is Tyler Hamilton here now, and he is in big trouble. Santiago Perez is the teammate who's been earmarked to try and get him up to the finishing line.
It just goes to show to you the difference between being the leader of a team and being a helper. Virenque, I think, today here is doing the national thing of actually trying to help the yellow jersey not lose too much time. Virenque, his history of trying to finish high in the overall classification at the Tour de France is behind him. He's actually giving encouragement and psychological help to the young man who's there in the yellow jersey.
Whoa, though, look at these two now. Rubiera and Acevedo trying to look after Lance Armstrong. They're the last two US posted at the front now. This is a free-for-all now as they race towards the line. But what a difference this is for 2 years ago. It's a battle royal now on the slopes of the Col d'Aspan. Riders are being spread eagle, dropped from the group. We have seen Tyler Hamilton in trouble. Levi Leipheimer. There is Leipheimer. Meanwhile, is the capture here of Rasmussen by this very select group. First up should be Carlos Sastre, and then comes the Armstrong group.
Unbelievable. It was 25 seconds just a few moments ago, and Rasmussen now has been brought in. And look at this, Ulrich too. The Kaiser is starting to crack. He doesn't have the acceleration, Phil. He's a huge man on a bike. He uses a massive gear. He cannot respond to the accelerations of men like Armstrong's leaders.
Watch it, wait for it, because Armstrong's building here. Armstrong's realised that Ulrich is in trouble. He's getting round to grab onto the wheel of Acevedo, and once he's got him, we are being treated to the situation of 2 years ago when it was Roberto Heras that looked after Lance Armstrong to the line.
Ulrich now, he must not panic. He has to get into his rhythm. He is capable of losing 20 or 30 seconds in the first few kilometres of a climb, but what he has to do is get into his own rhythm. Armstrong realises this. He wants to try and put time between himself and Jan Ullrich. I think Jan Ullrich is really the only man that he fears in the sport of professional cycling. How many times has he said Ullrich is the most talented bike rider? He's the one that Armstrong is afraid of, and he wants time this afternoon.
Well, Acevedo was brought onto the team when Heras was taken away because he wanted to lead his own team. Now Lance Armstrong is riding on the wheel of Acevedo. Acevedo's job is simple: pace his captain till he can do it no longer, and then we will see if Armstrong goes for the stage win. There is Jan Ullrich. There also now coming onto the tail too is Simoni. But right around the corner, being distanced at the moment, and all of the men in the Tour de France are in desperate trouble now. Armstrong is putting himself in a position here to open up and go. It is déjà vu of 2 years ago on La Mongie. It won't be a yellow jersey this time for Lance Armstrong, but there will be a great deal of satisfaction.
The time coming through now to Armstrong and Ullrich is 25 seconds. Ullrich has got the great Italian climber alongside him in the pink and white jersey there, Giuseppe Guerini, just pacing him, making sure that he doesn't panic. A little bit further back there is a little climber from the Quick Step team, that is Juan Miguel Mercado. Still, there is no sign of any pain, and this is a bit of a surprise, Phil, because Andreas Kloden, the T-Mobile rider, the teammate of Jan Ullrich, is actually staying up there alongside Armstrong. He should really be with the team leader, helping him out.
He has gone with him, and Acevedo is setting all the pace. Armstrong will assess who's around him when he can, but he'll know who is not around him. Sadly, number 21, Tyler Hamilton, the Maillot Jaune Voigtler, because of his big lead over Armstrong at the start of the day, he'll probably still be in the yellow jersey tonight, but he will have conceded time. Remember too, the Richard Virenque is in this group. This is there he is. This is a battle royale now, and Virenque is trying to nurse the Maillot Jaune here, despite the fact he is 4th overall and on the rival team. Back up at the front now, Acevedo stamping on the pedals, repaying the big confidence that Armstrong had in him when he said, "Get him on my team." And now as he drives on, Kloden and Basso are the only riders there. Further down, it looks like Ullrich now is beginning to struggle even more.
This is the first big climb of the Tour de France, and the body, after a long, hard race over the flat, doesn't react maybe the same way as you want it to. A little bit further down there, you can just see, I think that is Levi Leipheimer just off the back of the Armstrong group with Gilberto Simoni, but it's a further 20 seconds back to the group that contains the man regarded as the #1 challenger. This group here, in fact, is containing Rasmussen, so Leipheimer is in front of Rasmussen. Number 51 there is Christophe Moreau. He's only about 15 seconds behind Armstrong. Georg Tocznik going through there for Gerald Steiner.
Cauchioli was there.
Still waiting, though, for number 11.
Well, that looks to me as though Jan Ullrich now is in desperate trouble on the day that they weren't supposed to attack. They all kept telling us they would just see how it goes. Well, I can't blame them for not giving their plans away. But there too is Laurent Brochard riding now. Guerini taking a good look at Jan Ullrich, saying, "Can you lift anything? Is there anything more we can do about this?" Because Armstrong is in a position, and I think we'll see one of his familiar darts to the front and accelerations here. Iban Mayo is tagged on to the back of this group. He's the big star, but he's behind. There he is in the orange jersey. If I were a betting man, I go for Mayo now to win the stage. Francisco Mancebo is also here, and Denis Menchov, and also in the group there. That's Mancebo, number 61. And there goes a move, and that's Jakob Peel, I think, who's gone as he tacks now. No, it's Carlos Sastre again. Sastre again has gone for CSC.
Well, he's not a stranger to winning in the Pyrenees either. He's gone to try and see if he can get the advantage, but this just might rattle the cage of Lance Armstrong, who won't want to see riders stealing the glory away from him and his team here this afternoon. He doesn't have to attack, really, Armstrong. He's ridden on the front with his teammates, and they've set a tempo that has basically just eliminated one or two of his rivals. Rivals like Levi Leipheimer, like Tyler Hamilton, and, of course, more importantly, like Jan Ullrich. So now Carlos Sastre is out on his own with an advantage of not very much more than 10 or 11 seconds.
Well, they are not going to chase Sastre. They're not going to disturb their rhythm. Acevedo here gritting his teeth, holding it as long as he can, because he is the last US postal man in that group. But the speed since they hit the Aspan has done all of the damage. Ullrich is beginning to lose ground again here, and this is not a good sign. Guerini is the rider pacing him as they come off the wheel there of Laurent Brochard. They are now at 5 kilometers to go.
A lot of people asked what was the flat 12 stages in this Tour de France going to do to bike riders with all of the mountains stacked up towards the end. Well, this is what it's done. The big riders like Jan Ullrich, who use monstrous gears, have a very hard time first day into the mountains, changing from using the big gear ratios to the smaller gear ratios required in the mountains. This is what's happening to Jan Ullrich today. Don't ever discount this man. He can, once he gets his engine going, he's still a very talented bike rider. But immediately we hit the mountains today, Armstrong's team have put him into the red zone.
Well, in many ways it's a shame. You can see the two pedalling styles there. Guarini pedaling a small gear while Ullrich suffers pedaling that slightly higher gear. But now we are looking at the face of Armstrong, and Acevedo is going to push himself until he can pedal that bike no more today. Then he will hope that Armstrong can finish off this enormous day in the Tour. And tomorrow, this doesn't even compare in difficulty, because tomorrow is a terribly difficult day. And if your name is Ullrich, what will you be thinking when you go to bed tonight? There's Cloden looking over. Where's the team leader gone? Because he's not in the group here.
Well, this is Carlos Sastre on the front now. He's ticking away the kilometres. It's 4 kilometres to go for him. That's around about 8.5 to 9 minutes in the mountains compared to 4 minutes of racing on the flat stages. Carlos Sastre now looking to try and get a victory for this team, Team CSC. Now there's an acceleration, and this looks to me as if this is the acceleration from the T-Mobile rider. Now this is a bit of a surprise.
Well, this is a magnificent piece of riding. Now Acevedo can do no more, and he's got to drop off the pace and hope that Armstrong can handle the rest. Now, the man who's won the Tour de France for the past 5 years, it's down to him. The man with his enormous ability, no longer the team, it's him against the rest now. Who's going to help him? Because Sastre at the moment is not a big deal. Here comes the move. They're trying to grab the wheel of Armstrong here to see if they can control the day.
This is not an attack, this is just control.
Absolutely.
He's just keeping his eyes out to see if anybody's going to try and come up to him. That just behind him there is Francisco Mancebo, the leader of the Il Baleares team, Balearic Islands from Spain. Over on his right-hand shoulder, you can see Oscar Pereiro. The interesting thing is that both Oscar Sevilla and Tyler Hamilton are not in this group.
And this is a great Phonak team. Pereiro and Gonzalez are the two riders riding on the shoulder of Armstrong. One of them will hit him soon and try to get the places. Ullrich is going further and further back here. He's not chasing, is he? He's hanging on to what he's got. He's not moving up at all.
Well, the gap to the yellow jersey at the moment is around about 1 minute and 17 seconds, so there's no problem for him. He should stay in the yellow jersey at the end of today's stage. We expected him to crack, but we didn't really expect to see this man in the pink jersey there crack. Jan Ullrich hanging on to the back of the group, and I can only think that what has happened to Ullrich here is he's used monstrous gears over the first 12 days. And surprisingly enough, Tyler Hamilton on his own terrain, he's regarded as a very good climber, is also being put into difficulty this afternoon.
Yes, Tyler Hamilton will live to fight another day, as of course will Jan Ullrich. It is a strange business racing a bike in the mountains. The body can do strange things. Tomorrow could be their day. That man there, Thomas Voeckler, has lived up to the tradition of wearing the maillot jaune. He won't give up, and he will keep his lead tonight, I'm sure of that. He'll just look a little bit closer in the eyes of all those behind him. Here we are, Carlos Sastre. It's his 4th Tour de France. He didn't finish his first one when he crashed on the 8th stage. Then he came with a stage win. He did wear the white jersey. Oh, I beg your pardon. I'm talking about Ivan Basso, who is also in the group at the moment. The Basque flags fly now as Mancebo. He is 10th overall in the Tour and about to improve.
Been joined there by Ivan Basso. Ivan Basso, I don't think will do any work at all because his teammate is off the front of this group. He, in fact, is trying to defend the position of Carlos Sastre. Armstrong has not reacted to these accelerations. Now, that is somewhat of a surprise to me. Now, look at this. This is Mayo at the back there, number 31. Looking a bit further forward, there's the blue jersey of Armstrong dancing away through the crowd, making sure he controls everything.
Here we go. This is now a total free-for-all on the slopes of the Tourmalet. We've never seen this before. We didn't see it in the days of Thévenet when he won in 70. He was chased by Eddie Merckx. We didn't see it either when Lance Armstrong won, because he only had with him his teammate Heras and Joshiba Bolocki. He's checking over his shoulder to see who's with him. He knows Ullrich isn't. He knows the boys ahead are not going to damage him overall yet. And here he goes. He's building up for a move. As he's not seen Ullrich, he's not seen any of them. He thinks, well, I may as well go and try what happens.
Ivan Basso has responded immediately to get onto the wheel of Armstrong. Armstrong now has to assume complete control. He has no teammates left. He used them all over the flat part of this course before we got to the mountains. Ivan Basso, let's not forget this man has finished 5th overall in the Tour de France and been the best young rider as well. He leapt across to the wheel of Armstrong. Armstrong has not got the big gap that we've seen him get in recent years, but certainly that was a serious acceleration and put all the Spanish climbers in a lot of bother.
Well, Ivan Basso, he was listed by many as a pre-race favourite. We didn't rate him too much, but he's right there right now when it really matters. We're back up to the leader, Sastre. That man, Bjarne Riis, who gave Sastre the team captaincy over Bobby Julich, said he's our man for the overall. And on day one, when it's a chance to put in your quest for overall, he is looking like the winner just now, or is he?
There's the control. Armstrong doesn't need to panic in a situation like this. He doesn't want to push himself too far into the red zone because he knows tomorrow is a very hard day at the Tour de France. A lot of big mountains to go over. Here he's just controlling. Look at that face. That face doesn't tell you anything, does it? This
it
is
tells
a face
me he's
of
going to win the Tour de
concentration.
France.
It probably does. It's concentration. He's looking at the back wheel of the man that he's chasing there, Carlos Sastre, pulling himself up nice and slowly. There it is. I doubt if they'll try and attack him.
I still have to admit that Bjarne Riis has put together a great team for CSC in Denmark here, because they've got two riders alongside Lance Armstrong. They've ridden themselves so hard on the flat as well, and they're still very much in the race. Armstrong is in a Danish sandwich right now, Danish by the team nationality, not by the riders, by the way, as they come up together now. Three riders, Armstrong against two others. Team CSC have been the leaders in the team race in this competition for a while now, and this is why. And Armstrong won't be over worried by their presence, because the men he fears most are all struggling. And this was the day riders said, oh, the climb to La Mongie won't be decisive, it's rather easy.
Well, it all changed really, Phil, because of the weather conditions. Once the rain came down, it made it a lot more difficult. A little bit further down, you can see here, this is Andreas Kloden on the left-hand side with Francisco Mancebo. I feel this afternoon maybe the leadership of T-Mobile is going to switch across from one rider to another, because Ulrich is really something. There's Bobby Julich as well.
Yes, there's Heras sitting on the wheel there of Jan Ulrich, and Heras was the man that paced Armstrong 2 years ago to his great victory and the Maillot Jaune and the Tour de France. There is Brochard, but no sign here of Tyler Hamilton. He's in the next group as far as we know. As you say, Paul, pointing it out there, Michael Rogers of Australia is doing the ride of his life in this group. He's a rider for the future. He's only a young man.
2 minutes and 8 seconds from the leading group of three down to the yellow jersey. He shouldn't lose it this afternoon. He started the day with a very nice buffer over Lance Armstrong. It was a 9 minute and 35 second buffer, and currently he's lost over 2 minutes of that. Now the acceleration coming from Ivan Basso and Lance Armstrong at the front as they go into the tunnel. It was actually in that tunnel going the opposite way that Sean Yates recorded 112 kilometers an hour going downhill. That indicates to you just how steep the incline is.
2 kilometers to go. That's for the leaders now, because Guerini is pacing Ulrich here in this same group as Heras. Andreas Kloden is also here. Up front now is Andreas Kloden. He could be, what is he overall, Kloden? He lies 13th, he's 10 minutes down. He's going to be up there and above Ulrich. They may have to ask questions who is going to lead the T-Mobile team by the end of this day. Now there's only two riders down there right now.
Ivan Basso at the front, number 61, the leader of this team, 7th overall in the Tour de France a couple of years ago, and back in 2002 he finished 11th, but he was also the best young rider, tipped for future stardom. Look at the orange jerseys here. They were expecting to see Euskaltel Euskadi on the attack. Sounds like there's a problem at the back of the group. Tyler Hamilton, by the way, is at the moment riding alongside the race leader's yellow jersey of Thomas Vogler. This is an unbelievable crowd.
Well, this is an incredible crowd. They are basically all Spanish. That's the Basque flag. As these two riders go up now, they thought they would be looking for Iban Mayo, but instead they're seeing the master of the Tour de France, Lance Armstrong, follow the wheel of Ivan Basso. This is Kloden, who might be coming the new leader. We talked about this man 4 years ago as about to become one of the greatest bike riders. He got the bronze medal in the Olympic Games in Sydney, and he went into virtual anonymity. Well, he's back now since he won the German championship, and he might have to take over yet from Jan Ulrich. But for the moment being, here he comes again. This man in yellow is on a piece of elastic, and he's about to wind riders back in. He deserves every yellow jersey he gets.
Great bike ride. This man, you know, has been pushed up to the point of stardom in France here. Armstrong looking over his shoulder. He wants to see if there's any sign of weakness in Ivan Basso, but Basso is riding a superb ride here. This is the first time we've seen anybody really capable of staying up alongside Armstrong and turning pedal for pedal with the same amount of energy and encouragement as he is.
Ivan Basso, who's now riding his 4th Tour de France. and he's had no stage wins, but he has been best rookie with a white jersey victory in 2002, the year Armstrong on this very climb took over the lead of the Tour de France and went on to win it. And it was Basso who took the best newcomer's jersey. Now they ride side by side.
Francisco Mancebo here, the champion of Spain, a very strange style as he tries to drag himself up to the two riders in front. The white jersey is Andreas Kloden, the man on his wheel is Carlos Sastre.
But they're a long way down.
They're a long way down. They have opened up some serious gaps here, but I don't really believe that Armstrong actually attacked. It was just the pressure of his team that literally exploded the main field.
Exactly what happened 2 years ago. Armstrong now has put himself into a position where he's been obliged to finish off what others have started. As he continues to go through the tunnels towards the finishing line here now on La Mongie, I'm just wondering whether Armstrong will want to now accelerate, if he can, away from Basso. They need time. Armstrong wants time now more than the win.
There's no way that he's either going to think about offering the victory to the other man with him, because there's a 20-second time bonus for the first rider to cross the finish line as well. And that, added to the already around about 45-second advantage he's got over Jan Ullrich, would put Ullrich a long way behind in the overall classification. We've heard his team coach, Chris Carmichael, has said that Armstrong wants to try and get 4 minutes advantage over Ullrich before the final time trial of the Tour de France. He needs to get every minute, every second that he can along the way, if that's what his goal is.
Might have half of that today when we see the clock counting, because he is flying up this hill. We're inside the tunnel. Our cameras can't work in those conditions. We'll wait for them to come out. Here they are. Armstrong continues to hold high revs here, thinking of time more than the victory. Coming up to around 500 meters to go to the finish now. Superb ride by Basso. Let's not take that away from him. Look at his face. Which one's got the strength to finish this off? As Lance Armstrong looks for a stage win number 17. If he tries to take this one, Basso hasn't won a single stage of the Tour de France. 500 meters to go.
Now Armstrong looking across. These men are riding mano a mano, man against man, really just pitting themselves against each other, trying to see which man is the strongest as they charge up to the finishing line. But Ivan Basso, Phil, to me, looks very comfortable indeed. But watch out for the rage of Armstrong once he gets close to the finishing line, because I think he wants to get the win here. He likes history. He likes to repeat it.
I think Paulie's going to give us one of those treats of explosive power when he sees the flag that matters. He's cheered all the way up here. Basso, though, has had a tremendous first day in the Pyrenees, and he really has got an awful lot out of the race day. Has he got enough left to take on Lance Armstrong? How often have we seen that familiar style of Lance Armstrong? His concentration is high revving. Basso is just looking at him and straight ahead to see where that banner is, to see should he make the move, and if so, when.
They're both waiting. This has been an unbelievable escapade by these two men, but it's the first time really we've seen a man able to rival Armstrong in these uphill finishes. Now the kick, digging deep, just a little bit closer. They're looking for the banners. In fact, Basso has come into first slot.
He's gritted his teeth here. He's trying acceleration. Armstrong is putting his toes down. He is holding on here, and I think he is going to have a sprint. He would be looking for stage win number 17 if he gets it. Basso is giving him a long lead out. Armstrong hasn't done a thing about it. Basso gets the stage win. Armstrong gets the same time, a small second place bonus. He won't get the yellow jersey today, but boy, has he done some damage. And a great ride here too by Andreas Kloden.
He's going to be the new leader of T-Mobile tonight. Look at the time gaps, so we're going to see some serious time gaps here this afternoon. 20 seconds there for Kloden, just coming across Mancebo at 23 seconds. And this is Carlos Sastre, the man who really set it up for Team CSC. This team is going to be well ahead of anybody else tonight in the team race.
Sastre in.
More riders coming up there. You can just get a glimpse there. I think that was Scarponi coming up from Domino Bacanzi in this group. That is Iban Mayo just a little bit further back in the orange jersey. Moving up there, Oscar Pereiro crossing the line, and Santos Gonzalez for the team of Phonak, the team of Tyler Hamilton. Those are names we expected to see here this afternoon, but they didn't make it. Mayo coming to the line, cutting the ribbon just in front of, it looks to me as if that was one of the riders from Phonak as well. A little bit further back. The time is ticking by for one and Jan Ullrich. 1 minute and 12 seconds for the man from Germany, regarded as the most talented bike rider in the world. Phil,
oh dear.
A couple of days ago we were listening to Cyril Guimard, who said it was a bad sign, as we see Simone coming up here. He said it was a bad sign to see Jan Ullrich riding such a big gear on all the flat stages.
Yeah, he did indeed, wasting far too much engine, but he's done that all his life. We're talking a man who's never finished worse than second in any of his 6 Tours de France. Here is Christophe Moreau, promised so much out on the Aspan today, but he's coming in now with other riders like Levi Leipheimer. But looking at the clock, it's counting down to almost 2 minutes now. This is huge losses, absolutely huge. Armstrong is going to feel very happy tonight, but heavens, he's got to go out and do it all again tomorrow. It's going to make a very different stage now. Armstrong hasn't got the yellow jersey like he did 2 years ago. Here comes Jan Ullrich now, and this is going to be very depressing for the big man, because the clock has gone over 2 minutes to Jan Ullrich here. 2 1/4 and counting. That's Oscar Sevilla just about hanging on the back, and I thought he might have done something special as well. Brochard 2. And look at this, as we hit the line, it's going to be 2:26 for Jan Ullrich. Well, they wanted 4 minutes, they've taken 2.5 in one go. Here comes the maillot jaune, fighting all of the way. He will still be the race leader tonight. He lost time, we expected that, but he still continues to grow as a man.
What a great bike rider. He looks as if he's all over his machine here. He's still a long way to go to the finish. Quick calculation, by the way, Jan Ullrich is now 3.5 minutes behind Lance Armstrong in the overall classification.
What about
There
Heras?
is Roberto Heras.
He's 5.
It's so much easier to ride tempo for a team leader than it is to be the actual leader himself. And today he's learning that as a very seriously hard lesson. This kid is showing us a lesson in one thing: absolute and utter courage and determination.
He can't get up the climb. The kid is so tired. Unbelievable. 3 minutes since Lance Armstrong and the winner Basso finished. But he will keep his yellow jersey. You can hear the crowd shouting for him now.
There's Tyler Hamilton coming in with that group. He's lost himself 3.5 minutes, and the crowd, I would think, are going to go absolutely ballistic right now, because the Frenchman who has led this race for more than a week is dragging his body, literally dragging his body up to the finishing line. This man has gone through all kinds of hell through his body over the last 12 kilometers of this climb, but he's done what he set out to do at the start of the day. He has kept the yellow jersey on his shoulders.
So let's have a look at a stage result that might just have heralded a change of the guard in the upper echelons of world cycling. First, Ivan Basso leading home Lance Armstrong, and third, Andreas Kloden, who left his team leader Jan Ullrich on the final climb to finish 20 seconds behind them. The first of Armstrong's perceived major rivals was Ivan Mayo, 9th man home, 1 minute and 3 seconds behind. Then Jan Ullrich lost nearly 2.5 minutes, Heras nearly 3 minutes, and Tyler Hamilton 3.5, to an Armstrong who wasn't so much attacking as riding to control the race. Well, he controlled it pretty well, but I think this man was genuinely stronger at the finish, and Ivan Basso, who came here saying he was looking to ride well in the mountains and think about a challenge next year, has put himself into the position of perhaps being a challenger this year.
I feel good, and for sure for me is fantastic today. The tour is long, and tomorrow is another day. Now I sleep and talk with my team.
27 minutes after Basso crossed the line, Robbie McEwen did the same, having paced himself carefully to leave energy for a wheelie. Thomas Verkler, author of one of the heroic rides of the day, almost got knocked to the ground by sheer acclaim from the crowd lining the final climb, but against all predictions, he held on to his yellow jersey and well.
Yes, I'm very happy to keep the yellow jersey, but it's not even for me. I'm proud of the team, because they really have done a good job since I took the yellow jersey. But I have no regrets. I gave all I could today.
So this is how the classification looked. Armstrong up into second, but still the best part of 5.5 minutes behind Verkler, with Andreas Kloden and Ivan Basso now 5th and 6th, the pair of them on the same time, 6:33 off the lead. Behind them, Santos Gonzalez was now the leading Phonak rider, over 2 minutes and 11 places ahead of his team leader Tyler Hamilton. Jan Ullrich was 11 places and 2.5 minutes behind his supposed domestique Andreas Kloden. Roberto Heras wasn't the leading Liberty Seguros rider in the race, he was down in 26th. In fact, of the big 4 challengers to Lance Armstrong, Only Iban Mayo was even the highest placed rider on his own team, and he was in 32nd place, 12 minutes off the lead. To the impartial observer, it looked like carnage. Lance Armstrong was still showing a cautious post-race face.
And today we started with confidence and with the intention to win the stage, and I mean, the team was super, as you saw, and so we have the best team. Just a question of whether or not the leader is the best in the race.
Well, he's certainly the best in his team, which is more than a lot of his rivals could say. Here are the gaps from Armstrong to the men who were his main challengers before stage 12, with Jan Ullrich the only man within 4 minutes of him after one day in the Pyrenees. And here's how he stood against the men who might pose the biggest threat to him from here on in. Andreas Kloden, though, is clearly a graduate of Lance Armstrong Media School. This is his reaction to the suggestion that he was now T-Mobile's best hope.
Nein, Jan ist uneingeschränkter Kapitän und ich bin sein Helfer. Ich hatte heute ein bisschen bessere Beine und der Giuseppe Gurini war noch bei ihm gewesen, deswegen sollte ich erstmal vorne bleiben. Und wenn Jan keinen mehr gehabt hätte, keinen Helfer, dann hätte ich mich zurückfallen lassen. Er war normal nicht schwach, er hat gute Kondition, das Problem ist das Wetter. Wenn es regnet, hat er keine guten Beine und das kennen wir ja die ganzen Jahre. Aber ich hoffe, morgen ist besseres Wetter, wieder Sonne und dann werden die Beine wieder besser.
Now, if Lance Armstrong's rivals had suffered on day one in the Pyrenees, they were probably facing day two after a sleepless night of worry because it was much harder. The final climb up here to Plateau de Bay in particular was really vicious, and of course Armstrong had the psychological edge of having won here before. So either Ullrich, Hamilton and company were going to have to redeem themselves with big comeback rides, or it'd be down to their supporting cast and Ivan Basso to try to make life difficult for the defending champion. Well, everyone who raced the Tour 2 years ago knew how hard the final climb up to the Plateau de Bay was going to be, and this year there were 6 other mountains to get over to reach the foot of it. Tyler Hamilton never got there. The man who rode the whole of last year's Tour with a broken collarbone couldn't deal with the lower back pain, which was robbing him of his ability to climb, and his challenge to Lance Armstrong ended at the feed zone after 79 kilometres. And he wasn't the only one to go. Aymar Zubeldia, 5th overall in last year's race, 1 place behind Hamilton, also abandoned, followed by last year's best young rider, Denis Menchov.
Well, Rasmussen still looking pretty good and determined, this bunch. Look at the back here, they're slipping slowly away. It's been a long, tough day today, and there's still tough climb still to come. We've been over the Col des Arts, Porte d'Aspet, Col de la Cour, and we're on the Col d'Agnès at the moment, but they only get worse. I hasten to tell the riders we've lost 6 riders have abandoned the race so far today, and very shortly they are going to continue over the top of the Col d'Agnès, which is a tough climb. It takes us up, by the way, to nearly 1,600 metres, the Col d'Agnès. It's a 10-kilometre climb, and once over the top of that they go briefly down a little bit, but not by a great deal. And once they're down that, they're onto the Porte de l'Aise, and then they'll finish on the actual big climb of the Plateau de Bay. It's a brute, this one, and I think I mentioned a friend of mine who's in the area from England that rode it the other day, and he telephoned me to say it was a real tough climb, and as it's now proving, it may be the place we'll remember where Thomas Voeckler lost his yellow jersey, because up ahead the peloton, what's left, is riding away.
Well, I'm sorry to have to say that, you know, any acceleration now from Thomas Voeckler is not going to be enough, because the main field is a long way around the corner. He's exhibited an amazing amount of courage over the last few days, and he's stayed at the top end of the overall classification. I think yesterday he dug so deep into his suitcase of courage that he didn't have anything left for this afternoon stage, but he will have to still get himself to the finish, and he could still stay high in the overall classification. Now the front end of the main field is completely changed. Over the flat stages, we saw the red and white jerseys of Brios La Boulangère controlling the main field, keeping this man in the yellow jersey. The front end of the peloton now has changed colours. It's now the blue train of Lance Armstrong.
And by the way, Mayo is now almost 2 minutes behind, but he's still riding. Looking down there now, the predominance of the blue jersey of US Postal shows you just what a great team this is. The pacemakers keep going as long as possible. Ullrich there, number 11, sits on the wheel of number 1. The 2 great rivals, 3 times Ullrich has finished second, 2 Lance Armstrong. It might be different this year because Ullrich has dropped away already to 16th place. But he said if he continues riding this badly,
then he will pass the team leadership to Cloden, and that will be interesting. But you know, Lance knows, and we all know, that this man has a habit of becoming good in the last week of the Tour.
Iban Mayo, not a great day for the Spanish team this afternoon. This is all of his teammates around him. Number 33 on the left-hand side is little David Echevarria. On the other side, number 34, Unai Echevarria. Same name, not the same family, but today they are dedicating themselves to make sure that they can keep their man in the Tour de France for another day. You have to survive every day of the Tour de France to come out and fight again. If he can survive through the roads of the Pyrenees, he might bounce back. He's not going to win the Tour de France this year, but he could bounce back and win a mountain stage. Let's not forget number 31 there, the man we're looking at, was the winner last year of the Alpe d'Huez stage of the Tour de France.
No pressure on him when he won that, but he was racing to eventually finish 6th in the Tour de France that year.
There's the yellow jersey, the yellow helmet on this young man who has held the lead in the yellow jersey at the Tour de France since he took it a long time ago on the long breakaway to the small town of Chartres, and since then he's been in yellow and defending it to absolutely and utter perfection with all of the courage and all of the strength that his body could muster. But I think today what is going against him is his youth. He's just 25 years of age. In fact, he only turned 25 on the 22nd of June, a week before he won the French National Championships. And today, he just doesn't have that resistance and stamina that you get naturally in your body till you reach the end of your 20s.
We're just panning down here to a very select leading group now, and it's not very long here. Looks as though Liberty Seguros, that was Heras there, who was also beginning to lose ground. I wonder if he's paying from the crash.
Looked like Heras, who was just slipping off the back. A couple of teammates up alongside him. Armstrong too seems to be losing a teammate. And oh, I don't believe it, Iban Mayo, he's called it a day.
This is it. Iban Mayo has walked to the side of the road. I thought he was going to try and continue. He's going to abandon the Tour de France. The second big name goes today. We saw number 21, the leader of Phonak, Tyler Hamilton. Now we see number 31, the leader of Euskaltel, Euskadi. And he's left his 3 teammates in no man's land now because they've got to ride on to the finish without their leader.
That's it. He calls it a day. I can't go on anymore. I cannot continue. I know what it feels like. It's a horrendous thing, especially when you start the Tour de France as a man who wants to. But look at this. Look at this. Oh. He's changing his bike. He's going to carry on. The teammates are there alongside him. He's decided, I can't pull out of the Tour de France. This is what the Tour de France is all about, Phil. It is such an incredible event that even when you can't go on, you want to. You want to get back onto the machine. A couple of guys pushing him here. Somebody from a different team is just giving him a bit of encouragement there, coming alongside there. He was pushed by Vicente Garcia Acosta. This is unbelievable.
Well, I tell you, you can't see what we can see from our commentary box, but the crowd here are all dressed in orange. They are glued to a huge television screen on the top of the Plateau de Baille. They are totally silent. Nobody is looking at each other. They're just staring at these pictures and they don't believe what they're seeing. But Mayo appears to be abandoning, and I think there are words of encouragement saying, don't do it. You don't get a second chance. Go back into the Tour de France.
Julian Gorospe, team manager, up there alongside him. That was very dramatic. It's happened on occasions before. A rider has just been psychologically blown to pieces and just says, I can't do it. Let's not forget how far this man has fallen psychologically. Before the start of the Tour de France, he saw himself as a winner of this bike race. Now he's a broken man. He's riding at the back with what you might call also-rans, but nobody's an also-ran when they take part in the Tour de France. He stopped at the side of the road. The team manager came up alongside and they said, no, come on, just try. You can keep going. You've had a bad time. You've had crashes, but you can ride back into the event in the mountains and still be a factor. So there you can see, that was a very dramatic moment there for Iban Mayo, who's had a fabulous season this year. He's ridden 8 times to victory in some very big 7-8 day races. There he is, alongside a lot of his teammates. His teammates were a little bit bewildered there when it looked as if he was going to pull out of the event. Just in the group with him, Fabian Cancellara at the back here, number 43, the winner of the prologue time trial. He too banished to the lesser parts of the main field this afternoon. Fabio Baldato in the green and red jersey at the back.
So Mayo continues. We're looking at a 5-minute deficit now on Lance Armstrong, who puts him about 10 minutes behind the leaders on the road today, which are now down to 2. Cancellara here
he can't believe his luck. Every time he gets dropped, he comes across a group of quite famous men, and off he goes again.
I think what happened there to this man, Iban Mayo, number 30, is a psychological defeat. He was psychologically blown apart there by that defeat in the Tour de France. 12 days ago, he thought he was going to beat Lance Armstrong. He thought he was going to be the #1 man at the Tour de France. He got blown away on the stage 3 cobblestones affair when he crashed just before the first section of cobbles at Ornans. He lost time in the team time trial. Now he's changed machines. It's a tough thing, but I think for the crowd here, he really needs to carry on. Physically, I think he's fine. Psychologically, he's taken a beating.
Absolutely. He tried to adjust his gears. He's in the lowest gear he can ride, and obviously the gears touching the spokes in his wheel. They're trying to just put that matter right. They should do that.
So this is the spare machine. The mechanic will get a bit of a telling off tonight for not having that machine correctly adjusted when he came in there. So the mechanic just making sure that the gears are correct. He's in the lowest gear possible on his machine. He's around about 6 minutes behind the yellow jersey group, or the group which now contains Lance Armstrong. But he has, I would say, a good 50 minutes in today's stage if he's going to stay inside of the elimination time. There is the yellow jersey. Riding alongside the yellow jersey there, I have a funny feeling that's a certain Gilberto Simoni, the winner of the Giro d'Italia on 2 occasions.
Paul, there are so many tired bodies in the Tour de France, and this is day 2 in the mountains. And, you know, we got rather tired of people telling us how easy the race had been for 2 weeks. Well, now we're showing how these riders have really kept up such a high speed, and they're in trouble. There's the stage winner the other day, and that's number 97, David Moncoutier, also just about dangling at the back of the peloton.
This is why the Tour de France is the biggest and toughest race that exists in the sport of professional cycling. You have to keep all your forces and only use them when it's necessary. People wondered why Armstrong was so quiet in the first 10 or 12 days of this race. People wondered why Armstrong let the lead slip away, because he knew that the lead was more important in the last week of the race than the middle week of the race. There's the yellow jersey at the start of the day. Thomas Voeckler still riding on absolute and utter courage, trying to keep the yellow jersey on his shoulders. And have a look at this. There is the jersey trying to get back onto the group of Lance Armstrong. You know, he's actually only lost 15 to 20 seconds on the Armstrong group. He's not going to give up without an unbelievable fight.
This man clearly has read the history books of the Tour de France, because this is the maker of heroes. And it looks as though Voeckler is going to be spoken about for a long time. Laurent Jalabert, who was one of the great riders in the Tour de France, is now retired. He works here on the race as a journalist. Has said very kind things about him in this morning's French newspaper L'Equipe. True courage in the tradition of the Tour de France. And I think that's what we're seeing today by Thomas Voeckler. He still, don't forget, the leader in the white jersey is best young rider. It's being worn on the shoulders of Sandy Cassard just now, who's in 3rd place, so he can't afford to lose too much time because he'd like to wear white tomorrow if he can't wear yellow. This is the sad sight, though, almost 10 minutes now behind the leaders on the road, and Iban Mayo being encouraged to continue on the Tour de France. Wow, this is a tough day today. This is the toughest bike race in the world. Nobody can ever deny that.
You can see that, just looking at the face of Iban Mayo. I think physically he will come back, he will recover, but this is a real severe blow to this man who rode so superbly in the Tour de France last year. He rode so well in the Tour de France last year that we were convinced that he was obviously a man who could climb onto the podium at the Tour this year. He finished 6th overall last year at his second attempt at the Tour de France, and he also won himself a very impressive mountaintop finish to the summit of the slopes of the Alpe d'Huez. There is the leading group, which has been seriously reduced in numbers. The majority of the riders on the front end of that group are wearing dark blue jerseys of the US Postal Service. And look at this. This is unbelievable. It really is a remarkable performance by this young man in the yellow jersey. He was dropped. He made his way around a lot of other riders. He was actually given a very good piece of advice yesterday. I don't know if you remember that he was caught by Richard Viron, the leader of the King of the Mountains classification. Richard Viron said to him, don't panic, don't try and stay in with the big leaders for too long, because you'll blow up completely. Just ride at your own rhythm. Find what's comfortable for you, and then you'll stay in contact with the race. But there he is, and he's not too far away from the summit of this climb, the 5th climb of the day so far. This is the very long ascent of the Col de l'Agnès. And you know what? I think he might just make it. He might just get back on the descent because he's not lost too much time. He's lost around about 30 seconds on the slopes of this climb. Getting back into his rhythm. He's got a teammate of Lance Armstrong's there. That looks like Beltran, which is a bit of a surprise because Beltran was one of these strong riders. Look at that. That is amazing. That is what the sport is about. People, there's a team manager from a different team here actually passing him on board a drink and something to eat. That is because they respect this man for the courage that he's shown over the last 8 days of this race. He is clinging on with his fingernails to that yellow jersey. He wants it for one more day if he can. He's got to survive, but to do so, he has to go over the summit of this climb within a minute of that leading group with Lance Armstrong on, and then take some unbelievable risks on the descent. I've known in the past riders able to bridge a gap of 2 minutes on the descent if you could take the risks necessary. And I think this man will do that this afternoon.
Well, there's all the time gaps now, just about working them out. The 50 seconds is indicating the gap between Rasmussen, Voigt and Chavanel. 4:29 to the bunch containing Lance Armstrong, who still looks the strongest of them all back there. He's being shadowed by Jan Ullrich on the climb. There's Jens Voigt and the pain on his face. And behind is, for the moment at least, because he keeps coming back, the yellow jersey of Voigtler. Long way behind is the orange jersey of Iban Mayo.
There's a lot of great battles happening. It's a pity we haven't got 500 cameras this afternoon to watch every story that's unfolding here at the Tour de France, because you can be sure that every bike rider in the race today has a story to tell at the end of the day. Rasmussen is doing a fine job setting the pace. I really appreciate the effort from Jens Voigt, because Jens is not a climber by any means. He's riding on courage, just trying to stay in contact here with Rasmussen, who is obviously the superior climber. Chavanel's been dropped. Let's have a look at the back end of the peloton there. You can see all the blue jerseys of the US Postal Service at the front, just setting their tempo for Armstrong. They're not trying to eliminate Thomas Buchler. They're just doing a job of work this afternoon, riding their tempo, looking back down the main road a little bit. I'm looking for the shape of the yellow jersey. There he is. What a great performance. He's lost himself about a minute and he's reduced it to 30 seconds. If he goes over the top 30 seconds down, he might catch them back.